An insect monster devours a victim pleading for death.
Covered in blood, Choi is surrounded by a swarm of giant mantis monsters. Choi weeps tears of blood in a moment of utter despair. A single droplet falls into dark water, creating glowing ripples. Standing before a dungeon gate, the man in red urges Hyun-chan to decide. The man in red suggests clearing the secret dungeon alone for the loot. Hyun-chan reflects on the low wages of standard hunter work. Hyun-chan decides the group will break through the dungeon on their own. Choi hesitates and questions if entering the dungeon is a good idea.
Hyun-chan silences Choi's concerns about the potential danger.
Hyun-chan pressures Choi by pointing out that everyone else has already agreed.
Choi admits she is terrified that insect monsters might appear again.
Hyun-chan mocks Choi for her phobia and blames her for past failures. Hyun-chan cruelly tells Choi she can quit if she is too weak.
Hyun-chan manipulates Choi by asking if any other guild would ever accept her.
Hyun-chan orders Choi to trust him while she reminds herself of her get. Choi laments her own perceived selfishness in a moment of doubt. Hyun-chan looms over Choi, claiming his verbal abuse is actually a sign of love.
Choi tearfully thanks Hyun-chan for his supposedly kind heart.
Hyun-chan smiles and orders Choi to lead the way as their tanker.
Choi submissively leads the party into the dark dungeon.
The party enters the dungeon with Choi holding her shield at the front.
A quiet step alerts a massive swarm of mantis monsters in the distance. The man in red screams in terror at the overwhelming number of enemies.
A swarm of giant mantis monsters charges toward the group.
The party is ordered to kill the entire swarm at once. While the team attacks, Hyun-chan barks orders at Choi to do her job.
Hyun-chan commands Choi to hold the line while the others focus on attacking.
Choi struggles to block the heavy insectoid strikes with her wooden shield. Choi desperately tries to hold her ground for the safety of her team.
Choi cries out in pain as a sharp slash sounds across her face.
Choi forces herself to overcome her fear as she maintains her magical shield.
The hunters successfully spear one of the charging monsters through the mouth.
The man in red panics as the swarm becomes impossible to control.
The team desperately asks Hyun-chan for a plan to survive the ambush.
Choi groans as the monsters batter against her purple magical barrier.
Overwhelmed by pain, Choi wonders how much longer she must endure the assault.
Choi begs Hyun-chan for healing as her strength finally begins to fail.
To her horror, Choi watches her teammates flee into the distance.
Choi realizes with shock that she's being abandoned by her party.
A cold realization sinks in that they are leaving her behind. Hyun-chan curses Choi for her weakness as he runs for his life. A massive mantis claw slams violently against Choi's failing shield. Choi runs toward the closing exit, pleading to be taken with them. The blue-haired girl protests the abandonment, but Hyun-chan forces her ally. Her hope vanishes as the door slams shut with a heavy thud.
Choi screams and bangs on the locked door, begging for someone to help.
Someone inside the gate argues that Choi is his girlfriend. Choi stands in terror as she is left alone in the monster-filled darkness.
A cold response from within the gate dismisses her life as irrelevant. Screech! The black-haired woman screams as giant mantis monsters corner her against the massive dungeon gate.
Desperate to stay focused, Choi tells herself that this is not the time to give in to despair.
She pauses in the sun-drenched forest, her heavy sword strapped to her back as she looks into the trees.
As she sprints through the woods, Choi resolves to survive so her teammates can eventually return for her.
Tears well in her eyes as the crushing weight of her isolation and terror sinks in.
She discovers the massive, glowing, skeletal remains of a beast woven into the roots of the forest. A colossal wooden hand rises from the earth, offering her a golden ring and causing her to question what it is.
The wooden hand lowers the prize toward her as she reaches out in wonder toward the mysterious light.
Holding the artifact, the black-haired woman questions if this simple band is truly a ring. Choi considers the possibility that this might be the legendary hidden item they were looking for.
Ting! A blue system window suddenly materializes before her startled gaze as she stares in shock. The notification identifies the object as the Parasite's Ring, a legendary X-grade item found in the dungeon. Ting! Choi smiles as system windows explain the ring affects her life and grants her regeneration.
A stark warning appears in a system window stating she cannot die until the hidden contents of the ring hatch.
With a manic, desperate glint in her eyes, Choi asks if her suffering has finally reached its end. Looking back at the great skeleton, she asks the void how she is supposed to use the item.
Screech! A sudden sound pierces the silence as monsters leap from the shadows to strike her down. Ah!
Pinched by terror, she whimpers a plea for someone to save her from the encroaching claws.
The swarm descends upon her, their jagged limbs pinning the bloodied woman to the forest floor.
Blood drips from her face as she begs the monsters to stop their gruesome assault.
A dull thud sounds as her bloodied hand falls limp against the grass after the attack. A faint green light begins to pulse from the ring on her finger as her life seemingly fades.
The system repeats its grim decree that she is forbidden from death until the hatching process is complete. Boom! Her screams echo through the trees as the mantis monsters continue their feeding frenzy. Ah! Choi gasps for air, jolting upright as her horrific wounds begin to knit back together miraculously.
Covered in blood, she stares at her healed palms and wonders how she is still alive.
A sharp gasp escapes her as she notices the monsters have not yet left their prey. Trembling, Choi can only utter broken sounds of disbelief as she realizes the nightmare is starting again.
Another agonizing scream erupts from her as a monster's blade slices through the air.
Cough. She coughs up blood as a massive claw slams into her head, drawing fresh wounds. Groaning in agony, she endures the relentless battering of the insectoid swarm surrounding her. The blue screen flashes once more, reminding her that her immortality is a curse of the ring. Pinned and weeping, Choi pleads for help, stating she does not want to die. Kia! She screams in sheer agony as a monster begins to devour her leg alive. In her moments of intense pain, she cries out the name of the man she trusted. Her desperate voice rasps out a final plea to be saved from the monster-filled darkness. A monster looms over her with open jaws, ready to resume the horrific meal on her body. Choi gasps out a final refusal before a spray of blood covers the thing. Ting! Countless system windows flood her vision, all echoing the same inescapable law of her survival. As time blurs, the black-haired woman wonders how long she has been serving as the monster's food. She reflects on years or decades passing, wondering when she can finally die as green energy pulses. Her gaze falls upon her discarded sword, and she questions if it is truly her weapon. She remembers the weapon was a birthday gift from the man who led her into this hell. Rage replaces her sorrow as she realizes the bastard truly abandoned her to this fate.
Choi recalls how she was pushed into this hell for the sake of a hidden item.
With a sudden, violent motion, she lashes out at the monsters surrounding her. Surprised, she watches a notification announce her strength has increased after she defeated a monster. Crunch, she cleaves through another insect, her accuracy rising as she finally begins to fight back. Squelch! Driving her blade home, Choi's health stack climbs as she claims another monster's life. Ha ha! A dark laugh escapes her as the system confirms her wounds from battle are fully healed. Gripping her blade, Choi realizes she finally understands how to utilize the power of the legendary ring. A chilling, hysterical laugh erupts from the woman as her mind begins to fracture under the weight of her transformation. Brandishing her sword against the encroaching swarm, Choi challenges the monsters to come and face their death.
Gazing at the image of the man who betrayed her, Choi's internal monologue identifies him as her boyfriend, On Hyun Chan.
With a predatory grin, the black-haired woman tells the memory of her betrayer to wait just a little longer for her. Haunted by the image of Hyun Chan, Choi reminds herself that he was the person she once loved and trusted. Dead monsters litter the grass, their screeches of ki and kill fading into the silence of the forest floor. She unleashes a powerful, arcing swing that cuts through the air with a bright, luminous flash of energy. Blood sprays across the scene as her blade finds its mark deep within the chitinous flesh of her enemy. As a monster looms behind her with a low growl, Choi can only groan in physical strain from the ongoing battle. The ring on her finger pulses with an eerie emerald radiance as it continues to sustain her life. Slashing through another foe, the black-haired woman curses the bastards that continue to hound her in the dark. A spray of purple blood follows the clean decapitation of another giant insectoid beast. Despite being pierced through the torso, Choi casually notes the pain and how deeply the strike hit home. The swarm continues its frenzied assault, their high-pitched screeches echoing through the clearing as she stands her ground. Glowing green light mends her wounds as she invites the monsters to come at her again with a twisted smile. The creatures hesitate in their charge, their confused screeches rising as Choi questions why they have stopped their attack. With red glowing eyes and a manic expression, the woman mocks the monsters for failing to continue their assault.
The screeching mantis monsters lunge forward once more, their many limbs blurred by the speed of their attack.
Laughter bursts from her lips as she tears through the ranks of the swarm with renewed violent energy. Splattered in gore, Choi exclaims how enjoyable it is to feel herself becoming stronger with every life she takes. Crouching low like a predator, the black-haired woman declares her insatiable desire to kill even more of the beasts. She leaps high into the air above the dungeon walls, descending like a vengeful shadow upon her prey. Her face contorts into a mask of pure rage as she screams a final command for her enemies to die. A massive pillar of red energy slams into the ground, vaporizing everything in a blinding, violent explosion of power. A system window confirms the sacred realm of reception is cleared after a staggering 600,000 hours of combat. Exhausted and covered in monster blood, the woman stands amidst the silence of the now empty dungeon. Her eyes, still burning with a red intensity, look upward as a sudden, sharp flash of light fills the chamber.
A glowing blue notification materializes to inform the survivor that she has officially reached A-rank status.
Outside the massive stone doors, someone wonders if the ordeal inside has finally reached its conclusion.
Hyun-chan wears a dark, smug expression as he remarks that he stayed in the area for far too long.
One final mantis monster gasps out a dying sound as its lifeblood pools on the grass.
A heavy boot comes down with a wet crunch, finishing off the last struggling creature in a spray of fluid.
Choi wipes the blood from her face, her laughter ringing out in a hollow, terrifying display of her new reality. The blue-haired girl screams in outrage, demanding to know how they could lock Choi inside and abandon her.
She continues her tirade, pointing out that Choi was his girlfriend and accusing him of using her for his own gain. Hyun-chan defensively argues that waiting would have killed them all, dismissing the girl's anger and asking if she is done.
The man in the red jacket tries to play peacemaker, nervously suggesting that those who can survive simply should. Leaning against the wall with a smirk, the orange-haired woman mocks the blue-haired girl's emotional reaction to their shared rank.
Infuriated, the blue-haired girl rejects their logic and declares she can no longer deal with their hierarchy and cruelty. The girl vows to expose their actions once they escape, while the orange-haired woman dismisses the death as a common occurrence.
Hyun-chan stares at the girl with a cold, predatory gaze that suggests her threats mean nothing to him. A sinister smirk plays across the man's lips as he prepares to exert his dominance over the protesting hunter.
He menacingly asks the girl what she would do if they decided to abandon her just like they did Choi.
A chilling question hangs in the dark air, asking if a C rank could ever hope to survive a B rank dungeon alone. Terrified by the implied threat, the blue-haired girl stammers out the man's name as she begins to tremble. Hyun-chan grips her shoulder tightly, leaning in to ask her why she is suddenly so afraid of him.
He forces a smile, telling her they should just get along so she doesn't end up sharing the same fate as Choi.
Laughing, the man begins to explain his frank perspective on the girl they left behind in the dark. A massive, blinding explosion of blue light suddenly erupts behind the group as they discuss Choi's failure to keep up. A man and a girl stare ahead with wide eyes, paralyzed by a sudden, shocking sight. Covered in blood and tattered clothes, the survivor approaches the group and mocks their lack of change. A simple greeting echoes through the air, marking a reunion that should have been impossible. With a predatory smirk and eyes glowing red, Choi looks upon her former companions with cold amusement. Standing in the threshold of the dark doorway, the woman's presence prompts Hyun-chan to utter her name in disbelief. Looking visibly shaken, the brown-haired man tries to process her cryptic words and the impossibility of her return. The survivor maintains a chilling, silent gaze, her eyes fixed on the man who abandoned her.
Trembling with emotion, the blue-haired girl utters the woman's name while clutching her face in shock.
Hyun-chan rushes forward and pulls Choi into a tight, desperate embrace, exclaiming his relief that she is alive. He feigns deep regret, apologizing for his failure to save her during their previous encounter.
Holding her close, the man attempts to justify his betrayal as a necessary sacrifice for the sake of the others.
Choi whispers her understanding, prompting a subtle, sinister smirk to cross Hyun-chan's face as he believes his deception worked.
Grinning, he praises her for being kind-hearted and thanks her for accepting his shallow excuses.
A close-up of the woman's face reveals a faint, knowing smile that contrasts sharply with her unnerving red eyes.
The atmosphere shifts as Hyun-chan suddenly feels a wave of unease wash over him while standing beside her.
His eyes wander over her figure, noting that her clothes are shredded and soaked in blood.
He grows suspicious, questioning how her clothes can be so damaged while her skin remains completely unmarked by wounds.
Beads of sweat roll down his face as he concludes that something is fundamentally wrong with the woman's return.
A sudden firm grip on her shoulder startles the group, signaling the intervention of another hunter.
The man in the red jacket joins them, expressing loud, boisterous joy at seeing her back from the dead. Flashing a toothy grin, he suggests they reunite the team to conquer the dungeon boss once more. Choi laughs along with the group, playfully asking if they have been waiting for her to reappear. Hyun-chan watches her closely, wondering if he is overreacting to the strange feeling she gives off. The hunter in red cheers and pumps his fist, claiming his conscience was heavy after they left her behind. The group begins to move out, but Hyun-chan remains quiet, his eyes lingering on the woman's back. He tries to shake off his lingering doubts, convincing himself that his dark suspicions are merely a figment of his imagination.
A sudden thud sounds as a massive cloven hoof crushes a fallen branch in the thick forest.
A system window identifies the towering beast with glowing red eyes as the C-rank boss monster, the Deer Knuckle.
From the shadows of a large tree, Hyunchan observes the creature's movements with a focused, calculating gaze. He signals the rest of the party to prepare themselves and stick to their established combat tactics. The man in the red jacket confirms the strategy, noting that Choi will take the lead to draw the monster's attention. Crouched behind a tree, the leader gives Choi a direct command to keep the beast's focus centered on her. With a confident look, he prepares to execute the plan, satisfied that everything is moving according to his design. Choi lunges into action with her shield held high, charging toward the center of a swirling green energy field. The other hunters cry out in confusion as they watch her deviate from the expected battle formation. A sharp impact sends debris flying as the confrontation between hunter and monster begins in earnest. Engulfed in a pillar of radiant energy, the black-haired woman stands defiant against the overwhelming power of the beast. A sudden, brilliant flash causes a character to squint in shock as the intensity of the battle escalates. The deer knuckle lets out a piercing roar of rage as it prepares to unleash its full strength upon the intruders. Panicked, the hunters realize that Choi is drawing far more attention from the boss than their plan intended. Hyunchan shouts a desperate order for everyone to take cover behind the woman to avoid the coming onslaught. The massive beast lowers its antlers and charges at incredible speed, its eyes fixed solely on the woman in its path. Amidst the chaos, the leader tries to maintain morale by shouting that they can easily handle a B-rank boss. Bracing for the impact, Choi prepares to block the colossal creature's strike with her heavy shield. Hyunchan screams for her to hold the line and absorb the boss's damage from the front. The monster's hoof slams into the metal shield with crushing force, sending shockwaves through the ground. Looking up in total disbelief, the brown-haired man is stunned by the sheer scale of the power on display. The group watches in shock as Choi leaps high into the sky, leading them to wonder if she has abandoned them. The hunter in red stammers in fear as he realizes the monster's gaze has shifted directly toward him. He lets out a terrified scream as the beast prepares to trample him into the forest floor. The colossal deer monster charges forward. The man in the red jacket coughs up blood as he is struck by the monster's powerful blow. The two women stare in shock. Choi lands atop the beast's head. Standing over the mangled hunter, Choi mocks him by remarking that the strike must have been quite painful. A pained escapes the man in the red jacket as he struggles on the grass. Choi insincerely apologizes and laughs, claiming she only dodged the monster by mistake because she was so frightened. Looking at her terrified allies with glowing red eyes, Choi asks if everyone finally understands her new reality. She rides atop the charging creature. The monster charges through the field. A sudden, sharp sounds as the group is blown back by the monster's wake, letting out pained groans. Hyunchan shouts at Choi, asking if she has gone insane and demanding an explanation for her actions. Leaning back with a smirk, Choi asks the group what they think she is doing in this chaos. She grips the monster's fur tightly. Hyunchan yells for her to stop joking and get down, but Choi merely repeats the word with mocking amusement. Her eyes burn with red intensity. Looking at the dying hunter, Choi asks the survivors if this scene still looks like a joke to them. The survivors watch in absolute silence. Choi casually prepares for the next move, declaring that they should continue with their deadly game. She challenges them with a sinister smile, asking which of them will be able to survive the longest. A massive roar sounds as the monster rears up while Choi perches atop its formidable antlers. The beast continues its terrifying rampage. The survivors are left gasping for breath as they struggle to maintain their footing against the monster's power. Looking visibly shaken, the orange-haired woman asks the group what their next move should be to survive. Hyunchan orders the orange-haired woman to tank the boss while he provides healing and support from the rear. The orange-haired woman protests in fear, arguing that she has never attempted to tank a boss monster before. Hyunchan screams that they are all going to die if she doesn't do her part and tank the hits. He asserts his authority as the leader, telling them to listen if they want to live, while she curses his decision. Clenching his teeth, Hyunchan promises to provide support as long as she manages to tank the incoming damage. He tries to bolster their courage by shouting that they can still find a way to escape this dungeon. Choi gazes down and asks if they are done talking, announcing her intention to start her assault once again. Hyunchan lets out a frustrated ch as the group prepares their weapons for a final stand. Hyunchan is baffled, questioning how it is possible for a C-rank hunter to handle such a powerful boss. Debris flies as the monster attacks. Hyunchan lets out a desperate command for the orange-haired woman to block the monster's incoming strike. A terrified escapes her lips as she braces for the impact of the creature's crushing weight. She blocks the monster's powerful strike. Hyunchan exclaims in relief that she successfully blocked the attack while the blue-haired girl watches in shock. The defensive barrier suddenly shatters. A trail of blood follows her. A heavy, wet crunch sounds. The orange-haired woman lies gasping in a pool of blood while her horrified companions watch her life slip away.
Hyun-chan is frozen in disbelief. As the monster sniffs the ground, Hyun-chan wonders why Choi is so strong and what has happened to her. A system window reveals the deer knuckle has reached A rank with incredibly high strength, health, and agility stats.
Hyun-chan is struck by the impossibility of her return, wondering how she could have leaped from C rank to A rank.
He notices a buff for divine protection on her status screen and wonders who granted her such power.
Hyun-chan questions if the parasite's ring is a hidden item that is providing her with these overwhelming buffs. Choi contemplates her next move.
Driven to the brink, Hyun-chan decides they must kill Choi immediately and worry about the consequences later. Hyun-chan screams as he is thrown.
Choi sits atop the massive deer monster and mockingly asks Hyun-chan if the situation is still manageable for him as he gasps for air on the ground.
Struggling to catch his breath, the brown-haired man utters the woman's name while looking up at her from the dirt.
Looking back with glowing red eyes, Choi simply asks what he wants from her now. The leader concludes that her newfound power must come from an A-rank item she found within the dungeon, noting how easily she controls the beast.
He continues to watch her from behind, suspecting that her drastic personality change is another side effect of whatever item she obtained. Hyun-chan offers a hollow apology to the woman with the crimson gaze. He kneels in the dirt with his head bowed in a show of submission.
Choi looks down at him and asks what exactly he thinks he is sorry for at this point.
The man explains he is sorry for forcing her to understand their betrayal, to which Choi dryly asks if there is anything else he has to say.
He cries out in desperation, admitting that everything he did was wrong. Choi tells Hyun-chan that his inability to see the real problem is his greatest flaw, questioning if he truly doesn't understand the source of her anger.
Looking up with a dazed and fearful expression, the man asks for clarification.
The woman looks away, stating that there is only one true problem remaining. Seeing a potential opening, the leader begs her to tell him what it is so he can find a way to make it work.
Her eyes shift to a sinister purple glow as she bluntly tells him that his very existence is the only problem left. Flashing a dark, toothy grin, Choi calls him a bastard as the man's face pales in sudden realization of his fate.
A confused sound escapes the man's lips as he remains frozen on his knees. A sharp sound echoes as a massive spray of blood splatters across the clearing.
With a loud ha-ha sounding, Choi laughs hysterically as the massive deer monster's hoof crushes Hyun-chan into a bloody pulp on the forest floor.
A close-up reveals the chilling intensity of Choi's glowing red eye.
Walking toward the blue-haired girl, Choi notes with surprise that she is still standing there watching.
Nara trembles violently, letting out a panicked sounding as she stares at her teammate's killer.
Choi asks if she should spare the girl's life, prompting Nara to frantically beg for mercy.
A memory surfaces of Nara screaming at the others that Choi hadn't escaped yet, while Hyun-chan selfishly demanded she let go of the door.
Choi's face remains calm and knowing as she considers the girl.
The woman tells Nara to listen to her very carefully from now on, and the terrified girl immediately agrees to follow any instruction. Leaning in close, Choi explains she is only sparing her because she was the only one who tried to help her, and tells her not to lose her humanity in the future.
The blue-haired girl confirms her understanding as the beast's leg looms over them.
As they walk away together, Choi mentions there is one more thing the girl needs to remember.
Tightening her grip on a dagger, Choi warns Nara that she will die if she speaks a single word out of turn once they leave the dungeon. She delivers a final, powerful strike to the beast. A sudden, high-pitched kyak sounds as the massive creature is sliced apart, showering the area in blood. Holding her weapon high, the woman with red eyes asks Nara if the warning is perfectly understood. Nara desperately repeats her agreement while looking at her companion in terror. A scenic view of the cliffs follows as Choi remarks that the two of them are finally in the same boat. As they head toward the exit, Choi warns that any betrayal will lead to death before remembering she still needs to harvest the monster's magic stones. Standing before the gory remains of the boss, Nara confirms her compliance once more. An intense burst of energy signals a portal opening in a construction zone as workers watch. Choi and Nara emerge from the light, with Choi's clothes completely tattered and soaked in blood. A member of the dungeon management team approaches, asking about the whereabouts of the rest of the party.
Choi flatly announces that everyone else is gone.
Nara steps in to spin a lie, explaining that the boss monster's rank suddenly spiked and that the others sacrificed themselves to protect them. A soft sniff sounds as Choi begins a calculated performance of grief while hiding her face.
Nara points to the crying woman, telling the workers that she is overwhelmed with sorrow right now.
The blue-haired girl explains they are struggling with the loss and offers to leave the magic stone so they can exit the area first. A guild worker expresses shock that 2 C-rank hunters survived while 3 B ranks perished in a C-rank dungeon.
Choi continues to rub her eyes while Nara stands protectively beside her. The Hanshin Guildmaster, On Baekdok, makes his presence known and demands a complete, detailed account of everything that transpired.
Choi's red eye narrows as she prepares to deliver her deception to the guild leader.
The Guildmaster bellows in rage, questioning what the Deer Cuckle's rank increase has to do with anything.
He continues his tirade, screaming that their role is to support the dealers and demanding to know if they can't even perform that simple task correctly.
A loud yawn sounds as Choi openly expresses her boredom with the guild leader's anger. Nara watches in terror, wondering how Choi can be so calm after killing everyone, and worrying that they will both go to jail if the truth comes out. The man in the suit clutches his head in despair, wondering how he will explain his nephew's death to his father while noting the company's poor financial state. The woman remains silent, her glowing red eyes fixed on the man.
A startled "what?" escapes the man as Choi asks why he has money for luxury goods if the guild is struggling.
She notes the high price of his designer suit and his expensive car worth tens of thousands. Choi points out the hypocrisy of paying them minimum wage to risk their lives while he spends lavishly as the guildmaster. A pained sounds as the guild workers watch the tense confrontation unfold. Looking into his eyes, the man asks Hyun Choi why she is suddenly acting this way.
He recalls how she used to hide behind Hyunchan, trembling like a criminal and unable to speak.
The leader demands they take responsibility for the incident and orders them not to expect any rest.
Nara protests that his orders are unfair as the guildmaster tells them to find another dungeon to enter by tomorrow. He yells at her to shut up, telling her to be grateful for his leniency when people have died and the guild is short on hunters.
Stomping away, the man wonders how he will ever replace a hunter of Hyunchan's caliber.
Lighting a cigarette, the man curses Choi and wishes she had died instead of his nephew.
He considers how they will have to manage with her despite her being only a C rank.
A sudden realization seems to strike him as he continues to walk.
A sharp sound echoes as Choi delivers a crushing kick to the guildmaster's groin, forcing a strangled from his lips. Choking sounds follow as the man's face turns purple with agony. Nara and the workers watch in stunned silence, letting out a terrified eek as they witness the scene.
Standing over the man as he grovels for his life, Choi lets out a joyful aha and notes the strike landed perfectly.
She tells the guildmaster not to be so dramatic as he stares up at her in utter shock. Choi mockingly suggests that if he's so short on hunters and money, he should enter the dungeons himself, though she knows he is too afraid. Trembling on the floor, the man asks if she has gone insane and if she is finally showing her true colors now that his nephew is gone. Choi breaks into hysterical laughter, noting that he is just like his nephew and even uses the same lines. With a sinister grin, she says she truly dislikes that particular family trait and admits she's had a good laugh. Leaning in close, she confirms that she is crazy for dying instead of his precious nephew. The man can only utter a confused what at the nonsense she is speaking. Her eyes glowing with intense light, Choi tells him she is finished with Hyunchan and warns him never to bring him up again. As she turns to leave the guild, the master desperately begs her to stay, fearing what will happen to his organization. Choi looks back and simply says he should have treated her better when she was still there. The man lets out a terrified eek as Choi asks if he wants to be hit again. She stops for a moment, adding one final detail. A fluttering sound follows as she drops a bill onto the floor in front of him. She mockingly calls the small bill condolence money for Hyunchan's passing. The guildmaster lets out a frustrated ugh as Choi tells him to take good care of his nephew's final journey.
Nara offers a frantic thank you for everything as a loud ooh-ah sounds from the broken man, while Choi lets out a tired yawn.
The night sky hangs quietly over a modern apartment building. Choi stands comfortably in a new white t-shirt and black shorts. Nara asks her why she bought such cool clothes, and Choi explains she just picked them up at a clothing store. She looks down and mentions that Hyunchan never liked the style of dress. Looking back from a drawer, Nara asks what she means and reminds her that the man is dead.
Choi's face lights up with a joyful expression as she repeats Nara's words with excitement.
Diving onto the bed with a happy kya, Choi cheers that she was the one who killed him, while Nara watches in disbelief.
Nara shudders, thinking about how terrifying Choi becomes whenever she acts like this. She asks Choi why she suddenly wanted to come over when she has her own place to stay. The red-eyed woman remains silent for a long moment.
Clutching a plushie, Choi looks up and asks if she can stay at Nara's house for a while.
Choi mentions she previously lived with Hyunchan and has no desire to return there.
Nara stares in silent terror, fearing she might be killed if she refuses the woman's request.
After Nara reluctantly agrees to let her stay for a while, Choi lets out a joyful thank you while hugging a blue plushie.
Mentioning her own departure from the guild, Nara asks Choi what her future plans are. Choi hugs her blue plushie with a cheerful smile and admits she has no plans whatsoever.
Nara asks how she will handle living expenses, and Choi reveals she has 20 million won in her account to manage for now. Nara looks confused, remembering how Hyun-chan used to brag about paying for Choi's rent and expenses.
Choi explains that he only ever paid the deposit and that they split every other expense.
Nara clutches her head with a weary sigh, realizing the man had been lying about his generosity.
A moment of quiet reflection follows as the thought of waiting a minute surfaces.
Nara's anxiety spikes as she realizes Choi has no long-term plans and might stay at her home indefinitely.
Desperate for a solution, Nara asks Choi if she intends to find a job or get her own house soon.
Choi looks off to the side, admitting she doesn't feel motivated to do anything at the moment. With a chilling close-up on her red eye, Choi notes she has already finished what she wanted to do and is now lost. Nara asks the woman what it was that she actually achieved.
The core goal is revealed to have been finding and killing everyone in her path.
Choi breaks into bright laughter, mocking the idea and saying she should have known better. Nara closes her eyes in relief, thanking her companion for sparing her life during the slaughter.
Choi hugs her plushie and giggles, finding Nara's fearful reaction to be incredibly funny. The woman with long black hair remains silent as the scene lingers on her face.
Choi suddenly asks if Nara is hungry, and the blue-haired girl confirms that she is. Nara notes they haven't eaten all day and suggests ordering something like chicken or pork hocks. Choi recalls how Hyun-chan never allowed her to eat late at night, claiming it would make her fat. Nara's eyes widen in absolute shock at the revelation of such controlling behavior.
Engulfed in a metaphorical flame of fury, Nara screams that the dead man was a crazy bastard who deserved his fate.
Choi asks Nara why she has suddenly become so angry on her behalf. Nara stands up and defends her outrage, asking how she could possibly stay calm after hearing that.
Choi smiles warmly at her plushie, moved by the fact that someone is finally getting angry for her sake.
Deciding to order food, Nara insists that anyone would agree he was crazy and suggests they eat before sleeping.
A dark thought lingers on the cruelty of forcing a tank to starve while performing their duties.
Under the night sky, Choi calls Nara to come eat pork hocks while the girl agrees to join her.
Nara sleeps soundly on a mattress on the floor.
Choi remains awake on the bed, looking down at her sleeping companion while lost in thought.
Lying back, Choi reflects on how long it has been since she truly thought about what she wanted to do.
As she wiggles her toes, she realizes she never wants to enter a dungeon ever again.
Her red eyes stare upward as she decides she is finished with guilds and simply wants to rest. She considers finding a few odd jobs to live a simple, comfortable life.
The woman's eyes slowly drift shut as she prepares to drift off to sleep.
She finalizes the thought, deciding that such a peaceful life would be good for her.
A sharp, distorted sound suddenly cuts through the silence of the May.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Choi's eye snaps open with intense pink light.
Choi sits up abruptly in bed, her body reacting to an unexpected sensation.
She clutches her stomach in alarm, wondering what just happened inside her body.
Shuddering with a cold sweat, Choi remains frozen as she feels something wrong within her.
A worrying realization takes hold that there is something foreign lodged in her stomach.
She sits on the edge of the bed in the dim light, trembling with uncertainty.
Choi wonders if her physical condition is being caused by a specific source.
Her eyes glow with a fierce pink light as she looks toward the ring on her hand.
Deciding it would be best to remove it, she reaches out to grab the glowing ring on her finger. A blue system window appears, delivering the grim news that the parasite's ring cannot be removed once it has been worn.
Sitting on the bed with a glowing blue system window, Choi questions why the parasite ring is labeled as a bound item that cannot be removed.
Gritting her teeth, Choi uses both hands to pull at the ring on her finger as a frustrated, I don't know, escapes her. A sudden burst of white light and energy erupts from the ring, forcing an from Choi as she struggles against the pain.
As the light fades, Choi stares blankly into the distance, confused by the strange sensation.
Clutching her stomach in agony, Choi wonders if the ring is retaliating to prevent her from removing it.
A system window reveals the true nature of the parasite's ring, stating it sustains the wearer's life and prevents death only until it hatches.
Choi looks at the notification in silence, questioning exactly what is meant to hatch from within her body.
A gruesome image flashes in her mind of a massive, insect-like creature violently bursting out of a host's chest.
Breaking into a cold sweat, the black-haired woman stares ahead with a look of pure shock as the realization sinks in.
Letting out a tired sigh, Choi acknowledges that while the artifact saved her life, the cost might be more than she expected.
The small green gem on the ring pulses with a soft light against her skin.
Choi gazes down at her hand, her expression shadowed and somber.
Looking over at Nara sleeping soundly on the floor, Choi decides she must identify the item through an unofficial route to avoid trouble. She watches her companion sleep, concluding that revealing an EX-grade item to the world would be too dangerous.
The morning sun shines through the window blinds as the sound of birds chirping signals the start of a new day.
Choi sits quietly on the edge of the bed, her long black hair flowing down her back.
Her expression remains stoic and determined as she prepares to face the day.
In a taxi, Nara asks why she went to the hospital so early, and Choi dismisses her concern by claiming it was just a minor stomachache.
Choi casually mentions that she intends to live with Nara permanently.
Nara reacts with an explosive and terrified, "What? No way!" as she rejects the proposal.
Choi asks why not and offers to pay rent, but Nara insists her apartment is already too small for both of them.
With a confident grin, Choi suggests they simply move into a much larger place together.
Nara stares back in stunned silence, her eyes wide with disbelief at the bold suggestion.
Despite finding the idea tempting, Nara frantically waves her hands and continues to refuse. Choi bluntly tells her to then die if she won't live with her, prompting a frustrated yell from Nara as the taxi drives on.
Choi clarifies that she only wants to stay until she saves enough money, as she refuses to return to Hyunchan's house.
Nara finds that reasoning to be perfectly understandable.
Choi suggests pooling their money together, but Nara quickly shuts the idea down with a sharp refusal.
Nara asks how she expects to make any money after quitting the guild, and Choi claims she'll find part-time jobs.
Leaning in with a sinister smile, Choi suggests she could earn a lot of money by entering dogfights. Nara is appalled by the idea, screaming at the black-haired woman and asking if she has gone insane. Choi tells her to bet on her and promises that she will make them both incredibly rich.
The scene shifts to a massive, brightly lit underground arena where a crowd gathers around a fighting cage.
Inside the ring, two muscular men trade brutal strikes as the audience cheers them on. A narrative text explains that dogfighting is an illegal gambling circuit where hunters of C rank or lower are forced to fight.
The referee raises the victor's hand as the loser lies defeated in a pool of blood on the arena floor.
The text adds that the winning fighters take a portion of the massive sums of money bet on their matches.
Nara points out that Choi isn't a C rank anymore and asks if it's considered fraud to hide her true power level.
With a smug grin, Choi replies that it doesn't matter because her official hunter registration card still says C rank.
She argues that the entire operation is illegal anyway, so a little cheating won't make the situation any worse. Nara looks away with a troubled expression, admitting that Choi's logic has a point.
She remains silent for a moment, clearly conflicted about the dangerous plan.
A small, nervous smile begins to cross Nara's face as she reconsiders the offer. Nara asks if she will definitely get a return on her investment if she chooses to bet on Choi.
Choi smiles broadly, pleased to see that Nara is finally speaking her language and agreeing to the plan.
The pair arrives at a building with a storefront that appears to be a mundane pet supply shop.
Nara is surprised to learn that Choi has a younger sibling who told her about the location of the arena.
Choi heads toward the entrance while Nara nervously follows, questioning if they are truly at the right place.
A clear bell sound rings out as Choi steps inside the building.
An elderly woman knitting in the corner looks up and addresses Choi as sister.
Choi approaches the counter and explains she's searching for something while Nara waits nervously behind her.
The elderly shopkeeper continues her knitting as she inquires about the specific item Choi is looking for.
A sharp "ah" sounds as the woman looks up from her work to see Choi holding out a card.
A close-up reveals a hunter registration card for Hyun Choi, identifying her as a C-rank physical tanker. Returning to her knitting, the shopkeeper dismisses her and suggests she simply join a guild like other hunters her age.
Choi clarifies that she has no interest in joining a group, having just quit her previous guild the day before.
The elderly woman argues that as a C-rank, finding a new position should be effortless compared to lower-ranked hunters.
Choi remains firm, stating she is finished with that life and is currently taking a well-deserved break.
Letting out a dismissive tisk, the shopkeeper asks what there could possibly be to feel sick of.
She continues her lecture, claiming that Choi is merely complaining despite being blessed with power while Nara stays silent in the back.
The shopkeeper pauses, peering intently over the rims of her glasses as a thoughtful, escapes her.
A sudden chill fills the room as the woman bluntly asks Choi if she has killed someone, causing Nara to gasp in shock.
A clicking sound follows as the shopkeeper wonders aloud why a normal girl would seek out such a place.
Choi remains silent, her glowing red eye fixed on the woman in the tense, shadowed atmosphere.
Breaking the tension with a laugh, Choi denies the accusation as the shopkeeper tells her to leave if she's a troublemaker. A soft thud sounds as Choi leans her weight onto the wooden counter, refusing to back down.
With a dangerous glint in her eyes, Choi asks what it will take for the woman to grant her entry.
The elderly woman stares back, analyzing the fierce determination written across the black-haired girl's face.
A playful shush is signaled as the shopkeeper smirks and places a finger to her lips, acknowledging Choi's resolve.
Shifting back to a casual tone, Choi asks if she can use her card to pay for the transaction.
The shopkeeper grumbles about the surcharge for card payments and tells her to bring cash for future visits. A mechanical whirring sounds as the woman swipes the card through the payment terminal to finalize the fee.
Once the payment is cleared, the shopkeeper instructs the two girls to head straight down the hallway.
Choi and Nara move past the counter as the elderly woman points toward the hidden path in the back of the shop.
A rhythmic clicking sounds as Choi pushes aside a curtain of red beads to enter the restricted area.
Nara complains about the steep entrance fee, while Choi remains focused on the potential for massive earnings.
A roar of excitement erupts as they enter a massive underground arena filled with a cheering crowd surrounding a fighting cage.
Inside the ring, two fighters prepare to clash, while Choi realizes that betting here is strictly a cash-only business.
Turning around, Choi is surprised to find that Nara has disappeared from her side in the crowded stands.
Her attention is drawn toward a specific direction as she spots a familiar figure in the distance.
Choi is stunned to see Nara at a betting window, looking remarkably determined while holding a thick stack of cash.
Nara returns to her seat as Choi questions where she managed to get so much money and why she's acting so brave now.
Choi's expression darkens as a spark of irritation flares while she glares at her companion.
Nara reels back in alarm, frantically asking what she did wrong to deserve such a terrifying look.
Choi notes that Nara stayed silent while she struggled with the high introduction fee, making her look foolish at the shop.
Nara defends her actions, pointing out that Choi has her own deposit money while she has to worry about living expenses.
The pair descends into a heated argument about rent, bank loans, and having nowhere else to live.
The bickering is interrupted as a calm voice asks if this is their first time attending the arena matches.
Choi lets out a surprised "huh?" as she turns to see who is addressing them.
A tall, handsome man with vibrant red hair stands before them, casting a long shadow over their seats.
The red-haired stranger smiles politely and asks if he may join them by sitting in the empty seat.
Choi grants him permission, her gaze lingering on the newcomer's confident and friendly demeanor.
Sitting down, the man strikes up a conversation by asking which of the fighters they are planning to bet on.
The current match features two muscular brawlers identified by the crowd as Desert and Ocean.
Choi reveals she isn't here to bet but to fight, then turns the question back on the man to see his choice.
The red-haired man notes that the smartest move is to put money on the person who is undeniably the strongest.
He leans in with a knowing smile and asks if he should perhaps bet on someone like her.
A sharp "what" sounds in Choi's mind as she wonders if he recognized her rank or if he's simply free of common prejudices.
A glowing blue status window appears before Choi, but every single stop for the red-haired man is obscured by question marks.
Choi reels back in absolute shock as she realizes her examine skill has completely failed to reveal his true power level.
Choi realizes her rank has reached A and concludes the stranger must be her equal or superior since she can't see his stats.
She gazes at the red-haired man, wondering why a high-ranking hunter would visit such a lowly underground arena. The man leans closer and notes the arena's rank limit is C, then asks why someone like her is participating.
He observes that everyone must have their hunter certificates checked before being allowed to enter.
Focusing on Choi, he asks if she's using an illegal registration, prompting her to look back with a cold stare. Choi tells him to mind his own business and focus on the match instead of prying into her rank.
Nara jumps in defensively, yelling that they have their official certificates and don't appreciate his questioning.
The red-haired man lets out a dismissive puff of air, his smirk growing as he listens to Nara's shouting.
Nara continues her tirade, telling him to be a polite drunk and stop picking fights with innocent people.
When Choi asks who she's talking about, Nara points right at the man, claiming his nose is red from drinking.
From Nara's distorted perspective, the handsome stranger appears as a balding, middle-aged man with flushed cheeks.
Choi is confused, arguing he clearly looks their age, but Nara insists he's a balding, middle-aged man.
Choi notes that his hair is quite full, which causes the stranger to burst into a fit of loud laughter.
The man finds Nara's description hilarious while Choi realizes there's a serious discrepancy in how they see him. Choi begins to suspect that the man is using a high-level special item to disguise his true appearance. Doubled over in laughter, the red-haired man seems thoroughly entertained by Nara's insults.
Choi continues her internal analysis, wondering if his motive is simply to hide his true identity from others.
Her thoughts are interrupted by a sharp ringing sound as the bell signals the start of the next match. Two fighters, Desert Ruler and Ocean Storm, square off inside the cage as the audience prepares for the clash.
Nara's excitement returns instantly, her eyes widening as she cheers for the start of the fight.
Nara warns the man to stay quiet so she can focus on her bet, but he just laughs and agrees to watch. Choi observes that lower-ranked hunters likely can't see past the man's disguise, which explains Nara's confusion. The arena display shows the combatants, Park Duk-soo at E rank and Shin Bae-yeon at D rank. Nara asks for a prediction, and Choi notes that a higher rank usually guarantees a win in a fair fight.
Confident in her choice, Nara cheers because she put her money on the D rank fighter.
The E rank fighter suddenly gains the upper hand, prompting the man to mockingly ask if Nara wants to change her bet.
Blood splatters as the E rank fighter pushes forward with unexpected and brutal intensity.
The D rank fighter is slammed to the ground, leaving Nara panicked and screaming for him to get back up.
A barrage of strikes falls upon the fallen fighter as the E rank combatant maintains a dominant and ruthless position.
Choi finds the savage nature of the bout amusing, noting that it has truly turned into a literal dogfight.
The E rank fighter bites down on his opponent's shoulder, causing the D rank man to scream out in agony.
The stranger notes the fighter has sharpened teeth and predicts his victory, much to Nara's frustration.
He mocks Nara's denial of the brutal reality unfolding in the ring as her chosen fighter continues to struggle.
Choi notes the E ranker is fighting incredibly dirty as he continues to maul his opponent on the ground.
Nara is in a full panic, desperate for a counterattack as she remembers the large sum she bet.
The referee declares Desert Ruler the winner, leaving Nara's fighter defeated in the dirt as the stranger watches.
Nara's spirit seems to leave her body as she realizes she has lost all of her betting money. She wails in absolute despair, imagining her hard-earned cash flying away with wings.
The red-haired man smugly points out she should have listened to him, ignoring her breakdown on the floor. Choi laughs heartily at the spectacle, finding the chaos of the illegal match to be genuinely funny.
Enraged by the laughter, Nara grabs Choi by the collar and yells about her lost money.
Nara demands a solution while Choi's expression darkens significantly as she feels the hands on her shirt. A menacing aura surrounds Choi as her eyes glow with a dangerous red intensity.
Nara is struck by a sudden realization of danger, her eyes wide with shock as she freezes in place. Quickly releasing her grip, Nara frantically apologizes and asks when Choi plans to enter the ring to win her money back. Choi turns her back on the arena and coldly announces that she has changed her mind about fighting. As Nara begs her to reconsider, Choi thinks Nara should be grateful she didn't retaliate for being touched.
Choi reflects on the stranger's disguise again, noting that such a powerful item is likely illegal.
She concludes that anyone using such an item to hide their identity must have a very specific reason.
Her thoughts linger on the mysterious man, suspecting he is either a criminal or someone even more dangerous.
The red-haired man walks away. He turns back and asks if she has given up on participating, noting that she seems to have a conscience.
Choi asks how she can participate after being exposed and demands he take responsibility for her lost money.
Choi stands confidently in the light. The red-haired man refuses and suggests she join a guild to make better money instead of wasting her rank there.
Choi places a hand on his shoulder and asks why he is hanging around if fighting is just a hobby.
She stares intently and asks if he is using an illegal item. He insists it's just a hobby and tells her to go her own way since he ignored her cheating. Leaning in, she explains that she needs the distribution network he is aware of.
Choi asks him where he managed to obtain it.
Choi looks at him with a mysterious smile.
She specifically asks about that item.
He asks if she wants to become a criminal and declines to tell her anything.
Choi sighs and remarks that he is being quite stubborn. A sudden, deafening boom echoes through the arena as they both turn in shock. An announcement blares that an illegal gambling raid is underway as the crowd panics. Agents rush into the area, shouting orders to catch everyone involved. The red-haired man worries that getting caught would be troublesome and suggests they leave immediately. Choi grabs his wrist and asks where she is supposed to go. He asks what she is doing as she tells him he has to choose right now.
She gives him the option to take that.
A predatory smile crosses Choi's face.
She threatens that otherwise they will get caught together like this.
She maintains a firm grip on his arm.
She repeats her demand to be taken to his contact.
A sharp grip sounds as she tightens her hold on his wrist. The man yells at her to let go while she laughs and vows never to release him even if she dies.
An officer spots them and orders their arrest while Choi jokingly asks the police to take the guy away.
A quiet building stands isolated in the woods at sunset. A massive, fiery boom rips through the building, shattering the walls. The pair leaps away as the entire structure is engulfed in flames. They sprint through the forest together to evade their pursuers.
Choi asks if destroying buildings is allowed while he tells her to just hurry and follow him.
He asks what her plans are and if she is truly trying to become a criminal. Choi clarifies she wants an appraisal and might buy something useful if it's available.
She asks if he is A rank or S rank, but he tells her to examine him if she's curious, though she still sees nothing.
He mockingly suggests she should just raise her rank if she is upset about it. Choi complains that he makes such difficult things sound incredibly easy. She stops to catch her breath against a tree with a tired sigh. Choi catches up and notes his incredible speed, concluding he is definitely not A rank.
She looks at his back and wonders if he could actually be an S-rank hunter. He announces they have arrived as Choi asks how much further they have to go.
Choi lets out a confused huh as she looks around the area.
They stand before a solid, vine-covered rock wall in the middle of the forest. The man's hand reaches out to search the surface of the stone for a hidden mechanism. He warns her not to use his name once they enter, while Choi asks if he is famous since she doesn't know him.
He identifies himself as Kim Dong-ju and suggests they speak casually since they are likely the same age.
Choi agrees to the suggestion with a confident smile.
As a bright light reveals a hidden path, Choi reveals her age is 26. Choi notes they are the same age and says it's nice to meet him as they step inside.
A bustling market stretches through the vast, illuminated underground cave.
Choi looks at a merchant stall and asks who is responsible for digging out the caves. Kim Dong-ju explains that hunters did the work, much to the black-haired woman's surprise. The red-haired man notes that hunters with criminal records often end up working in places like this. As they walk, Choi asks how he knows so much and concludes he must have been a criminal.
Choi asks what he does now, guessing that someone of his caliber must be running a guild.
Kim Dong-ju says he is merely affiliated with a guild, prompting Choi to ask which one. With a smug smile, the red-haired man tells her that his guild is a secret.
An elderly appraiser examines Choi's hand and finds it strange that she can't see the item properly.
The older woman points to a ring on Choi's finger and asks where she obtained it. Choi explains she found the bound item in a dungeon and it refuses to come off her finger. The appraiser insists it should be removable, but Choi came to her because nothing has worked. Choi looks over at Kim Dong-ju and asks for help while he admits he's never seen such an item.
A tense silence falls as Choi stares blankly at the appraiser.
A sharp close-up focuses on Choi's intense red eyes.
The appraiser asks for permission to try removing the ring, and Choi agrees.
The older woman's hands grip the ring tightly to pull it from the finger. A sudden, violent burst of energy erupts from the ring as Choi winces in pain. Stunned by the feedback, the appraiser shouts a pained ouch as she recoils.
Choi notes the sudden pain she felt, while the woman identifies it as an incredibly strange item.
Realizing she can't appraise it normally, the woman asks Choi for the name of the item. Choi looks away with a troubled expression. The black-haired woman reveals the name is simply unknown and says she shouldn't talk about it carelessly. Closing her eyes, the appraiser apologizes and admits she won't be able to help Choi.
Choi looks down in silence, feeling the weight of the failed appraisal.
Choi stands up to leave the table, bidding the older woman farewell.
A system window details the shadow earring, which makes a wearer's stats invisible to those less than 2 ranks higher.
Choi is surprised to learn the item can hide her stats. She holds the thin gold earring up to her face to inspect it closely. A confident smile forms as she realizes even an S rank won't be able to see her true rank. At a jewelry display, Choi holds the earring and asks for the price. The appraiser quotes 300 and questions why a low-rank hunter would even need such an item. Appearing as an excited chibi, Choi asks if she is allowed to pay with a card. Chibi Kim Dong-ju lets out a weary sigh and offers to pay for the earring himself. Choi happily touches her ear where the new jewelry is now placed. She turns to Kim Dong-ju and asks if her rank is now invisible to him. He confirms he can't see it, noting that as an A rank, her status is now hidden from anyone up to S rank.
He clarifies it won't work against S ranks, though he claims she will likely never meet them.
A knowing smirk crosses Kim Dong-ju's face as he suggests that such an encounter could still happen. He leans in close and asks what kind of item she is using to hide her rank. Choi rushes toward another stall with excitement while Kim Dong-ju watches in disbelief. The red-haired man clicks his tongue in annoyance at her sudden departure.
Choi crouches down and worries about rumor spreading if she seeks out another appraiser.
She clutches her hand, feeling desperate for a different solution to the bound ring.
A sudden, shocking realization flashes in Choi's wide eye. A bold exclamation signals that she has finally found the answer.
A massive, ancient stone gate stands tall, identified as a hidden dungeon.
Choi determines that returning to that specific hidden dungeon is her only way to find a solution. Text reveals that only 11 hidden dungeons have appeared across the entire world. A global map shows the dungeon locations, focusing on the one discovered in Korea as hunters approach its gate. Only 2 of the locations are duplicates. Choi realizes that even after being cleared, hidden dungeons eventually reset in a new location.
She resolves to explore every available dungeon to return the bound ring to its origin.
Choi considers joining a guild again to gain dungeon access, though she clearly dreads the idea. Kim Dong-ju watches her with a sharp and calculating gaze. Kim Dong-ju haggles aggressively with the appraiser, who angrily calls him a swindler for underpaying. Reaching for his wallet, he insults the woman's skills and suggests it is time for her to retire. The appraiser wonders how she could have missed a new dungeon while Kim Dong-ju finds his cash. A tense silence follows as the red-haired man considers her words. He pays the full 300 while the woman connects his recent raid to the unknown item. Kim Dong-ju bids the old woman a mocking farewell as he prepares to leave.
The appraiser screams in indignation at his parting insult.
Kim Dong-ju startles Choi by correctly identifying her by her full name.
He reveals that he has a personal hobby of collecting rare items. Choi asks if he wants a ring, reminding him that the item cannot be removed. He suddenly grabs her hand and cryptically claims there is always a way. With a predatory grin, he suggests that he could just take her finger along with the ring. Choi looks at him with visible disgust, remarking on his twisted sense of humor. Kim Dong-ju finds it highly suspicious that an unknown item exists without any new dungeons appearing. He bluntly asks if she has managed to find a hidden dungeon. A menacing aura fills the space as he looms over the shocked black-haired woman. Choi feels cornered and curses her luck as she realizes his true intentions. The true reason he brought her to this isolated market finally becomes clear. Choi mocks his sick hobby, realizing she was lured here to be interrogated about the dungeon. Kim Dong-ju maintains a terrifyingly intense gaze as he pressures her for answers. She glares back with defiance despite the sweat of anxiety on her face. His overwhelming presence forces her into a defensive crouch as the atmosphere grows heavy. His eyes glow with a frightening power as he stares down at her. He is stunned to sense a massive amount of hidden magical power radiating from her.
Choi clenches her fist, preparing to release her pent-up energy.
A traumatic memory of being swarmed by giant insects in a dark cave flashes through her mind.
She determines that her current situation is nothing compared to the despair of that day.
The horror of her past experience fuels a sudden surge of desperate resolve. Choi lets out a raw, soul-shaking scream as her power begins to overflow. Kim Dong-ju is caught completely off guard as a violent energy begins to erupt. A massive, deafening shout echoes as a shockwave of blue energy levels everything in the room. Covering his ears in pain, Kim Dong-ju yells at her, asking if she has lost her mind. He is incredulous that she would use a combat skill in the middle of a city market. He notes that normally, weaker hunters instinctively submit to those of a higher rank. Choi proves she lacks that submissive instinct as she screams with eyes glowing with power. The origin of such a feral strength remains a total mystery. As the dust settles, Choi stands panting and exhausted amid the wreckage of the shop. She looks at him with pure hatred and calls him a bastard for provoking her. Kim Dong-ju raises his hands and apologizes, claiming his threat was just a joke that went too far. He realizes that this woman is his only chance to locate the hidden dungeon. He points out that she needs information on her item and proposes they work together. With a confident smile, he offers his help to find the hidden dungeon. A muffled voice from under the covers weakly refuses to eat anything.
A person with short blue hair lies face down on a bed, surrounded by an aura of deep depression.
Choi enters the room with a bag of porkcocks, trying to cheer them up with their favorite food. Choi holds a grocery bag and offers to eat the porkcocks alone since her friend refuses to get out of bed. A blue-haired woman cries and asks Choi where she went and why she abandoned her at a collapsing building. She continues her dramatic complaint that everyone left her behind.
Outside the apartment building at night, she shouts that while she understands Choi's point, she is still upset. Choi begins eating a large bone as the blue-haired woman asks if she is finally calm.
Sniffing back tears, the blue-haired woman starts to eat her portion with chopsticks. She asks how Choi will pay for her living expenses now that the fighting arena is gone and suggests they join a guild together. Choi declines the offer, stating she will look for the hidden dungeon instead and will be home late for a while. Her friend reacts with disbelief and asks where she is going and how she intends to find it. As Chibi Choi mentions dungeon hopping, the blue-haired woman asks how she can possibly enter a dungeon without a guild affiliation.
A speech bubble declares that the problem of guild affiliation has already been solved.
Choi explains to her friend that Kim Dong-ju has agreed to help her. The blue-haired woman is stunned and asks if Choi is referring to the famous S-rank hunter.
Choi is surprised that her friend recognizes the man just by his name.
She admits that the man himself didn't even recognize who he was when he was sitting right next to her. The blue-haired woman accuses her of lying, insisting an S-rank wouldn't be at a dogfighting arena and that the man was likely a middle-aged imposter.
She pulls out her smartphone to show Choi what the real Kim Dong-ju looks like.
She laughs at Choi's mistake and points out that the real hunter is much younger than the man Choi described.
A photo of the red-haired Kim Dong-ju appears as she explains he belongs to the elite Paehyuk Guild, causing Choi to realize it is the same man. The blue-haired woman lets out a sharp, shocked exclamation.
She slams her hands down on the table in absolute disbelief.
She asks again if that older-looking man was truly the famous hunter. Chibi Choi asks if he was using a transformation item while the blue-haired woman screams, "Wah!" in total shock. Despondent, the woman regrets saying rude things to him, though Choi assures her that he doesn't care. She sighs, realizing she can never join his guild now, prompting Choi to ask what is so special about Paehyuk.
Her friend yells that the guild is not just an ordinary organization. She explains that Paehyuk members never worry about money because of their massive welfare benefits.
A bold graphic introduces the legendary Paehyuk Guild. The guild's blue emblem is revealed, featuring a winged shield and a central blade. It is noted that the guild was established by one of only 2 SS rank hunters in the world.
A dark silhouette represents the immensely powerful founder of the guild.
3 of the world's 8 S-rank hunters are affiliated with the group.
Paehyuk is evaluated to have influence comparable to a nation due to its overwhelming power. A massive modern glass skyscraper serves as the prestigious headquarters for the guild.
The hiring process for the organization is incredibly selective, with a 1,000-to-1 competition rate.
Chibi Choi focuses on her meat and asks if the food is delicious.
Slices of pork hock sit on the table as her friend tells her to eat plenty.
Choi stares ahead with a look of intense focus.
Kim Dong-ju looks over his shoulder and asks why she is looking at him like that.
Choi says it is fascinating that he is a member of Paehyuk, and he wonders how she discovered the secret he tried to keep.
He questions why she brought a shield and asks if she thought they were entering a dungeon. With a mischievous smirk, he tells her she will see the reason once they arrive. Choi demands he tell her the secret quickly while he insists she just hurry up and follow him. They continue walking through the woods as Choi looks at his back.
He warns her not to let her guard down because illegal dungeons are far more dangerous than she thinks. A swirling, dark pink portal of energy marks the entrance to the illegal dungeon.
A green lizard monster lunges from the shadows with a loud "Ah!" The monster's head is blown apart, identified by the system as an F-rank lizard soldier common monster. Choi stands over the bloody remains and asks why he told her to be tense when the monster was so weak. Kim Dong-ju kicks a monster away and explains that illegal dungeons usually contain only low-rank threats, causing Choi to call him a bastard for tricking her. Kim Dong-ju strikes down a monster while explaining that they must continue searching everywhere for the hidden dungeon.
A chibi Kim Dong-ju asks why Choi is still carrying her shield instead of storing it, mockingly suggesting she is simply showing off her rank.
A heavy thud echoes as the massive clawed foot of a green monster slams onto the sandy ground. Standing atop a rocky ledge, Choi and Kim Dong-ju look down at an E-rank boss monster identified as a lizard general. Kim Dong-ju looks back at Choi and asks if they should explore the surrounding area more before engaging the boss.
Choi gazes ahead with a neutral expression, considering her next move.
The lizard general focuses its predatory yellow eye on them, its thoughts filled with a single, murderous intent. Moving with blinding speed, Choi lunges at the creature as a sharp sound affects the air around her strike. With a violent splash of blood, Choi decapitates the boss in one motion, questioning why they should waste time on unnecessary tasks. Holding the monster's severed head, she turns away and bluntly states that she is in a hurry.
A faint blue light pulses from the ornate bound ring on her finger. She makes the firm decision to immediately depart for another dungeon. A giant insectoid monster screeches "Kiak" as it lunges with bared fangs in a dark cave-like setting.
A younger Choi desperately blocks the creature's massive pincers with her shield as purple energy sparks from the impact.
Terrified and overwhelmed, Choi screams for someone named Hyunchan to help her, crying out that she cannot hold on any longer.
A hand suddenly reaches out and grips her shoulder as a voice calls her name through the chaos.
A man with glowing blue eyes looms over the crying woman, who remains curled in a defensive crouch behind her shield.
The man smiles coldly and reminds her that the guild sponsorship is the reason she is there.
He reaches a hand toward her long dark hair as she trembles in visible fear.
He demands that she prove she is worth the investment they made in her.
Choi falls through a dark, red-tinted void surrounded by dozens of glowing eyes, looking small and helpless.
Waking up with a sudden, panicked "Ah!" Choi sits up in her bed, drenched in a cold sweat. A series of sharp gasps escape her as she tries to steady her breathing in the dim light of her room. She lets out a long, weary sigh while looking at her hand, which is trembling from the lingering effects of the nightmare. Clenching her fist tightly, she bitterly resolves that if the man from her dream is dead, it is of no concern to her. Choi remains sitting on the bed, frustrated that the past continues to haunt her even in her sleep. She looks over at her roommate and remarks that some people seem to have no trouble sleeping soundly. Choi stares down at her sleeping friend with a dark and intensely focused expression. The blue-haired woman sleeps peacefully, completely unaware of the heavy atmosphere in the room. As a soft creak sounds, Choi looks away and darkly thinks that while she could kill the woman at any time, it is not yet the right moment. Moving to the kitchen, Choi reaches into the refrigerator as the door opens with a dull sound. A steady stream of water splashes into a blue-patterned mug. The morning silence is shattered by a desperate shout of "I'm late!" Choi watches with a startled expression as her roommate frantically scrambles to get ready. Hopping on one foot while putting on a shoe, Nara announces she is rushing to an interview at the Hawaiian Guild. Sipping her water, Choi points out that the alarm failed to go off and offers to drive her there.
Nara looks back in confusion and reminds Choi that she does not even own a vehicle.
A sudden, loud horn blast startles Nara as a sleek, expensive black car pulls up outside.
Kim Dong-ju leans out of the window with a charming smile and asks Nara if she has been doing well.
Nara stands frozen in absolute terror, stammering the S-rank hunter's name in shock.
Choi casually tells her friend to drop the formalities since they are all the same age, while Kim Dong-ju wonders why she is making that decision.
Nara spirals into a silent panic, worrying that her past rudeness has finally caught up to her. A pained grunt escapes Nara as her face contorts with stress and regret.
In a dramatic display of despair, Nara's soul appears to leave her body as she tearfully begs Kim Dong-ju to spare her life.
The black car speeds down a busy city road with a loud whoosh of movement.
Inside the car, Choi asks Nara where she needs to be dropped off, while Nara sits in the back looking utterly drained.
Kim Dong-ju asks for the name of the guild where her interview is taking place, and Nara weakly confirms it is Hwayeon.
He notes that the Hwayeon Guild grew significantly after its master returned from a hidden dungeon.
A dark, knowing smile crosses his face as he admits that he is not on good terms with that particular group.
Nara tearfully asks if they are on good terms with her, recalling his threat to her finger, while the two in the front argue over who is truly cooperating with whom. A chibi version of Nara tearfully pleads for them to delay their fight until after she makes her exit.
As they reach the destination, a man in a black suit and sunglasses welcomes them.
Kim Dong-ju inquires about the state of the dungeon while the guard confirms they are cleared for entry. Choi eyes the guards with suspicion, but the red-haired hunter clarifies that they are simply fellow guild members.
He teases her for being naive about dungeon logistics, while Choi irritably suggests she should report the illegal operation.
Kim Dong-ju points out that such a report would endanger her as well, leading her to dryly suggest finding a different partner.
Choi insists they proceed immediately so they can finish the job and part ways.
The guild guards behind Kim Dong-ju are visibly taken aback by Choi's blunt and dismissive attitude.
Noticing their staring, Kim Dong-ju snaps at his subordinates to focus on guarding the perimeter.
He scratches his neck in annoyance, wondering why they were finding the situation so amusing.
A look of sharp intensity crosses the red-haired man's face as he prepares to move forward.
They transition into a lush forest area where Choi reiterates her desire for a swift conclusion.
A sudden, sharp pulse of blue light emanates from the ring on Choi's hand.
She recoils in confusion, startled by the strange and sudden sensation.
The golden ring with its crystalline gem sparkles with an ominous, lingering glow.
Choi studies her hand closely, questioning if her mind is playing tricks on her.
Kim Dong-ju calls out to her, prompting Choi to explode in anger at his perceived tardiness.
The hunter is unbothered by her outburst, thinking that she is acting far too bossy.
Despite her irritation, Choi focuses her mind on the need to gather more information about their surroundings.
High above, three-eyed bird monsters let out piercing screeches as they begin their descent.
A massive taloned foot crashes down toward the dark-haired woman.
A blinding flash of light erupts as the monsters are met with a powerful counterattack.
The avian creatures are blown apart by a sequence of rapid, energetic strikes.
Moving with lethal precision, Choi delivers a high kick that shatters a monster mid-air.
Kim Dong-ju watches the slaughter, noting that Choi seems unusually aggressive and on edge.
He concludes that they will not find their target today and suggests they call it quits.
Choi does not respond, her eye glowing with a faint predatory red light. Without warning, Choi lunges at the red-haired hunter with a violent strike. Kim Dong-ju catches her fist with a laugh, seemingly entertained by her sudden hostility. He remains calm and asks why she has suddenly decided to turn her aggression toward him.
Choi's eyes burn with rage as she challenges him, asking if he truly wants to compete with her.
They clash in the middle of the field, a blur of motion as she tries to overpower him.
The hunter holds her hand firmly, a smirk playing on his lips despite the tension.
Choi's fingers dig in with inhuman strength as a sharp sound affects the struggle.
Kim Dong-ju decides to stop playing around, declaring that he will no longer hold his power back.
A massive surge of blue energy erupts, sending Choi tumbling backward through the air. She skids violently across the grass before managing to dig her heels in and stop her momentum.
Breathless and disoriented, Choi stares ahead with wide, glowing white eyes. A sudden look of realization and shock replaces her feral expression as she regains her senses.
Trembling with sweat on her brow, she inwardly questions what just took control of her actions. Kim Dong-ju tells her she looks exhausted and should stay back while he handles the boss monster. He walks away with casual confidence, leaving the shaken woman alone in the clearing.
Choi lets out a sharp gasp and clutches her head, struggling against a mounting internal pressure.
Looking down with a grimace, she wonders if pursuing this hidden dungeon was a mistake.
She feels a deep sense of dread, realizing her physical form is beginning to feel alien to her.
Her gaze falls on the ring, suspecting that the artifact is actively attempting to usurp her body.
Later that evening, Choi returns to the apartment and calls out to her roommate.
Choi enters with groceries to find Nara slumped over in despair, prompting her to ask what happened. Nara groans about her failed job search, while Choi admits she is having just as much trouble.
Choi chops a bag of food onto her friend's lap and tells her it is time to eat.
Nara looks into the grocery bag and asks what its contents are. Entering the apartment, Choi identifies the food as pork hocks and asks if they have any alcohol available.
A sharp bang echoes as Nara slams a glass onto the table, swearing in her intense frustration.
Slumped over the table, Nara laments her inability to find a job as a common C-rank buffer. Nara continues her drunken rant about her miserable life while Choi sips her drink and plans her next dungeon raid. Choi listens with a weary expression as Nara expresses a desperate wish to become stronger like her.
In a fit of agitation, the chibi-styled Nara complains that gaining stats through hunting is impossible for a non-attacker.
Nara shouts about the perceived unfairness of her situation.
The blue-haired woman falls into a sullen, tearful silence.
Nara looks up and asks if Choi's sudden power is due to an item from the hidden dungeon.
Envious of her friend's fortune, Nara asks if she can join Choi in searching for hidden dungeons.
Choi's eyes glow with a predatory red light as she darkly wonders why Nara is so dissatisfied.
Nara looks down in despair, lamenting that she is not as lucky as her friend.
A grim memory shows a younger Choi being swarmed by massive predatory insect monsters. Trapped and covered in blood, the younger Choi weeps as a giant creature prepares to devour her.
An internal thought declares that her strength was forged purely for the sake of survival. An angry message demands to know how Nara can speak so carelessly about things she does not understand.
Choi's gaze turns murderous as she considers if she should kill the woman right then.
Unaware of the danger, Nara laughs off her complaints and notes they have run out of alcohol.
Choi asks Nara if she truly believes luck was involved, causing the blue-haired woman to stammer in confusion.
With a chilling smile, Choi asks Nara if she has lost her sense of guilt after spouting such nonsense.
Nara's expression turns to pure dread as she realizes she has deeply offended her friend.
Joy's red eye narrows as she demands a better explanation for Nara's careless words.
Nara tearfully begs for forgiveness, claiming her drunken state made her act irrationally.
A wave of regret washes over Nara as she recalls that Choi barely survived her ordeal.
A gruesome image of a severed limb lying in a pool of blood underscores the trauma Choi endured.
Nara's eyes widen in horror as she repeats her desperate apology.
Shaking with fear, Nara pleads for her friend to pretend she never heard the offensive remarks.
Choi remains silent while Nara continues to admit her wrongdoings with a trembling, fearful voice.
Softening her gaze, Choi lets out a weary sigh and acknowledges that Nara's curiosity is only natural.
Choi tells Nara to finish her meal and warns her to never mention the topic again.
An uncomfortable silence fills the room as a soft clinking sounds from the two women eating. Choi studies the liquid in her glass with a cold and calculating expression.
Choi suddenly calls out her roommate's name, startling the blue-haired woman. Choi admits that while she nearly died in the dungeon, she was able to obtain her ring.
Nara asks if the ring's power was the reason Choi was able to survive.
Choi's red eye glints as she clarifies the ring did not possess any such convenient ability.
A system message confirms there is only one way to increase one's stats.
Choi reveals she achieved her current level of power through an incredible number of repetitions.
Nara stares back with a look of stunned disbelief. The blue-haired woman scratches her head, still struggling to process the strange explanation.
Nara points out the impossibility of a tanker killing so many monsters alone in such a short time.
Nara's blue eyes focus intently as she brings up a specific inconsistency in the story. Nara notes that Choi emerged from the dungeon almost immediately after the entrance had closed.
Choi remains silent as Nara looks toward her with an intensely questioning gaze.
Nara asks for a detailed explanation of what exactly happened to Choi inside that dungeon. The blue-haired woman's face is pale with a mounting sense of dread.
Choi looks at her roommate and bluntly states that she died many times.
A horrifying montage shows Choi being torn apart and decapitated thousands of times, only to repeatedly return to life. Nara's eyes are wide with shock as she repeats the claim that Choi kept dying. Choi explains that her strength was earned through constant death and killing. A vision depicts younger Choi being devoured by mantis monsters. She laments the incomprehensible pain she was forced to endure.
Choi notes that time remained frozen for her roommate.
The black-haired woman smirks while explaining her transformation. Nara stares back with a look of stunned disbelief.
The blue-haired woman insists that such events are impossible.
Choi reveals she gained power by slaughtering her predators.
Nara is left speechless by the terrifying explanation. Nara asks about finding hidden dungeons together in the future.
The blue-haired woman admits she cannot understand the situation. Choi tells her to simply accept the story as fact.
Nara shouts in shock while leaning across the table. Tears well up in Nara's eyes as she processes everything.
Choi studies her roommate with a cold, unreadable gaze.
A small, mocking pft escapes the dark-haired woman. Choi bursts into loud, wild laughter at Nara's reaction.
She winks, claiming she spared Nara only on a whim.
Nara falls into a heavy, troubled silence at the table. The blue-haired woman's face is etched with genuine distress. Choi remains quiet, her expression turning sharp and distant. Above the house, Choi mocks Nara for her tearful state.
Kim Dong-ju asks if she has ever received an apology.
A massive monster charges as Choi asks for clarification. The red-haired hunter suggests apologies from family or friends.
He comments on the peculiar nature of her life.
Choi admits she expected to spend her life apologizing.
A flashback shows Choi being abandoned as the door is sealed. In the past, Nara offers her a tearful, desperate apology. A narrative thought reflects on receiving a completely unexpected apology.
Choi notes the apology came from the wrong person.
For the first time, she felt truly seen by another.
A rare and gentle smile touches Choi's gaze. Kim Dong-ju watches her with a calm, observant gaze.
A monster carcass lies nearby as the two walk.
A quick bite sounds as Kim enters the psalm.
He wonders if Nara can be used to control Choi. The red-haired hunter recoils in sudden, visible alarm. He wonders why a muscular gorilla is in his apartment. Kim dreads his sister discovering his illegal activities. The blonde woman scolds him for playing around.
He lazily claims he was only searching for items. The blonde sister remains deeply suspicious and watchful.
A thought bubble asks if he was hunting tuntins. The muscular blonde woman glares at him with intensity.
Kim Dong-ju continues to deny any wrongdoing while resting.
A sudden thwack sounds as she punches him into the sofa. Kim Dong-ju shouts in anger, denying that he swore. A sudden swish sounds as she delivers a powerful kick. The blonde woman charges again with a mocking grin.
Kim Dong-ju's blonde sister continues her assault, accusing him of being absent while the guildmaster knocked her and threatening to leave him half dead.
A sudden thack sounds as Kim Dong-ju catches her hands, desperately insisting he was not simply playing around. The blonde woman stares at him in stunned silence. With a mischievous glint in his eye, the red-haired hunter inwardly apologizes to Choi, deciding to use her name as an excuse. His sister's eye widens in total shock as she processes the claim that he is dating someone. A sharp quack sounds as the muscular woman grabs him by the collar, shouting in disbelief that a man like him could actually meet a woman. Kim Dong-ju shouts back in indignation, asking if that is any way to speak to her own brother. Relaxing her grip with a soft tack, the blonde woman apologizes for her reaction, admitting the idea is novel before asking where they met.
Adjusting his clothes with an annoyed expression, he explains he ran into her during a viewing the other day.
A vision of the black-haired woman appears as he admits he saw her by chance and decided she was exactly his type. Resting his chin on his hand, he continues the fabrication, claiming they have been meeting regularly since their initial chat. The scene shifts to the living room as the skeptical sister asks for confirmation that this woman is actually real. Looking him dead in the eye, the blonde woman asks if this mysterious person is dangerous. Kim Dong-ju casually explains that she recently left her job and is simply taking some time to rest. Leaning back on the sofa, he suggests she might as well meet him during her downtime, describing their relationship as a bit of flirting.
He inwardly sighs, repeating his apology to Choi while justifying his lie as a means of survival.
His sister's voice booms as she asks if he truly has time to waste on flirting right now. She leans in aggressively, demanding to know when he plans to get back to work. Frustrated by the constant nagging, Kim Dong-ju shouts that he will get to work soon. Scratching her head, the blonde woman warns him to be careful because the guildmaster is keeping a close watch on him. The red-haired hunter falls into thought, wondering if he should try to lay low for a while. He laments that there is only one reason his sister is being so persistent, letting out a weary sigh. Both siblings slump on the sofa in chibi form, realizing their problem stems from a lack of dungeon party members. A memory shows a dungeon raid where a group leader shouts for everyone to hold their positions until his signal. The chaotic scene shows the party members panicking as the two siblings ignore the plan and charge ahead.
Slaying monsters with a wild grin, Kim Dong-ju declares that he will be the one to win their competition today.
A sudden ooh-ah sounds as the blonde sister unleashes a wave of blood magic, laughing that it will not be that easy for him. A heavy kwang and pong echo as the siblings compete, while the narrator notes they never followed the leader's instructions. A soft okay sounds as bizarre, multi-eyed spike monsters fall through the air toward the group. A quick ting and pack sound as the siblings mock the danger, laughing that the deadly spikes are nothing more than toothpicks. A chorus of kaya and sounds as the other party members are left injured and weeping in the wake of the siblings' recklessness. Standing amidst the ruins, the two realize their behavior caused so many problems that other guild members now refuse to work with them.
Looking sullen, the blonde woman notes they are trying to find someone who actually matches their style during the next recruitment.
Kim Dong-ju questions the need for such effort, suggesting they could simply lure in any unsuspecting person.
They both sit in silence, acknowledging the truth of the situation.
The red-haired man lets out a tired poof. A devious smile touches the blonde woman's face as she suggests recruiting his new flirting partner instead.
Stunned by the suggestion, Kim Dong-ju can only stare back in confusion. He asks if she has gone mad, but his sister argues that the woman is an unaffiliated hunter and therefore a perfect candidate. Grinning, she suggests it would be even better to have a romantic date together inside a dungeon. Her gaze turns chillingly intense as she tells him not to worry, as she only cares about killing monsters. Terrified, he watches as she begins to laugh about how many things she can tear apart, looking like a different person entirely. She begins bombarding him with questions about where the woman lives and what her parents are like, leaving him completely overwhelmed. He inwardly screams, wondering if this muscular gorilla has finally lost her mind. The scene shifts to the quiet apartment building under the night sky. Standing outside, Nara admits to herself that she is dreading going back inside for the first time. She reflects on how spectacular and shocking yesterday was, recalling the trauma in Choi's story that forced her to apologize. Reaching for the door, she wonders what else she can possibly do in this situation. She decides that treating her friend well is the least she can do for atonement, letting out a weary sigh.
Nara enters and calls out for her roommate, only to let out a terrified "ah" as Choi suddenly appears from the darkness.
Choi asks Nara why she is home so early, explaining she was waiting for her, which leaves the blue-haired woman confused.
With a bright, happy smile, the black-haired woman announces that she is moving out.
Nara can only stare back with a look of mounting dread and shock. Choi's narrative thoughts reflect her frustration at being unable to find the hidden dungeon while noting her body feels strange.
A narrative bubble suggests that the mysterious ring might be the source of her troubles.
Lying in bed, Choi wonders why her physical condition is becoming increasingly peculiar.
A dark vision of Choi with glowing eyes appears as she notes that, fortunately, nothing happened to her body today.
The narrative confirms her suspicion that the ring is responsible for her current state. Choi reflects on her lifestyle, noting that besides dungeons, she spends the vast majority of her time at home.
Nara eats her meal in silence, looking slightly skeptical and amused.
During dinner, Choi reaffirms her plan to move, and Nara admits that while it seems extreme, she understands. Nara asks about the timeline and location, and Choi explains she needs about 2 weeks to find a new place.
Changing the subject, Nara compliments her roommate on the quality of the meal. In chibi form, Choi boasts that she can prepare almost any dish as long as she has the right ingredients.
Choi smiles gently while admitting the cooking actually turned out quite well once she tried it.
Choi mentions she used to cook for An Hin-chan every day, causing a sudden spray to sound as Nara spits out her food in shock.
Nara's voice is strained as she chokes while blaming her roommate, though Choi simply tells her to eat more slowly. A quick buzz sounds as Nara's attention is drawn to a vibrating smartphone on the table.
The blue-haired woman picks up the phone, her eyes widening as she reads the screen.
A close-up shows Nara's eye trembling in total disbelief at what she is seeing.
Nara gasps loudly, prompting a surprised Choi to ask what is wrong.
Overjoyed, Nara shouts that she has officially passed the first test for a new guild.
Weeping with joy in chibi form, Nara shouts her gratitude toward the Peihuk Guild.
Nara desperately prays to pass the second test, even offering total obedience to the guild if they accept her. As Nara continues her fervent prayer, Choi asks when the second test is scheduled to take place. Nara explains the test is in 3 days and includes a 2-day training camp starting tomorrow. Excited shouts fill the air as Nara suggests they party tonight and bring out the soju. The two roommates celebrate wildly, with Nara cheering that they should drink until they die. A loud shout echoes from the apartment building as night falls over the city. Nara sprawls across her bed, laughing happily about how wonderful life feels. A very drunk Nara wishes Choi a good night while the black-haired woman laughs at her state.
Choi hugs a blue slime plushie tightly, wishing Nara a good night in return.
Nara lies awake in the dark room, her expression turning somber and thoughtful. Nara calls out her roommate's name, and Choi offers a quiet response from her bed. The blue-haired woman asks if Choi truly believes she is capable of doing well in the upcoming test.
Choi teases her for asking a question she already knows the answer to, though Nara defensively denies it.
Nara grumbles in irritation while Choi dismisses the tension with a weary comment. Choi tells Nara to simply be herself, which leaves the blue-haired woman looking confused.
Choi encourages her by mentioning her previous success and the fact that she already passed the first round. Nara offers a small, blushing smile and a quiet word of thanks.
Choi continues to tease Nara about her obvious insecurities before they both settle in for the night. A sudden buzz sounds as a notification lights up a smartphone on the bed.
Choi checks the screen while Nara sleeps soundly in the bunk below her.
A message from Kim Dong-ju appears, asking Choi if she has any interest in joining the Paeok Guild. The black-haired woman stares at the message with a knowing, slightly mocking smirk.
A soft thud sounds as Choi puts the phone away, wishing the hunter would just take her to the hidden dungeon instead. Morning light fills the sky above the apartment building as a new day begins.
Kim Dong-ju stands outside, letting out a heavy, stressed sigh while clutching his head. The muscular blonde woman smiles broadly while wearing stylish sunglasses.
Choi looks on with a sharp, alert expression as she realizes who has arrived.
Kim Yun-han introduces herself as Kim Dong-ju's sister and mentions having heard quite a lot about Choi.
Choi wonders why Kim Dong-ju has been talking about her and why his sister is seeking her out.
Looking perplexed, Choi simply responds with a confused inquiry. A quick shh sounds as Kim Dong-ju signals for silence with a nervous expression on his face.
Removing her sunglasses, Kim Yun-han clarifies she does not have a sister complex and just wanted an in-person meeting.
She remarks that it is a first for her to see someone turn down a scout from the Paeok Guild.
With a confident smirk, the blonde woman explains she has returned to extend a formal offer once more. Kim Yun-han extends her hand and asks Choi if she would like to join their guild. The blonde sister continues her appeal, hoping Choi will reconsider the offer. She emphasizes that it is a difficult offer for any hunter to refuse, promising benefits that ordinary hunters cannot imagine.
A narration bubble notes that being scouted as an unknown hunter is nearly a miracle in their world. She points out that the offer is especially rare for someone ranked as a C-rank hunter. The blonde woman explains the condition is simply running dungeons together, adding that Dong-ju will ensure she stays perfectly safe.
With a glint in her eye, she highlights the rarity of the opportunity and the potential for earning massive amounts of money.
Choi maintains a cold, unimpressed expression as she listens to the pitch.
Stunned by the response, the blonde sister lets out a shocked shout of disbelief.
Kim Dong-ju wears a subtle smirk, noting to himself that the outcome was exactly as he expected. Agitated, Kim Yun-han demands to know why she is refusing and asks if she even knows what the Paeok Guild is.
She leans in closer, asking Choi if she truly does not recognize who she's talking to.
The sister assumes the refusal must be because Choi thinks the offer is a scam due to not recognizing her.
Choi deadpans that she knows they are the famous miracle siblings, while the blonde sister screams about the refusal in chibi form.
Kim Yun-han clutches her head in shock while Kim Dong-ju expresses how embarrassing the situation has become.
Dong-ju interjects, suggesting Choi has her reasons and that they should just go home, desperate to end the awkward encounter.
Terrified of being caught in his lie about dating Choi, Kim Dong-ju urges his sister to get a grip while Choi watches them in silence.
A title card identifies the famous duo as the miracle siblings, Kim Yun-han and Kim Dong-ju.
A flashback shows the two posing for the media, surrounded by flashing cameras and blinding lights.
A narrative note mentions that Nara had previously told her about the media's nickname for the pair.
Choi's internal thought remains focused on the core mystery of why they came looking for her specifically.
Surrounded by question marks, Choi's deadpan expression reflects her mounting confusion.
A heavy thud sounds as Kim Yun-han falls to her knees in despair, lamenting that they have nowhere else to find party members.
Choi asks why there are no other hunters in their guild, causing Kim Dong-ju to stammer in response. Dragging his sister away, Kim Dong-ju insists it is nothing and that they just have high standards for matching styles.
Losing her patience, Kim Yun-han shouts that if Choi will not join them in dungeons, she should stop meeting Dong-ju.
Shocked by her outbursts, the chibi red-haired man asks his sister if she has finally lost her mind.
Choi looks down at her shoes as she considers the bizarre situation.
A quick step sounds as Choi moves forward, while Kim Dong-ju warns her that she does not need to listen to the gorilla.
With a polite smile, Choi apologizes and tells the hunter that she simply does not like him.
Choi bursts into laughter, joined by the blonde sister who finds the direct observation amusing, while Dong-ju fumes in the background.
A sudden, sharp crack sounds as a dark rift begins to tear through the air.
A quick zzz sounds as Choi's eye begins to glow with an intense supernatural energy.
Sensing a shift in the atmosphere, Choi wonders about the strange feeling while the siblings continue to argue behind her.
Kim Dong-ju looks back with a confused expression, sensing her sudden change in mood.
The black-haired woman stares intensely at the space behind the siblings. A close-up reveals Choi's eye vibrating with a powerful and ominous light.
A loud quang sounds as a massive explosion of purple energy erupts, and Choi shouts for them to look behind them.
A sharp crackle sounds as Choi desperately yells that they need to evacuate the area immediately. The purple rift shatters the sky, sending bolts of lightning-like energy cascading downward.
As they sprint away, Kim Dong-ju asks how she knew about the danger, but Choi tells the kid to just keep running.
The apartment building is dwarfed by the massive, pulsing energy of the dungeon gate opening right above it.
A deafening boom sounds as the area is consumed by a blinding flash of violet light.
A sharp clatter sounds as a purple-tinted barrier shatters into 1,000 fragments.
A massive, swirling vortex of violet energy erupts in the middle of the street, dwarfing the surrounding apartment buildings with its power. Running for safety, the black-haired woman remarks on the scale of the gate, while Kim Dong-ju notes how close they came to death.
A close-up of the woman's purple iris shows her gaze sharpening as she notices something within the chaos.
A quick zzz sounds as purple lightning crackles through the air, illuminating the crumbling city streets.
Ominous bolts of electricity continue to arc through the atmosphere around the expanding dungeon gate.
A sudden, sharp tweet sounds as an officer signals the crowd to stay back, warning them that the area is strictly off-limits.
Surveying the ruins, Kim Dong-ju laments how every new dungeon appearance brings total destruction to the area.
Choi looks toward the glowing rift and asks the red-haired hunter when they will finally be allowed to enter.
Choi suggests they can enter any new dungeon without a guild on a first-come basis, though a chibi Kim Dong-ju dismisses the idea immediately. Kim Yeon-han shouts in frustration at being blocked, while the black-haired woman recognizes a familiar face among the officials. The blonde woman stares down the officer as Choi identifies the woman as Song A-kyung.
A profile identifies Song A-kyung as an A-rank buffer and an officer of the Soul Hunter Special Unit.
Kim Dong-ju asks his sister what she did wrong this time, prompting Kim Yeon-han to angrily explain they are being barred from the dungeon they found. The red-haired man tries to mediate the argument, but Officer Song remains firm about following official protocol. Terrified of a potential dungeon break, Kim Yeon-han demands to know how long they are expected to wait for the red tape to clear. The officer calmly assures her that no disaster will happen and reminds the blonde hunter that she still needs to form a proper party. Kim Yeon-han shouts that her guild members will arrive soon, but Officer Song remains unimpressed and reiterates the need for procedure. Panting and apologizing for her tardiness, the Paeuk Guild's A-rank healer, Nam Yeon-soo, arrives on the scene with her staff. Looking perplexed, Kim Yeon-han asks why the healer is alone and wonders about the location of their tanker. Nam Yeon-soo explains that the tankers refuse to come because they trust the two S-ranks to handle it alone, sending Kim Yeon-han into a fit of rage. The blonde woman desperately asks Choi if she will join them since no other tanker wants the job, but she suddenly realizes the woman is gone. Realizing the black-haired woman has vanished, the siblings shout in alarm while a fading silhouette marks where she stood. The group looks up at the massive portal in the sky, a growing sense of dread taking hold as they realize she might have gone in. A bold narration bubble expresses the collective shock at the possibility of her entering the dungeon alone. The city buildings are silhouetted against the blinding, violet light of the pulsing gateway in the sky. Stunned, the hunters confirm that Choi has actually entered the B-rank dungeon without any support. Kim Dong-ju stares in disbelief, thinking to himself that the black-haired woman is even more insane than his sister. Nam Yeon-soo asks if such a move is allowed, and Dong-ju confirms it is not, and that their guildmaster will be furious. Enraged by Choi's boldness, Kim Yeon-han shouts that she should have just ignored the rules and charged in as well. A weary Kim Dong-ju tells his sister to calm down because Choi is just a weirdo, but Yeon-han screams that she wants to be weird too. A quick patter sounds as the blonde woman tries to sprint toward the gate, only for her brother to grab her arm in desperation. Desperate to be held back, Kim Yeon-han shouts for everyone to grab her as Kim Dong-ju struggles to restrain her. The blonde hunter fumes and threatens her brother as he continues to hold her back from the dangerous gateway. Kim Dong-ju clenches his fist in frustration, taking back his earlier thoughts and deciding that everyone around him is completely crazy. Officer Song A-kyung calls out to the red-haired man to get his attention. The officer asks for confirmation that it was indeed Choi who entered, while Kim Dong-ju continues to hold his struggling sister on the ground. Song A-kyung looks down thoughtfully, seemingly processing the identity of the person who breached the dungeon. In chibi form, Kim Dong-ju asks why the officer is curious about Choi, but she simply dismisses the question. Dong-ju grows somber, worried that others are becoming interested in Choi while lamenting his own inability to enter and help her. A sudden, sharp tweet sounds as a chibi Song A-kyung blows her whistle at a confused Choi. A narrative warning states that Choi will be sent to prison as a rank falsifier, showing her posing for a mugshot in a striped uniform. Kim Dong-ju stares off into the distance, noting how incredibly troublesome the entire situation has become. An analyst steps out of a mobile unit and announces that the official results of the dungeon scan are finally ready. The man with glasses reveals that the current dungeon is officially classified as a B-rank threat. He continues his report, warning that the magical power levels are excessive and a dungeon break is imminent. Nam Yeon-soo reacts with shock in chibi form, realizing that the monster count inside the gate must be rising rapidly.
As the analyst explains they are waiting for clearing permission, an angry Kim Yeon-han yells about the risk of repeating the tragedy from 8 years ago.
Kim Dong-ju tries to speak to his sister, but his expression remains tense.
Livid, the blonde woman tells her brother to shut up if he isn't planning on helping her bypass the authorities.
Kim Dong-ju watches the situation with concern. Choi declares her intent to lead and leaps into the rift.
Stepping onto the grass, she expresses her annoyance with the situation.
Looking around the empty forest, she wonders why such a large dungeon appears to be vacant.
Choi's purple eyes sharpens with focus.
Spotting structures in the distance, she asks what kind of ruins are hidden here. Ancient stone pillars tower above her.
Standing amidst the columns, she notes their age and finds it fascinating to see ruins in a dungeon.
She ponders the disappearance of the creators since the monsters here never communicate.
As feathers drift down, she wonders if her foreknowledge of the dungeon was caused by her ring.
Turning with a smirk, she greets her long-awaited opponent. A winged eye monster appears above.
Unimpressed, she insults the creature's appearance and asks if its many wings are heavy to carry.
The monster's central eye begins glowing. A powerful energy beam fires downward. The creature looms over the ruins.
A loud boom sounds as she leaps away from a blast that shatters the stone floor.
A sharp crack sounds as she skillfully evades a barrage of light beams.
Choi dives gracefully to the air. A heavy thud sounds as she lands a devastating kick on the winged beast.
Floating effortlessly, she taunts the monster and asks if it has any other tricks.
Choi shouts a final threat and lunges forward to kill the creature. The monster explodes into a spray.
As the beast shrieks, she complains about the noise while plunging her hand into its head. Covering her ears, she asks how a creature without a mouth can produce such a loud sound.
She celebrates the return of quiet once the monster finally stops its screaming.
The defeated creature lets out one final gasp. Looking back at the twitching remains, she admits the beast was sturdier than expected.
She expresses pleasant surprise, noting that most enemies usually die in a single hit.
Scanning the area, she questions why there was only one enemy in the entire dungeon.
A sudden deafening shriek sounds, catching her off guard and prompting a sharp reaction.
She realizes the previous scream was a distress call and finds the arrival of companions touching.
A massive swarm fills the sky. She marvels at the sheer number of reinforcements that have appeared. A monster dives toward the ground. Surrounded, she asks if the swarm plans to attack her all at once since she is alone.
Choi wears a confident, predatory smile.
A sharp crack sounds as she launches herself back into the sky toward the monsters.
Dodging their fires, she laughs and mocks the poor accuracy of their aiming skills.
Beams of light narrowly miss her. She sprints across the stone platform.
She observes their patterns and notes that the real fight begins the moment their attacks stop.
A wet crunch sounds as she strikes another creature directly in its central eye.
Blood splatters as she frag back. Choi dives toward her next target.
She flips past a deadly blast.
Her hand is stained with monster blood. Stretching her arms, she invites the remaining monsters to start the battle again. A digital chime sounds as a system notification announces that one of her stats has increased. Surrounded by multiple level-up windows, she is shocked by the sudden and unexpected surge in her power. Choi stands amidst a flurry of system notifications announcing her rising stats. Her red eye glows with a cold, predatory intensity. Choi looms over the bloodied carcass of a winged eye monster.
The black-haired hunter stares quietly into the dungeon's distance.
She flashes a manic smile with her gore-stained hands. Nam Yeon-soo panics because Kim Dong-ju left and she cannot stop Yeon-han alone.
The healer asks if clearance is still missing, but the official promises it is coming.
Nam Yeon-soo is horrified and questions why Hunter Kim Yeon-han is acting this way. Clasping her hands, Kim Yeon-han finds it romantic that Dong-ju went to save his woman.
The blonde hunter decides to go watch while Yeon-soo pleads with her to stop.
A quick dash sounds as Kim Yeon-han sprints away toward the dungeon portal. Officer Song A-kyung shouts that entry is still forbidden as Nam Yeon-soo apologizes.
Yeon-han tells Yeon-soo to blame Dong-ju if the guildmaster asks before saying goodbye.
A sharp whoosh sounds as Choi moves with incredible speed.
Digital windows confirm that multiple stats have increased during the battle.
Choi continues her relentless slaughter of the winged eye swarm.
Floating notifications fill the air as her power grows.
Choi admits that it has been a long time since she felt this sensation.
Every stat increase brings her closer to her true strength. She feels a strange emptiness within her finally being filled. Choi remains deeply focused on the violent task at hand.
Her gaze remains sharp and fixed on her targets.
The black-haired woman declares her need to kill even more.
A sharp whoosh sounds as she strikes through another monster.
Choi's foot lands with a light practice precision. She perches effortlessly on top of a massive winged beast. A loud crack sounds as she delivers a devastating blow.
Choi mocks the beast's lack of friends and notes her own power is still lacking.
She stares into the monster's eye and demands that it scream louder.
She hopes the distress calls will lure more reinforcements to her. A final shriek sounds as she brutally finishes the creature and mutters to herself.
Choi examines the blood dripping from her fingertips.
She notes that her stats grew less than expected compared to her previous hunt. Her red eyes scan the sky for any remaining movement.
Choi is pleased to see that many more enemies are still approaching.
She prepares herself for the next round of combat. A sharp whoosh sounds as she launches back into action.
She races across the ruins like a dark blur.
A sudden, unexpected disturbance makes her pause and look back.
A heavy boom sounds as a massive rock spike erupts from the ground. The stone pillar shoots upward toward the remaining winged eyes.
The spike impales the monster with incredible force.
A massive bang sounds as the creature is completely shattered.
Debris and feathers rain down from the sky above the ruins.
Choi's clothes are heavily stained with the blood of her kills.
Choi is livid and screams because someone has stolen her prey.
Kim Dong-ju walks into view as Choi angrily yells his name.
Sighing at the carnage, the red-haired man tells Choi she made a huge mess.
Choi asks why he interfered, but Dong-ju simply asks if she is talking back. Dong-ju warns that revealing she isn't a C rank leads to prison, and Choi snaps back.
Chibi Kim Dong-ju demands to know why Choi is making such a scene in a B rank dungeon, while she claims ignorance of its rank.
Exhausted by the conversation, the red-haired man sighs and mutters that dealing with a child would be easier.
In chibi form, Dong-ju instructs Choi to hide and let him claim he rescued her, but she asks for his reasoning.
He explains that the persistent officer they encountered would make things incredibly troublesome if they were caught. A close-up shows their footwear as Choi wonders what her role should be in this plan.
Dong-ju tells her to pose as a C rank for the 3 days it takes to clear the dungeon, much to her surprise.
Dong-ju examines a bloodied wing as Choi insists she must leave soon to support Nara during her upcoming test.
He dismisses her concerns and hands her a cleaning canister, sparking an angry outburst from the blood-stained woman.
The red-haired man mentions that Officer Song A-kyung was asking about her, though Choi denies any wrongdoing.
Dong-ju explains that his past actions were self-defense, prompting Choi to ask for details about what he did.
Wearing a dark smile, the black-haired woman recalls being abandoned by her boyfriend in a mantis den.
She continues her story with a chilling grin, revealing that she successfully took her revenge.
When Dong-ju asks who is aware of this, the chibi woman admits only Nara knows, since she killed everyone else.
Dong-ju roughly grabs her head and accuses her of bragging, while she complains about the pain and mentions his supposed feelings for her. He furiously denies liking her, shouting that he only lied to hide his search for hidden dungeons from his sister. A floating thought bubble reflects on the mention of self-defense and hidden dungeons.
Kim Yeon-han looms over the arguing pair with a terrifying presence. A sharp crack sounds as the blonde woman slams her hand onto her brother's head with immense force.
Choi retreats quickly as a massive explosion of energy shatters the ground around them. Kim Yeon-han stands silently with her face cast in shadow.
A painful groan escapes Dong-ju as his sister pins him ruthlessly against the broken floor.
Yeon-han demands to know what her brother was just saying about her. The blonde woman looms over Choi, who watches the display of power with wide eyes.
Yeon-han glares intensely at the black-haired hunter. The scene shifts to a crowd of reporters announcing the arrival of the Hwayeon Guildmaster.
Flashbulbs pop as the media asks Hunter Park Ki-hyun how it feels to be the first in Korea to clear a hidden dungeon.
The blonde man with a ponytail is swamped by questions regarding the items he found and a public statement.
Narrative text appears on a black background questioning the origin and sudden appearance of the phenomena.
The crowd's voices continue to call out for the famous hunter as people's feet shuffle in the chaos.
Gritting her teeth, Kim Yeon-han watches the scene with a dark and vengeful expression.
A loud shout rings out, calling for Park Ki-hyun's attention. Park Ki-hyun walks away from the press as the blonde woman keeps her gaze fixed on him.
Narrative text emphasizes the special nature of the items retrieved from such dungeons.
Livid, Kim Yeon-han yells at the guildmaster and asks if he truly killed everyone just to obtain those items.
A shockwave of sound carries the desperate question regarding the value of human lives versus dungeon loot.
Park Ki-hyun ignores the shouts and continues walking while Yeon-han watches him from afar.
A close-up shows the cold and calculating gaze of the blonde man.
His eyes remain focused and devoid of remorse as he moves forward. Ki-hyun looks back and confirms the obviousness of his actions while a magical item on his wrist begins to glow.
Kim Yeon-han charges at him with a powerful punch directed at his head.
He coldly declares that she will share the fate of the others.
A manic smile spreads across Ki-hyun's face as he insults his attacker.
A fist closes in on the guildmaster's cheek as the confrontation escalates.
A sharp whoosh sounds as high-speed movement blurs the scene.
A blinding flash of light erupts between the two combatants.
A massive boom sounds as an explosion of power tears through the environment.
Panic erupts as people scream for everyone to run, terrified by the battle between S-rank hunters.
A desperate warning bellows out, telling everyone they will die if they stay nearby.
Yeonhan is left kneeling in a crater surrounded by smoke and debris after the clash.
Ki-hyun stares down at his opponent with a cold, triumphant gaze as he prepares his next move.
Tears well in Kim Yeonhan's eyes as she quietly asks why he chose this path.
She notes that with his power, he could have easily saved everyone involved.
The blonde woman wonders if his actions were a spiteful reaction to her leaving the Hwaein Guild.
Park Ki-hyun dismissively tells her she is free to believe whatever she wants.
Pinning her brother to the ground, Yeonhan demands that Kim Dong-ju explain the entire situation to Miss Choi.
Yeonhan questions why Choi is searching for hidden dungeons with her brother, noting that Dong-ju is significantly weaker than her.
As Choi watches, she realizes that vast differences in power exist even among those ranked as S-rank.
The blonde hunter asks if Choi is participating in this hunt as a registered murderer.
Kim Yeonhan's expression remains incredibly cold and fierce as she looms over her brother.
Choi reflects on her reputation and wonders if that is why Dong-ju was so nervous in front of his sister.
Choi finds Yeonhan's sensitivity to death strange, noting that an S rank should be accustomed to seeing casualties in dungeons.
Still pinning the red-haired man, the blonde woman continues to display an intense and focused sensitivity to the topic. The black-haired hunter suggests that those who perish in dungeons might simply deserve their fate for some reason.
A chilling and manic smile spreads across Choi's face as the tension rises.
She mocks the idea of making such a massive scene over simple deaths.
Yeonhan's eye begins to glow with an intense, threatening light as her anger deepens.
Kim Dong-ju panics and asks Choi why she is intentionally provoking his sister, wondering how they will handle the fallout. Turning her gaze to Choi, Yeonhan threateningly asks if the black-haired woman would mind dying here in the ruins.
The heavy threat of death hangs in the air as the blonde woman's energy surges.
Dong-ju realizes his sister is absolutely furious as she maintains her crushing grip on him. Choi remains completely unfazed and dares the blonde hunter to try and kill her.
The black-haired woman expresses a dark curiosity about just how strong Yeonhan truly is.
A sudden rumble echoes as the pile of rocks begins to shift and move. A powerful crash sounds as Yeonhan erupts from the debris with an explosion of energy.
The blonde woman rises from the rubble, her presence dominating the shattered landscape.
She stares down into a dark and jagged hole that has opened in the ground.
Enraged, Yeonhan yells at her brother and calls him a bastard for attempting to run away.
Dong-ju tells his sister to control her temper as more cracks spread through the floor.
She warns him about the consequences of his current path and the harm he might cause.
Dusk clears as Dong-ju admits the situation is incredibly embarrassing while he struggles to stand. Choi jokes that he looks like someone who just crawled out of a grave, earning a sharp command to shut up.
Dong-ju advises Choi to ignore his sister's words, labeling the blonde hunter a complete weirdo.
In a feral outburst, Choi bites Dong-ju's hand and screams because he called her a lunatic.
Dong-ju yells in pain and demands that she let go of him immediately.
Yeonhan glares at her brother and orders him to stay far away from that woman.
She tells him he is the crazier one for associating with someone who has no regard for human life. Looking back at the pair, Yeonhan asks why they are even searching for hidden dungeons together in the first place.
The blonde hunter warns Dong-ju that Choi might be using him for her own hidden purposes.
Dong-ju explains that he was the one who suggested the search, hoping to find items to become stronger.
Yeonhan dismisses his reasoning and tells him he has absolutely no need for such things.
She declares that the idea of hidden dungeons and their rewards is nothing more than an illusion.
Narrative text emphasizes the high price paid for the sake of obtaining hidden items.
Yeonhan screams at her brother, asking if he has any idea how many hunters have died searching for these things.
She demands that Kim Dong-ju finally wake up and stop chasing these fantasies.
The blonde woman insists there are better ways to become more powerful without hidden dungeons.
Yeonhan reveals that those alternative methods are exactly how she made him as strong as he is today. Choi is intrigued by the mention of growing stronger through methods other than simply raising stats.
A new thought enters her mind as she wonders if Dong-ju was not originally an S-rank hunter.
Choi realizes that this information is completely different from what she had previously learned from Nara.
Her eye reflects a sudden and deep shock as she ponders the implications of Yeonhan's words. The blonde woman unleashes a devastating horizontal sword strike cloaked in blue energy. Choi is sent reeling as a brutal blow draws blood from her face.
The red-haired man watches in horror as the impact scatters hair and blood. Lowering her blade, Kim Yeonhan stands poised amidst the dust and cracked stone.
As Choi collapses, Kim Dong-ju cries out her name in desperation.
The blonde woman stares down with contempt, questioning why a mere C rank would dare to challenge her. High above the city, a massive vortex of purple light crackles with lightning.
Nara trembles with a forced smile while clutching her magical staff.
Biting her finger in anxiety, Officer Song A-kyung waits for news.
Nara struggles to breathe while internally pleading for the clearance permission to arrive.
A shout calls for Officer Song A-kyung, drawing the attention of both women.
Song's eyes widen as she receives confirmation that the clearance permission has been approved.
Red hair and blood blur past Dongju's wide, disbelieving eyes.
Choi falls backward as a spray of blood erupts from the impact.
Dongju screams Choi's name as his sister stands over the scene with a cold gaze.
Kim Yun-han coldly mentions the dungeon as she prepares for what is next.
Dongju asks if his sister has lost her mind, but she calmly explains she used the back of her blade and it is fine as long as the woman survives.
Furious, Dongju argues that Choi only survived because she is an A rank and a lower rank would have died instantly.
Dongju cradles the unconscious woman, whose head is stained with blood. Dongju worries about Choi's severe injuries and the need for immediate treatment, but Yunhan commands him to move so they can clear the dungeon.
Conflict and sweat mar the red-haired man's intense expression.
A cold thought suggests that anyone who dies from such a hit was destined to be eliminated.
The blonde woman explains that Choi is seeking hidden dungeons for a reason.
As Dongju reacts with shock, the unconscious black-haired woman remains pale and still.
Dongju calls his sister's attitude harsh, but she insists she is merely stating facts as they stand over a field of slain monsters.
Yunhan offers to provide exactly what her brother needs, asking if he understands.
Dongju stares back with a hard, resolved gaze.
Looking away, he quietly admits that he knows the truth.
A narrative bubble asks if that realization is why she left the Hawaiian Guild.
Dark wings blot out the sun as monsters swarm a burning city during Korea's first dungeon break 12 years ago.
The narration reveals that the disaster claimed roughly 10,000 lives.
Two young children kneel at a funeral altar mourning the loss of their parents. With the loss of their family, the sister was forced to become the head of the house. A young black-haired boy tearfully asks his sister what they will do now.
The young girl stares blankly ahead, her face etched with silent trauma.
The narrative notes she was far too young to carry such a heavy burden of grief.
A close-up reveals the haunted, hollow eyes of the young girl.
Text explains how the world shifted toward the dominance of awakened ones from that point onward. Flashbulbs pop as reporters swarm teenage Yunhan, asking about her S-rank status and her family.
A news broadcast announces the emergence of the nation's fourth S-rank and speculates on which guild she will join.
The media wonders if Yunhan's younger brother will also achieve S-rank status when he awakens.
Memories of their parents surface, happily dreaming of their children becoming miracle siblings.
The text notes that the awakening eventually spread from the sister to the brother.
During a soccer match, teammates shout at young Dongju for losing the goal.
A loud boom sounds as Dongju kicks the ball with enough power to rip through the goal net.
The soccer ball is found deeply embedded in a solid stone wall.
Stunned, the young boy and his teammates stare at the impossible force of the kick. Memories shift to a tense conversation regarding the sister leaving her guild. The black-haired boy asks his sister why she quit Hwayan to join Paehyuk and if something happened.
Yunhan dismisses the questions and tells him to eat the gift she brought, leaving him confused.
The black-haired boy questions why he's being shown a glowing red magic stone.
Kim Yunhan smiles and explains that eating the rare red magic stone will increase his stats, and she warns him not to tell anyone.
Shocked, the young Kim Dongju asks if such a thing is real and if he can truly eat it, while his sister confirms she brought it specifically for him.
The blonde woman promises to bring him as many as she can, but she pauses as she prepares to state a condition.
She explains that they will not report his awakening to the authorities until he reaches S rank.
Stunned by her words, the boy asks for clarification.
The black-haired boy shouts and demands to know why she brought the stone if he has to keep hiding his powers.
He expresses a desire for proper training and to be active, but his sister reveals that these are the conditions set by the Paehyuk Guild.
Yunhan explains that the stones are only found in private dungeons managed by her guild and that hiding his growth prevents others from knowing how he got strong so quickly.
The blonde woman smiles and asks her brother if this situation isn't actually a good thing.
Dongju rejects the offer and insists he can become a hunter and report his awakening immediately without relying on such items.
The sister argues that he is currently too weak and would die quickly as a hunter, which is why she prevented him from reporting his status.
Looking away, she states that hunters cannot afford to be weak or they risk losing everything they have.
She reminds him that their parents died for that very reason.
As they kneel at a funeral altar, the blonde girl tells her brother their parents died because they were weak. With a chilling and intense expression, she tells him he must become stronger than he is now if he wants to survive.
A boy stands in white void.
Dark hair falls over somber eyes.
The air is pierced by a guttural scream of "ooga" as blood sprays across the room. The boy collapses and gasps for air while a pool of blood forms under his face. A pale hand reaches down toward the crying, blood-stained face of the young boy.
Yeonhan kneels on the floor and gently cups her brother's face as he weeps over the pool of blood.
The sister's cold gaze meets the tearful and bloody eyes of her brother.
A blue holographic system window displays Kim Dong-ju's updated B-rank stats for strength, intelligence, vitality, and agility.
A satisfied smile plays on her lips. She quietly remarks that the process is working and the results are good.
Embracing her bloodied brother, the blonde woman tells him that all that remains is for him to continue growing stronger.
A close-up of a traumatized eye. The young boy slowly closes his eye. A dark thought reflects that he will continue to be controlled by others if he cannot endure this trial.
Back in the present, Yeonhan expresses relief that he understands and commands him to leave the injured woman behind and move on.
The red-haired man looks away silently.
The blonde hunter suggests clearing out the lesser monsters before the boss, eager to fight to her heart's content after a long absence from dungeons. As she stretches, the adult Dong-ju asks his sister why she thinks he is searching for hidden dungeons.
Yeonhan questions if he was simply tempted by Choi's promise of becoming more powerful.
Dong-ju asks why she is blocking his path to power and why she would go so far as to harm a stranger.
The sister asks what kind of person would let her own brother walk into his certain death.
The red-haired man realizes that his sister's words mean she still views him as fundamentally weak. Cradling the unconscious woman, Dong-ju declares that he is finished caring about his sister's opinion of him. A narrative bubble states that his sister will always see him as weak regardless of his actual strength.
Yeonhan stares with a hard expression.
The man stares back with resolve.
He thinks about the stakes of his choice, whether he lives or dies.
A sword tip remains embedded in the cracked earth as a voice acknowledges the situation.
A question hangs in the air, asking if he is truly going through with his plan.
Gripping her weapon, Yeonhan asks if he is really going to the hidden dungeon.
Dong-ju confirms his decision and asks her to describe her experience in the dungeon when she returns.
The blonde woman lunges forward with intense speed.
The red-haired man remains perfectly still.
Yeonhan asks if he would mind dying by her hand right now since the final result of his path would be the same.
A hand presses firmly against the cracked earth as the fallen woman defiantly questions who predicted her end. Jagged spires of stone suddenly erupt from the ground with a thunderous, earth-shaking rumble. Kim Yeonhan swings her heavy blade to intercept the rising pillars of rock.
The blonde hunter leaps over the obstacles, dismissively remarking on the futility of the barrier.
With a fierce expression, she vows to smash through everything in her path. A powerful impact shatters the stone, sending debris flying in every direction. Dong-ju notes his sister's overwhelming brute strength, but the black-haired woman in his arms asks why he is trying so hard to endure.
The red-haired man explains she needs urgent treatment from a healer, but Choi insists she is perfectly fine. A look of pure disbelief crosses his face as he rejects her claim of being okay.
The black-haired woman begins to sit up, asking if it is finally time for her to stand.
Fully upright, Choi thanks him for the rest and observes how furious his sister has become.
Stunned and sweating, Dong-ju stammers as he struggles to understand how she recovered so instantly.
A silent, bewildered question hangs in the air regarding her sudden recovery.
She lets out a long, weary "ugh" as she stretches her limbs, despite the blood still on her face.
A simple gold ring catches the light on her finger.
A chillingly confident smile spreads across the black-haired woman's face.
A bold declaration challenges her opponent to begin their battle once more.
Her hand hangs poised as she considers her next move.
Choi gleefully asks if they should restart the fight right now.
Dong-ju calls her name in confusion as she turns her back to him.
Panic sets in as the red-haired man nervously asks exactly how much of their conversation she heard.
With a bright smile, Choi admits she heard every word of his emotional outburst regarding his sister.
Memories of his resolve to stop caring about his sister's opinion resurface as he stands over the woman. As he recalls telling his sister he no longer cared if he lived or died, he realizes his private thoughts were wide open. Dong-ju screams in absolute mortification upon learning she witnessed his most vulnerable moment. The air is pierced by a sudden, jagged "arg!" echoing his intense embarrassment.
Shards of rock continue to fly through the air amidst the ongoing chaos.
A somber thought reflects that in this world, those who are eliminated simply die.
Standing amidst the rubble, Dong-ju reflects on how that harsh reality claimed the lives of his parents and friends. A massive stone pillar looms over a field of slain winged monsters.
Kim Yeon-han swings her sword with blinding speed and lethal intent. The two companions remain trapped in the center of a ring of sharp stone spires.
A look of cold, hard resolve takes over the red-haired man's features.
With glowing eyes and a savage grin, the blonde hunter prepares a devastating downward strike.
A brilliant flash of white light tears through the battlefield.
The sister suggests it is better for him to die by her hand than to continue his current path.
A massive dark energy wave descends as she claims she will at least be able to recover his body. A tremendous, earth-shattering crash levels the terrain as the attack connects. Her focus is shattered by a sudden, jagged arc as she hears what sounds like her brother's scream. Fear grips her as she wonders if her own attack has fatally wounded him. She grows frustrated as the thick smoke from the blast completely obscures her view of the crater. Rushing toward the impact zone, Yeon-han desperately calls out for Kim Dong-ju. The blonde woman's eyes go wide with shock as the smoke begins to clear. Dong-ju is on his knees while Choi stands perfectly upright beside him, completely unharmed by the strike. Kim Yeon-han stares in disbelief, demanding to know how the woman could be untouched. She reasons that the attack should have been fatal to a C rank, while a system window reveals Choi's rank is actually unknown. Surveying the destruction, she doubts Choi is an S rank, but notes her power is far beyond her reported level.
The blonde hunter concludes that Choi is likely an A rank using a powerful item to hide her true stats. A suspicious thought questions why her brother would risk lying about the woman's true rank.
She realizes it was a shallow lie that was destined to be exposed the moment real combat began.
Kim Dong-ju urgently tells the injured woman to flee while she still has a chance, but Hyun Choi stubbornly asks why she would leave when she can help him.
The red-haired man shouts that this is his personal struggle and she must run, though she pointedly notes that there is nowhere to hide within the depths of a dungeon.
As the blonde woman watches silently, a dark thought reflects on the mysterious reason for Choi's obsession with hidden dungeons.
Choi suddenly decides to make her move and leaves a confused Dong-ju standing behind as she springs into action.
Dong-ju calls out Choi's name in alarm as the purple-haired woman lunges forward with incredible speed toward his sister.
With a wild, wide-eyed grin, Choi mocks her opponent for standing there so confidently and doing nothing to defend herself. A powerful fist connects directly with Kim Yeon-han's face, yet the blonde hunter barely flinches.
Glowing with fuchsia energy and a manic expression, Choi continues her relentless and aggressive assault.
Her focus narrows into a singular, intense point of lethal focus. Yeon-han remains completely unfazed as the massive fist stops just inches from her face, her blonde hair barely swaying.
The black-haired woman screams in a frenzy as she continues her desperate attempt to break through the blonde hunter's composure. A sudden, overwhelming burst of pressure sends Choi flying backward through the air as Dong-ju watches in horror. The red-haired man screams Choi's name as her body is slammed violently into the ground with a massive impact. Gasping for air, Choi struggles to her hands and knees in front of a giant, crocked stone pillar while coughing up blood. She glares back at the blonde woman with an expression of pure, unbridled fury.
A look of sheer shock crosses her face as the air around her suddenly becomes impossibly heavy.
A massive dark energy strike levels the area, completely burying Choi under a mountain of rubble.
Pinned beneath a heavy stone slab, the purple-haired woman struggles to draw even a single breath.
She gasps for air as the weight of the debris threatens to crush the life out of her. Her hand, wearing a gold ring, claws at the cracked earth in a desperate search for leverage. A dark narrative bubble describes the sensation of an enormous stone pressing down and suffocating her. A jagged, massive spire of rock completely immobilizes her against the shattered floor of the dungeon.
Yeon-han looks on with a cold, haughty expression and flatly states how disappointed she is by the woman's lack of power.
The blonde hunter dismissively remarks that the items found in hidden dungeons are clearly not as impressive as she had imagined.
Despite the crushing weight, Choi begins to force her body upward with a look of terrifying determination. She grinds her teeth and declares that she only needs to break free from this level of pressure to win.
Yeon-han warns her that if she continues to force herself up against such weight, her bones will surely shatter.
The sickening sound of snapping bone and tearing muscle fills the air as Choi refuses to submit. A sharp scream of pain rings out as Yeon-han coldly observes that it is already too late for the woman to save herself. Choi collapses back into the dirt, gasping for air as a swirling green healing aura begins to mend her broken frame. Surprised by the speed of the woman's regeneration, Yeon-han mockingly tells her to keep healing since it seems to be her only specialty. Dong-ju tries to rush toward Choi, but his sister commandingly tells him to stay where he is.
The red-haired man shouts for her to stop and asks if she truly believes she can prevent him from leaving.
From behind, Yeon-han threatens to crush the woman so completely that even her immediate regeneration will fail to save her.
The blonde hunter offers to spare Choi's life only if her brother agrees to abandon his search for the hidden dungeon forever.
Dongju looks at his sister with a stunned, pained expression and can only mutter a soft call for her attention.
His sister touches her forehead in exasperation and reminds him that she is the reason he has grown as strong as he is.
A somber thought reflects that without her interference and protection, he would have been dead long ago.
Yunhan looks down with a hard gaze, bluntly calling her brother weak and questioning if he truly thinks he can defeat her.
Dongju stares back in silence, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and realization.
From beneath the rubble, a blood-stained Choi looks up with a mocking smile and asks if the sister is truly making these claims for his sake. A dark memory flashes of a brown-haired man claiming he was helping Choi and protecting her from certain death.
Entangled in a web of dark lines, the memory of Choi rejects the man's claims as absolutely ridiculous.
A narrative bubble questions who would ever believe such manipulative and controlling words.
Looking up from the debris, Choi prepares to challenge the blonde woman's authority once more.
With a chilling, bloodied smile, she tells the hunter that her words are nothing more than a tool to manipulate people at her whim.
Choi encourages Kim Dong-ju to do exactly what he wants and acknowledges his desire to become stronger on his own terms.
The red-haired man looks back at Choi with a startled and contemplative expression.
With a glowing fuchsia eye and blood dripping from her face, Choi claims she is helping him because they are alike and tells him to follow her.
A wide, bloodied grin spreads across her face as she promises to show him exactly how it's done.
Looking at the sky, someone asks an officer where everyone went, noting they must find them quickly.
The orange-haired woman notes how impressive Kim Dong-ju was earlier when he rushed to save his companion.
She continues, observing that Dongju's popularity among women is likely to cause quite a stir.
A look of sudden confusion crosses the orange-haired woman's face.
Staring at the horizon, she asks if the sky was always this red, while her companion notes the sudden change.
A sudden gasp escapes her as she considers the terrifying possibility of a dungeon break occurring.
The purple-haired officer agrees it is likely, leaving the orange-haired woman in a state of shock.
Shards of rock fly through the air as a powerful energy begins to manifest.
Choi grits her teeth in a savage display of defiance amidst the swirling debris.
Kim Dong-ju shouts for Hyun Choi to stop as the battlefield continues to tear apart around them. Kim Yun-han watches calmly, thinking the woman should already be completely immobilized by her power.
The blonde hunter's eyes widen in genuine shock as something unexpected begins to happen.
A massive, blinding pillar of blue energy erupts with a sudden, thunderous shout, shaking the earth.
Yunhan winces at the piercing noise, questioning what could be making such a truly unpleasant sound.
She reflects that the sound resembles a wild beast desperately clawing at its own throat in a frenzy.
Dongju covers his ears in pain while Yunhan stares into the center of the growing blue vortex.
Horrified, Dongju realizes that Choi has somehow become significantly stronger than when they first met. He notes with growing dread that her current level of power far exceeds what she possessed before the dungeon.
A stunned thought questions if it is even possible for a person's stats to increase so rapidly.
A massive, jagged red strike tears across the sky above the blonde hunter.
Monsters gather instantly, making Yunhan realize that a single provocation has attracted an entire swarm.
She admits Choi is a talent she would have preferred to recruit if not for her brother's involvement.
The blonde woman's focus shifts as she notices the overwhelming number of monsters descending upon them.
Swarms of winged, eyeball-like creatures fill the air around the ancient, crumbling ruins.
Yunhan concludes that the woman is using the monsters as a distraction to escape her binding skill.
Dismissing the monsters as mere weaklings, she wonders if she must hunt the boss herself to end this.
Watching the energy blast, she notes Choi's desperation in trying to stop an S rank with such low-level creatures.
A cold smile touches the hunter's lips as she decides she actually prefers the chaos of a hunt.
The winged eyeballs let out a high-pitched screech as they prepare to dive toward their target.
Yunhan's gaze narrows as she notices the creature's feathers glowing and asks if they are Choi's weapons.
One of the multi-winged eyeball monsters hovers menacingly, its wings shimmering with a dangerous light.
Streaks of white light rain down as the creatures begin their coordinated aerial assault. Multiple beams of energy pierce through the air, targeting the ground with lethal precision.
Laughing with exhilaration, Yunhan declares that it has been a long time since she enjoyed such a fight.
Brilliant blue beams continue to saturate the area as the intensity of the battle reaches its peak.
The monsters are caught in the crossfire as the blonde hunter dodges with impossible speed.
Yunhan pauses for a moment, her expression shifting to one of mild curiosity. Her movement is punctuated by a sudden, sharp tap sounding as her boot hits the stone floor.
She looks up at the raining beams, wondering if the creatures have somehow lost sight of her. A dark thought reflects that the monster's numerous eyes are certainly more than just decorative.
Massive pillars of blue energy crash into a single spot, creating a devastating shockwave. Yunhan observes the focused nature of the aerial attacks with a calculating gaze.
She questions why the monsters are focusing all their firepower on that specific distant location.
Realization dawns as she wonders if Choi is intentionally drawing the attacks toward her own body. Pinned in the center of the destruction, Choi wears a manic grin while absorbing the full force of the beams.
A barrage of blue energy strikes the earth with enough power to shatter the very foundation of the dungeon.
The relentless bombardment continues, burying the black-haired woman in a crater of light and dust.
Yunhan realizes that Choi is breaking the ground itself to escape the pressure of her gravitational skill.
She questions the woman's sanity, noting that Choi herself will not survive such a suicidal maneuver.
The scene fades into a blur of shattering stone and violent impact. Choi screams in pain as energy beams pierce through her body.
Massive energy strikes crater the ground where the purple-haired woman lies. Her bloodied hand twitches as she gasps for air beneath the bombardment. Yunhan questions how Choi can endure such agony despite her regeneration.
A narrative bubble reflects on Choi's ability to make reckless decisions without hesitation. The hunter dismisses the monsters as low-ranked weaklings unable to break her skill.
A look of genuine shock crosses Yunhan's face as the air shifts.
Yunhan wonders if she is imagining the sudden surge in power.
The purple-haired woman's fingers twitch as she prepares to force herself up.
Yunhan observes from above, noting that Choi's efforts are still not enough.
The hunter mockingly declares that Choi's power level is currently useless.
Pushing against the rubble, Choi yells at the monsters to stop holding back.
A multi-winged eye monster hovers over the crumbling ruins.
A system notification confirms that a target for domination has been identified.
Red energy streaks across the sky above the battlefield.
A blue window confirms protection is applied to the dominated target.
Yunhan watches as the floor continues to shatter under the pressure. Massive slabs of rock further bury the purple-haired woman under the floor.
Choi's eye glows with a piercing red light from beneath the rubble.
A devastating energy impact sends shockwaves through the ruined chamber.
Yunhan stands amidst a chaotic storm of falling stone and monster attacks.
The blonde hunter realizes the immense attack power is not her imagination. A system window identifies the monsters as A-rank one-eyed angel guardians.
Yunhan stares in disbelief at the high rank of the creatures.
A thought questions how the monster's rank could have suddenly increased.
Choi emerges from a cloud of dust with a manic, bloodied expression.
With a savage look, the purple-haired woman lunges toward her blonde opponent. Choi gets close and whispers that the hunter will die in pain.
Yunhan realizes that Choi is the one who raised the monster's rank.
A wide, blood-soaked grin spreads across the purple-haired woman's face.
Choi admits her own uncertainty, but notes that one thing is certain. Choi declares with terrifying confidence that the hunter is going to die here.
A rain of red energy beams descends from the sky with lethal intent. A focused strike of pure energy slams into the earth with a boom.
Choi and Yunhan clash as the monsters saturate the area with beams.
Kim Dong-ju watches the carnage in shock.
The red-haired man questions the sanity of the unfolding battle.
The multi-winged eye monster tracks its target through the smoke.
Dong-ju realizes with growing dread that his sister is being pushed back.
He is stunned that Choi is actually overpowering an S-rank hunter.
A massive shockwave erupts as the two women collide in the ruins.
Her face contorted in disbelief, Yunhan screams that this outcome is impossible. The hunter realizes Choi is using her own body as bait for the attacks.
Choi slams into her opponent with enough force to shatter the ground. Taking a heavy blow, Yunhan coughs up blood and gasps in pain. The purple-haired woman relentlessly pursues the staggering hunter through the ruins.
Choi lets out a savage cry as she closes in for the finish. A manic laugh rings out as Choi continues her brutal assault.
Yunhan stares in pure rage and curses Choi for her suicidal tactics.
A blood-stained fist clenches in victory.
Bloodied and grinning, Choi lunges downward through the air.
She gasps out a painful groan as blood sprays from her mouth.
Choi falls toward her opponent in a violent spray of blood.
Gritting her teeth, the blonde hunter declares that she has had enough.
Yunhan looks up in sudden shock as the laughing Choi descends.
The hunter reacts with alarm as a blue energy vortex erupts.
One of the winged monsters lets out a piercing, high-pitched scream.
Yunhan curses her own negligence, stunned that Choi can still use skills.
The hunter struggles against an endless barrage of energy beams. She admits that while she usually enjoys killing, this is simply annoying.
Choi pursues her target relentlessly through the chaotic debris.
Yunhan is horrified to see that Choi's severe wounds have already regenerated.
A manic, blood-soaked laugh echoes through the ruined dungeon.
Panting heavily, Yenhan gasps at Choi's ability to strike from such a distance. The hunter glares with pure rage and calls Choi a coward. Approaching through the smoke, Choi casually asks if she is still alive.
Yunhan calls her crazy and wonders what kind of freak she is. Blood stains the purple-haired woman's clothes as she stands tall.
A narrative thought notes that Choi refuses to die despite numerous attacks.
Choi stands amidst the ruins, her body glowing with a green aura.
Yunhan mockingly asks when she plans to die, receiving a playful hum.
Smiling broadly, Choi claims she has already died many times before.
The hunter realizes she is dealing with true immortality.
Choi notes that while rare, items granting immortality do exist.
Yunhan argues that only a crazy person would throw their life away. Choi looks on with an indifferent expression and asks, "So what?"
Yunhan notes Choi is too dangerous for her brother as her body fails.
Choi scoffs that Yunhan has a brother complex that ruins Dongju's life. The hunter retorts that she only cares about keeping her brother safe. Yunhan realizes her arms won't lift and wonders about her next move.
A brilliant, swirling golden energy sphere forms in the hunter's hand. Yunhan declares that none of it matters because Choi will die here. A massive explosion of golden light shatters the stone floor. The hunter sternly warns Kim Dongju to stay away from her. Choi notes that she doesn't intend to get the boy killed either.
Powerful energy shockwaves tear through the foundations of the ruins.
Dongju screams for his sister, fearing she cannot endure the power. Choi dismisses the hunter's threat as a bluff from a broken body.
The multi-winged eye monsters hover menacingly in the background.
Spreading her arms wide, Choi happily declares that she doesn't mind.
The purple-haired woman's pink eyes glow with a terrifying intensity. She leans forward with a hungry, predatory look on her face.
Her concentration is broken by a sudden, sharp tap sounding nearby. Choi's bloodied face twists into a wide, joyful grin. A thunderous, blue-white shout erupts, sending Choi flying backward. The winged eyeball monsters are scattered by the sheer force of the blast. A massive, glowing crater forms where the blonde hunter stands. Yunhan unleashes a gravity hole meant to erase existence called 0 Point. She admits she had no choice but to use this against an immortal. Yunhan mockingly invites the crazy woman to come and face her end. The blonde hunter gasps as blood soaks through her claws. Her expression turns cold as she assesses her severe wounds. Letting out a weary sigh, she gathers golden energy in her hand. Yunhan raises her arm to manifest a brilliant sphere of power. She resolves to eliminate the monsters even at the cost of her life. A massive energy shockwave erupts, catching the monsters in its wake. The purple-haired woman reacts with alarm as the atmosphere shifts.
Choi laughs manically, fascinated by the hunter's incredibly flashy skill. Powerful magical impacts scatter the winged eye monsters like debris.
Yunhan stands at the epicenter of a devastating golden explosion.
Choi taunts her opponent, warning that this power level is suicidal.
A defiant smirk crosses the blonde woman's bloodied face. Jumping into the air, Choi eagerly accepts the final challenge. She gleefully compares the incoming destruction to an unwrapped gift. A joyful, manic laugh rings out as Choi descends through the light. Choi admits her heart is racing with intense battle excitement. Sweating and determined, Yunhan prepares her final lethal maneuver. She commands her enemies to vanish without leaving a trace.
A frantic topping sound fills the dark monitoring room.
Officer Song A-kyung stares at her computer screens in shock. She watches in horror as the mana readings spike uncontrollably. Her hand hits the desk with a sharp tap as she acts. She urgently requests an emergency evacuation alarm from the headquarters.
A terrifying purple and white energy vortex collapses inward.
Kim Dongju watches the sky tear apart in pure terror.
The ground beneath the red-haired man shatters from the pressure.
He stares upward with a look of absolute disbelief and dread.
Reality seems to crack as the magical explosion reaches its peak.
Dongju stands frozen before the blinding, world-shaking magical fallout.
The production team is credited for this intense chapter.
A narrative thought reflects on the growing unease during the journey. A-kyung and her companion run through the mana-choked forest. The officer observes countless monsters flocking toward a single point. She notes that the monsters' ranks far exceed the dungeon's level. A-kyung realizes she cannot identify the rank of these creatures. She questions if the dungeon itself is suffering a malfunction.
Her eyes widen in shock as she reaches the battlefield.
From afar, a massive energy sphere marks the center of combat.
A-kyung is horrified by the scale of the unfolding disaster.
She is baffled that Choi is matching an S-rank hunter. Choi's manic grin remains fixed as she pursues the kill. The officer realizes the clashing mana is making the dungeon unstable. She fears the dungeon will break and cause mass casualties. A-kyung resolves to stop the fight no matter the cost. She reaches out toward the light, ready to sacrifice herself. Dongju reacts as the air surges with a new presence.
The red-haired man recognizes Officer Song A-kyung and yells out. Song A-kyung lunges forward to stop the three reckless hunters. Dongju screams for them to stop using such overkill power. A-kyung warns that their combined mana is causing a dungeon break.
Officer Song A-kyung reaches out with a glowing hand, preparing to manifest a powerful skill.
A-kyung declares her intent to forcibly reduce the ranks of all three individuals to C rank.
Sweating and focused, the officer strains to exert her authority over the battlefield. A heavy, crushing pressure slams into the red-haired man, causing him to grit his teeth in pain.
Both the bloodied purple-haired woman and the blonde hunter are suddenly weighed down by an invisible force.
Yanhan's wounds reopen violently, sending a fresh spray of blood into the air as her power fades.
Letting out a pained, guttural kuch, the blonde woman coughs up blood as she is overwhelmed.
The hunter is horrified, wondering why her body is suddenly failing her so completely. A glowing blue notification window appears before Yanhan, signaling a drastic change in her status. The system confirms a forced rank down from S to C, leaving the hunter in a state of pure shock. Gasping for air, Yunhan's eyes go wild as she realizes the severity of her new weakened state. A massive, blinding explosion of orange and white energy tears through the center of the ruins. Choi is tossed through the air like a rag doll by the sheer force of the magical blast. Bloodied and broken, Yanhan is sent flying as the shockwave rips through her already battered body. The blonde hunter lies motionless in a growing pool of blood amidst the shattered stones. The violent energy vortex finally dissipates, leaving behind a clear but somber sky above the carnage.
A narrative note explains that rank down is a unique skill exclusive to Song A-kyung used to restrict mana.
The skill is reserved as an absolute last resort when a dungeon's mana goes beyond all control.
A-kyung gasps as blood drips from her mouth, her status window warning of permanent, severe mana circuit damage. Leaning against a tree for support, the officer notes that the dungeon has stabilized at the cost of her own organs. A-kyung urgently commands the orange-haired women to heal the fallen hunter immediately. Carrying her ornate staff, Nam Yeon-soo rushes toward the battlefield, fearing for the hunter's life. Yeon-soo lets out a horrified gasp as she sees the extent of the blonde woman's injuries. A grim assessment reveals that the hunter's vital organs, including her heart and lungs, have been completely pierced. Yeon-soo is stunned that anyone could survive such damage in a C-rank body and struggles to keep her composure.
The crystal atop Yeon-soo's staff begins to pulse with a bright, restorative green light.
Calling upon her powers, the healer initiates emergency treatment to repair the hunter's shredded internal organs. Intense blue healing energy flows into Yanhan's chest, closing the most lethal of her wounds. Yeon-soo is relieved to see a fast recovery and resolves to keep going until the vital organs are mended. The healer's focus is suddenly broken as she senses a dark, menacing presence lurking nearby. Yeon-soo looks up to see the blood-stained, purple-haired woman standing silently beside them. Choi looms over the fallen hunter and her healer, her expression unreadable and cold. Frightened but defiant, Yeon-soo demands that Choi step away from the woman she nearly killed. Choi stares back with an indifferent, empty gaze that sends a chill through the air. The purple-haired woman notes with a chilling lack of emotion that her opponent is still alive. Raising her foot high, Choi prepares to deliver a final, crushing blow to the unconscious hunter. Yanhan remains oblivious to the impending strike as her blood continues to stain the earth. Yeon-soo screams in terror, begging the woman to stop her brutal assault. A thunderous crash echoes through the clearing as a powerful blow shatters the stone floor. Choi looks down in surprise, finding that her attack has struck nothing but empty, cracked pavement. The purple-haired woman is baffled, wondering where her target could have possibly gone in an instant.
Choi turns her head, searching the dust and debris for any sign of her vanished prey.
Her pink eyes narrow as she spots a figure standing a short distance away in the smoke. Kim Dong-ju stands tall, protectively cradling the broken body of his sister in his arms. The red-haired man calls out to Yeon-soo, urgently asking her to resume the healing of his sister. Choi asks if he is truly choosing to stay with his sister despite the chance for freedom. The purple-haired woman questions if he realizes that his sister's death would finally liberate him. Dong-ju rejects the very idea of a choice, his voice low and full of suppressed emotion.
He stands firm, shielding his sister from the gaze of the woman who tried to destroy her.
Choi is genuinely confused, wondering why he would protect the person she considers to be his shackles. The red-haired man stares in confusion, asking what she is talking about. The purple-haired woman asks if he is tired of his current situation. Looking down at the injured hunter, Choi notes how people always claim things are for one's own good. She remarks that the truly disgusting part is how they make you believe those claims. In a flashback, Choi realizes the truth of her freedom after thousands of deaths and kills. She observes that freedom can only be gained by trampling over someone else.
Looming over a terrified man, she expresses her desire to show him that same feeling. A sudden, wet splash of blood sprays across the pale background.
Choi tells Dongju that he must break free from his sister for his freedom to begin.
The purple-haired woman claims that once the act is done, it is ultimately nothing. A foot rests on the cracked earth as she urges him to break out of that chain. Standing amidst the ruins, Choi declares that Kim Dong-ju can finally do it too.
The purple-haired woman displays a wide, chillingly joyful grin.
Carrying the blonde hunter, the red-haired man begins to walk away from her.
Choi stares after them with an expression of pure, stunned disbelief.
Dong-ju reflects that he has no right to speak after merely watching his sister suffer.
The blonde hunter remains unconscious, her face stained with blood and dirt.
He admits that helping her would have meant agreeing with her views, leaving him unable to move.
He looks back, stating that despite her nasty temper, she is still his family.
Choi looks away, wondering if she has been doing pointless things all this time. She demands to know what she is supposed to do about it now. She questions if his sudden declaration makes this entire ordeal simply disappear. A heavy, sudden swish of movement cuts through the dusty air.
High-speed motion blurs the background as a strike is delivered.
A sharp, jagged shard of stone is held inches from the woman's neck.
The red-haired man looks on with a cold, unwavering intensity. Choi mocks him for finally speaking of family after sitting still for so long.
He notes that despite their current rank, he possesses far more fighting experience.
He declares with total confidence that he can stop someone like her.
She calls his bluff, reminding him of how easily she beat his sister. Choi challenges him to try as a thunderous shout of "Stop!" interrupts them. Namyeon-soo screams for them to stop because the hunter is at death's door. The orange-haired healer vows that she won't let them get away with it if Yeonhan dies.
She yells with tears in her eyes, demanding to know if they understand.
Yeon-soo orders him to put the hunter down immediately for emergency treatment.
The healer berates Dongju for fighting again while his sister is in such a dangerous state. She screams at them to control their anger and their short tempers.
She warns them to be careful with their bodies now that they are only C rank.
Choi reflects in silence, wondering if the man is actually that specific type of person.
A quick, light tap sounds on the red-haired man's shoulder.
Choi demands an apology while Dongju asks if she has completely lost her mind. She teases him about being unable to refuse a woman's request, offering her forgiveness for an apology. A sudden heavy tap of footsteps sounds as the argument over apologies and silence continues. Officer Song A-kyung arrives and asks the healer if the blonde hunter is okay. The officer expresses her relief while worrying if the dungeon's condition has stabilized. A-kyung explains that since 2 S ranks entered an unstable dungeon, reinforcements cannot be sent. A sudden, quiet realization settles over the group as the implications become clear. They are tasked with clearing a B-rank dungeon with 3 C ranks and 2 A ranks. The group reflects on being considered useless while A-kyung urges them to do their best. Choi notes with a blank expression that her rank remains unchanged regardless.
A red-haired man's chibi head dismisses a lie, demanding that they stop immediately.
Dongju explains that since his sister previously wiped out the monsters, clearing the dungeon should be possible even at C rank. Walking away, Choi insists she is telling the truth and wonders why she isn't being believed. Purple-haired woman's calm and unreadable expression. Massive energy vortex remains dangerously active. Choi observes the fallen blonde hunter, noting with indifference that she is still alive. Dongju turns to ask Choi what she is doing as the air crackles with dangerous magical energy. Panicked, the red-haired man wonders why the condensed mana has not yet disappeared. Dongju reflects that the mana might be too condensed to dissipate on its own. He's shouting over the noise, asking if his sister has regained consciousness. From a distance, Namyeon-soo confirms that the hunter is still out cold. Dongju commands the group to take his sister and flee as far as possible while he blocks the energy.
Song A-kyung offers her assistance, but the red-haired man bluntly tells her to run away quickly.
A-kyung protests leaving the danger to a C rank, while Dongju frustratedly blames the situation on others. Reaching out, the red-haired man resolves to stop the energy before it expands any further. Dongju tells the officer to just wait, claiming that he has successfully blocked this power before. Magical light gathers around the red-haired man's feet as he prepares to activate a skill. Cracking and grinding sounds fill the air as a massive, sharp earth pillar erupts from the ground.
A sudden, sharp sound punctuates the air as the officer looks up in shock at the scale of the magic.
Colossal stone structure towers over ruins. Dongju explains that such a massive scale is necessary for him to barely block the incoming energy. The red-haired man calls out to Choi, catching her attention amid the chaos. Dongju warns Choi that her position is dangerous and tells her to move toward him quickly. Choi is amazed that a C rank could create such a structure and warns that he might die. Focus shifts to the red-haired man's foot as he begins to channel more power into the ground. A thunderous roar fills the air as Dongju commands a massive stone barrier to rise.
A sharp swish of movement sounds as a foot lands firmly on the newly formed stone surface.
Standing atop the massive structure, Dongju notes the thickness of the barrier and considers his next move.
The red-haired man determines that he must stab the core of the mana right in the center.
Massive spike aimed at the vortex.
Dongju smiles with confidence, stating that everything is finally ready for the final move.
He commands the beginning of the attack as a sharp, whistling sound signals the spike's descent.
Zooming into the swirling core's heart,
Sharp spike pierces the mana core.
impact ripples through the shattered ground.
Huge plume of dust after him hacked.
Standing triumphantly, the red-haired man declares that the dangerous task is finally over. A sudden, sharp cracking sound fills the silence as massive fissures spread across the stone wall.
Dongju is shocked as the barrier almost collapses, while Choi asks him what he is doing.
Choi is unimpressed by his coolness and asks how he performed the feat while he dismisses it as nothing special.
He explains that his sister's berserk mana has become a lump of ownerless energy.
Dongju describes using the stone as a lightning rod to guide the rogue mana safely into the ground.
Choi finds the explanation interesting, while Dongju states they just need to wait for the mana to vanish.
A chibi head of Dongju reflects on blocking the technique before and remembers his sister's priceless reaction.
Choi asks if the stone is supposed to glow, to which the red-haired man responds with confusion.
A sudden, sharp crackling sound intensifies as the base of the stone spike begins to glow white-hot.
A thunderous roar accompanies a massive explosion of orange energy that shatters the stone structure.
Dust and debris rain down as the group looks up at the blinding light of the failed neutralization. Choi laughs at the failure as Dongju clutches his head in absolute panic at the turn of events. Terrified, the red-haired man screams for Nam Yan-su to wake up his sister immediately because the plan failed.
The orange-haired healer looks on in a heavy, contemplative silence.
Nam Yan-su explains that the healing process is moving slowly due to the hunter's low rank. Looking down at the devastation, Song A-kyung panics about their survival, while Kim Dong-ju urges everyone to keep fighting.
Choi observes the mess with a cold indifference as the red-haired man desperately tries to maintain hope.
The purple-haired woman tilts her head with a confused expression. Choi gazes into a massive crater, noting that the sensation of the energy is strangely familiar. A sudden, excited realization crosses Choi's face as she spots her targets.
Floating, winged eyeball monsters hover in the distance.
Choi observes the massive swarm of monsters hiding in the depths of the abyss.
She reflects on the dungeon being a gold mine that will allow her to significantly raise her stats. Looking at the swirling core, Choi realizes the rogue energy might kill them all before they can finish the dungeon. She weighs her options between ignoring the core to fight the boss or attempting to block the energy. The purple-haired woman turns her gaze toward the unstable vortex. Choi calls out to Kim Dong-ju, catching the red-haired man's attention. She flashes a cruel, mocking smile as she delivers a scathing personal insult to him. Choi laughs at his inability to help his sister and challenges him to watch how she handles the situation. Dong-ju looks on with a bewildered expression, questioning her sudden actions. A sudden, heavy thud sounds as Choi's foot pushes off the ledge.
She falls headfirst with a maniacal grin toward the glowing explosion below.
Choi commands the red-haired man to follow her once she has neutralized the front. She descends through the air with a look of intense, focused determination.
Choi reflects on how her opponent condensed her mana with the sole intent of killing her.
In a memory, she looks down at the injured blonde hunter and reflects on her brother's protective nature.
She recalls Kim Dong-ju standing firm, declaring his need to stop her to protect his family.
The purple-haired woman continues her dive toward the center of the mana core.
A memory surfaces of a younger red-haired man walking out the door, declaring his disgust for his sister.
A younger Hyeri weeps bitterly on the floor after being rejected by her brother. Back in the present, Choi resolves to push through the pain as she nears the impact.
Her hand begins to burn as she reaches into the intense heat of the core.
Choi charges into the energy with a wide, joyful expression. A sudden, sharp laugh escapes her as the light intensifies. Choi screams that the heat hurts like hell as the energy begins to consume her. Fragments of an artifact and a hand are engulfed by the violent, glowing explosion. She stands amidst a towering pillar of radiant energy. A sharp sizzle sounds as Choi reaches through the blinding flames. The woman's silhouette is cast against the swirling orange vortex of the core. She lets out a thunderous roar as she is completely submerged in the light.
A blue system window appears, stating that she cannot die until a certain event occurs.
Countless overlapping system notifications fill the air with the same ominous warning. A single, clear notification confirms her forced survival until the hatching is complete. Kim Dong-ju and the officer look down at the massive, smoking crater in total shock.
Song A-kyung is bewildered, wondering how it is possible for the woman to still be alive.
The red-haired man stares down, questioning if Choi is even truly human. He looks on in a stunned, heavy silence as the dust settles.
Choi stands at the bottom of the crater, silhouetted against the bright, misty background.
She slowly turns her head, her long purple hair flowing behind her. Choi laughs with pure triumph, celebrating her success in cleaning up the mess. From high above, the others watch in absolute disbelief as they realize she actually blocked the energy. Averting his eyes, Dongju demands that the officer give Choi some clothes because the sight is distracting. Choi teases the red-haired man about the surprisingly high quality of the clothes he carries.
Purple-haired woman poses in casual pose. Laughing, Choi mocks the weakling for talking back while Dongju jumps around in the distance.
Choi asks if they should go again as the confused officer wonders where she is heading.
Heavy impacts crush the stone structures.
A thunderous scream of "Kyak" echoes as Choi declares they must finish off the remaining enemies.
Stunned, Dongju asks if this is what she meant by her previous statement.
A massive explosion clears the path forward.
Surrounded by monsters in the dark.
A sharp gasp escapes Dongju as the group stares into the shadows.
Grotesque monster crouches on a rock. A low, menacing grrr rumbles from the monster's throat. Panicked, Dongju wonders why there are so many and questions what kind of dungeon they have entered. The party realizes they are completely surrounded.
Terrified, the healer lets out a piercing kia as the monsters close in.
She looks on in wide-eyed shock.
Spotting Hunter Kim Yunhan, the healer frantically asks why she is using a monster's foot as a pillow.
A frantic, I'm sorry, breaks from the healer as she regrets not taking better care of her.
A sharp kyak sounds as a monster lunges toward the healer and Dongju. Dongju reaches out to use magic.
He shields the others from the beast.
Dongju asks why she is jumping in there, noting that Yunhan was already in that dangerous spot.
Gritting his teeth, he calls them bastards as he prepares to strike back. A bright flash of energy slices to the ear.
Monsters are bisected by the attack.
Sharp stone pillars impale the monsters.
Massive earth spikes clear the area.
Dongju explains that they will be wiped out if they fight everyone here, so they must kill the boss to escape quickly.
The healer and officer eagerly agree.
Stomping his foot, Dongju declares they should find the boss room first. Detection skill maps out the area. Glowing blue lines trace the cavern. Dongju focuses his senses, searching for his target.
Magic reveals the monster's hiding places.
He spots a critical detail ahead. His eyes narrow in intense concentration. A sudden realization strikes the hunter. He finds where the boss room is.
Choi tells Kim Dongju to look for the boss later while she finishes the monsters, prompting him to ask if she came here to play.
Dongju points out the temple where the boss mob resides, and Choi simply agrees. He instructs her to follow from behind and protect the others during the advance.
He estimates the task will take 2 minutes and asks her to hold out until he can help, but she just hums in response.
Choi clarifies the plan to defeat the boss first, and Dongju confirms it increases their chances of survival.
Choi suddenly laughs and refuses to follow the plan, causing Dongju to shout her name in frustration.
Enraged, Dongju calls her a crazy girl as she charges into the fray.
A joyful ha-ha escapes Choi as she runs toward the enemies, mocking the idea of listening to him.
She declares she cannot ignore the prey right in front of her.
Choi leaps into the air, determined not to miss the opportunity. A monster screams that it won't let her pass.
It demands that no one enters the boss room.
Choi shreds through the monsters with ease.
Hyun Choi resolves to stay until she kills every enemy, prompting Kim Dongju to dismiss her statement as absolute nonsense.
Swarms of winged monsters shriek as they fill the cavern. Monsters are sliced apart by a sharp wave of blue energy.
Choi strikes an enemy with a powerful light-infused kick. Numerous system notifications appear simultaneously, stating that her stats are increasing.
The purple-haired woman crouches on the ground as the continuous surge of power vibrates around her.
Gasping for breath, she notes that the monsters are rising endlessly. With a manic expression, Choi celebrates as her stats continue to rise.
Her gaze sharpens as she focuses her attention on the battlefield.
The woman stands before the crumbling stone entrance of a massive, dark temple.
Choi decides not to enter the temple yet, explaining that she wants to get a bit stronger first.
She speaks with a determined and cold intensity.
A sudden impact strikes a winged monster, catching it off guard.
A powerful beam of energy erupts from the ground, incinerating the surrounding beasts. Monsters howl in agony while the officer watches the destruction in total shock.
Song A-kyung realizes the hunter is luring the monsters away and wonders how she plans to handle the situation alone.
The officer lets out a confused cry as the battle intensifies.
Choi moves with blinding speed, leaving a trail of white energy in her wake.
Confused, the officer remembers lowering the woman to C rank and questions if her skill actually failed.
Kim Dong-ju and the healer watch in awe, wondering if Hyun Choi was actually still A rank or if she is somehow even stronger than before.
A monster lets out a thunderous shriek while the healer screams in terror. A jagged energy slash tears through the air. The healer weeps with gratitude toward Kim Dong-ju, while Choi looks on in anger, accusing him of stealing her prey again. Enraged, Choi demands that he stop killing her targets, but Dong-ju retorts by asking if they should just let themselves die instead. Dong-ju yells that she is really crazy and warns her that she will be in trouble once his rank returns to normal.
Choi mockingly asks if he truly doesn't need her help anymore.
Scolding her, the red-haired man insists that he doesn't need her help as more monsters close in.
Panicked, Dong-ju realizes that the monsters are pushing in again.
A sharp sound echoes as Dong-ju desperately calls for Hyun Choi to come and help him against the overwhelming numbers.
Laughing, Choi teases him about his informal speech and refuses to help, forcing the man to beg for his life.
Shouting at her, he demands she come and fight.
Choi reacts with sudden wide-eyed surprise.
A close-up reveals the hunter's intense, focused gaze.
Kim Dong-ju continues to scream for help as he struggles against the horde.
Her eye narrows as she makes a decision.
Choi casually agrees to help, addressing him as Strenchan.
A monster lets out a gurgling shriek as Dong-ju braces for the next attack.
A powerful blow connects with the beast's head.
Dong-ju looks on in silence as a massive energy arc slices through the enemies.
A wet, crunching sound echoes through the cavern. Grinning, Dong-ju thanks Choi for her loyalty.
He suggests they form ranks to clear the area quickly, but notices Choi is busy mumbling to herself and asks if she is even listening.
Looking away, Choi whispers that he is already dead and questions why she is still following his orders.
She continues her internal struggle, wondering why she can't stop listening to him.
A crimson light flickers in the woman's eyes.
A single notification appears with the name An Hyun-chan. A boot crushes the bloodied remains of a monster.
A purple-haired woman in a blue shirt stands guard with a large spiked shield.
Dong-ju thanks the guard for the protection but becomes confused as the woman begins to fade away into blue light.
Choi dashes away into the distance, ignoring Dong-ju's frustrated question about where she's going.
Choi yells about how annoying the situation has become.
A sharp kiak sounds as Choi curses at the monsters swarming her.
The purple-haired woman charges forward angrily.
Choi commands the beast to get out of her way.
She lands a heavy, crushing blow.
Blood sprays as Choi shreds mosses.
A massive energy explosion clears enemies.
A quick tap sounding follows her laving. Choi stands alone in the vast hall.
Her cold gaze narrows in concentration.
Turning around, Choi asks if someone called out to her. The fleshy mass remarks on how absurd the situation is.
The boss stares with one giant eye.
Magic identifies the B-rank boss monster.
The monster lets out distorted, unintelligible cries.
Confused, Choi asks what the creature walks. More incomprehensible symbols erupt from the beast.
The massive creature looms over Choi. Choi picks her ear and complains that the monster is noisy enough to kill her.
She demands it speak a language she can understand, noting its current speech is foreign to her.
Choi whispers in realization and growing boredom. Leaping into the air, Choi declares the situation is frustrating. She strikes the monster's massive eye.
A heavy impact ripples through flesh.
Choi lands with a startled expression. A brown-haired man appears and notes it has been a long time.
Smiling, the man claims he missed Choi.
A red slash cuts through memory.
The boss monster asks what she is talking about.
Choi's hand drops to his side.
Choi stands over the man's image, stating she didn't miss him and calling him a pathetic bastard. A blue system window causes Choi to gasp in surprise.
Choi looks at the remains, wondering if it was the monster from earlier.
She realizes the creature knew about Hyun-chan because of its special ability.
The monster confirms this is its specific skill. It explains that its power involves reading the memories of others.
The boss continues, explaining it materializes trauma into reality to launch attacks.
Choi realizes she even reacted to the fake Hyun-chan's orders earlier.
Observing the crowd of clones, Choi notes the boss put a lot of effort into making them for her.
A sharp cracking sound echoes out.
Choi laughs with pure, manic triumph.
Gritting his teeth, the red-haired man screams for help.
Monsters swarm the lone red-haired warrior.
Dong-ju panics, yelling that there are too many enemies to handle. A sharp keek sounds as a monster lunges forward.
The swarm suddenly rushes toward the temple. Stunned, the man asks what is happening.
The temple gate stands empty now.
Dong-ju wonders why everyone is heading into the temple.
Rapid footsteps topping away signal Choi's movement.
Choi slices through the fading illusions. Two identical men suggest it is not too late to stop. The purple-haired woman ruthlessly carves through the remaining clones.
The brown-haired man stares in shock.
He slowly lowers his head.
She prepares for a final strike.
Choi tells the illusions to leave, stating she has no affection for them.
A system window confirms she has reached S rank, prompting her to express love for Hyunchan.
A sinister smile plays on her lips. She lunges forward with incredible speed.
Choi leaps high above the massive monster. Her glowing fist prepares for impact.
A colossal explosion erupts from the blood.
Thick smoke begins to clear slowly.
As the beast falls, the system announces the dungeon is cleared.
Choi stares ahead with a stunned expression.
A massive dark silhouette looms behind her. The purple-haired woman looks up in disbelief.
A distorted voice asks why she chose to betray them.
Her foot makes a heavy landing sounding.
Standing over the remains, she finds the entire situation annoying. A sudden thought causes her a pause. She crouches down on the monster's corpse.
A small ring falls to the ground. Choi wonders why the item is suddenly coming off.
She looks down at the ring silently.
The woman lets out a joyful shout. She asks if this is the end and if the ring removed itself due to her S-rank status.
Reaching for the ring, she decides to focus only on high-rank dungeons from now on.
Choi celebrates her new freedom with a cheer.
Holding the jewelry, she notes the battle ended easier than expected.
A blue system window appears, confusing the hunter.
The notification identifies the item as an E-rank empty ring.
Choi is shocked to find the parasite's ring has changed. The system declares the first growth phase is now complete.
She questions what this new message actually implies. Dark shapes swirl in a red mist.
A terrifying crowned silhouette looms over the hunter.
Choi admits she cannot understand what the entity is saying. The massive shadow reaches out for her.
She demands to know what the creature wants. The blonde-haired woman stares ahead in shock.
Kim Yun-han realizes that she is still alive.
The officer and healer celebrate as Hunter Kim Yun-han regains consciousness.
They worry because the wounded woman still cannot move. Yun-han asks about the status of Dongjir.
The healer looks on with tearful eyes. Smiling, the blonde woman apologizes for showing such a pathetic side.
Hugging her tightly, the healer begs her not to get hurt again.
Watching the emotional scene, Dongju asks if the two women are dating.
Recovering from her injuries, Kim Yun-han asks if Hyun Choi has been fighting the monsters alone since she lost consciousness.
Feeling humiliated, the blonde woman laments being rescued by the very person she had previously doubted.
She notes the anomalies in the current situation, questioning if any hunter has ever resisted the leech's peculiar abilities. Kim Dongju and the healer describe how Choi suddenly stormed off to face the boss alone, seemingly provoked by a sound only she heard. The blonde woman contemplates Choi's overwhelming power, finding her performance exceptional even for a hidden dungeon.
Kim Yun-han decides they must follow Choi to the boss room despite Dongju's exhaustion.
Yun-han insists on joining the fight, reasoning that Choi is virtually invincible, while Dongju desperately wants to leave.
The red-haired man reacts with confusion when Yen-han mentions she has something personal to address with Choi. The blonde woman acknowledges that, regardless of the circumstances, Choi's actions ultimately serve to protect the entire group.
Dongju reminds her of the near-fatal danger she faced because of Choi, but Yun-han dismisses the point as irrelevant. A moment of quiet introspection as she considers the implications of Choi's survival. Looking at her companion, she bluntly points out that his survival is proof enough of the outcome.
Dongju teases her about her change in attitude after her brush with death, prompting a sharp threat from her. She offers to hear out any of his grievances once they have safely returned home from the dungeon. When Dongju suggests looking for more hidden dungeons, Yun-han immediately shuts down the idea.
The officer comments on the healer's deep devotion to her brother as they follow the others.
The group comes across the gruesome aftermath of Choi's rampage, noting she has slaughtered every creature in her path. Yun-han finds the carnage revolting and warns the others to stay alert since the dungeon clear notification hasn't surfaced.
Noticing the unnatural silence, Kim Dongju pushes open the gate with a sudden, sharp creak sounding.
The pair gasps in astonishment at the sight revealed behind the gate. They gaze into the massive hall, stunned to find that Choi has seemingly already cornered the giant boss monster.
Seeing the wreckage, Dongju shouts out to Choi, questioning her current actions.
Choi remains motionless, hunched over the center of the creature's enormous, unblinking eye.
Frustrated by her silence, the red-haired man urges her to finish off the beast so they can finally escape.
He falters as he realizes something is wrong, noticing strange symbols appearing in a thought bubble.
The boss monster's giant eye stares back, emitting distorted and unintelligible magical speech.
Choi continues to stare into the abyss, her own thoughts currently obscured by the monster's influence.
Dongju watches with growing concern as Choi appears to be engaging in some form of silent communication with the enemy. He shouts her name again, desperate to snap her out of her apparent trance.
Choi slowly turns her head, revealing a terrifying transformation with eyes consumed by darkness and blood staining her lips.
The red-haired man recoils in pure terror as he realizes the woman before him is no longer herself.
Her expression is blank and void of humanity as more incomprehensible symbols erupt from her. Sensing the immediate danger, Kim Yeon-han screams for Dongju to flee as she charges toward the possessed woman with a quick tap sounding.
A sudden, blinding explosion of energy tosses the three hunters through the air like ragdolls.
The blonde woman's desperate warning echoes once more as she tries to intervene in the unfolding disaster.
Gravity seems to fail as the hunters are swept up in the aftermath of a massive power surge.
A deafening blast rocks the chamber, blinding Kim Dong-ju as the dungeon's energy reaches a violent peak.
Choi is sent hurtling across the room by a massive impact, leaving the healer and officers screaming in terror.
Kim Yeon-han collapses onto the stone floor with a heavy thud sounding as her companions rush to her side.
Amidst the chaos, Yeon-han curses her own vulnerability, furious at being overpowered by what she considers a weak force.
Yeon-han demands answers from Officer Song, who is equally baffled as to why her rank-lowering skill failed to affect Choi.
The officer concludes that Choi must be fundamentally different from any human they have encountered, as it's the only logical explanation.
Yeon-han rejects the explanation, questioning if the officer's power was intentionally limited only to her and her brother. Song insists she targeted all three of them, but Yeon-han points toward the unfolding horror as proof of her failure.
As Yeon-han continues her tirade, she notices the healer beginning to walk toward the center of the room in a daze.
The blonde woman shouts out in alarm as the healer wanders off toward the remains of the boss monster.
The brown-haired healer ignores the calls, her eyes fixed forward with an uncharacteristic intensity. The situation turns violent as Choi suddenly tackles Dongju to the floor, pinning him down with terrifying strength. Dongju screams in her face, desperately trying to get the possessed woman to focus as her eyes remain unnervingly rolled back.
Despite his frantic pleas, Choi remains silent, her mouth dripping blood as the dark entity continues to control her.
The purple-haired woman continues to loom over the red-haired man as she emits more incomprehensible magic symbols.
Looking away, the red-haired man laments that she has completely lost her mind and refuses to listen to anything.
He wonders if her current insanity stems from consuming the boss monster, questioning why she would do something so revolting while resolving to snap her out of the trance quickly.
The red-haired man ponders how he managed to restore her to her senses in a previous situation.
Choi remains in her possessed state, her response limited to more indecipherable magical symbols.
A dark, demonic grin spreads across the purple-haired woman's blood-stained face as she continues her unintelligible communication.
She lets out a terrifying roar, her mouth open wide as more symbols erupt from her.
The red-haired man recoils in terror, asking if she is actually serious about trying to eat him next.
A sudden, powerful staff strike catches the purple-haired woman by surprise, knocking her away from the man with a painful ah sounding.
The brown-haired healer stares coldly at the fallen woman, noting that she had already given a warning. A glowing staff is held ready. The red-haired man shouts in confusion about why a healer is attacking, but she retorts that they are the ones who are truly dangerous.
The healer demands the man manage his girlfriend better, though he frantically shouts back that she isn't his girlfriend and that it's a horrible thing to suggest.
Despite the blow, the purple-haired woman continues to mutter more cryptic and unreadable symbols.
The healer prepares another magical strike, her anger mounting as she prepares to deal with the threat once and for all.
Debris flies as magic strikes down.
Choi screams in agony as she coughs up a spray of dark blood while more symbols appear. The blonde woman intervenes, apologizing for the violence while questioning why anyone would try to harm a precious guild member and healer.
The blonde woman asks if the healer is okay after such a dangerous move, and the healer admits her temper got the best of her. The officer asks the red-haired man if Choi is still alive, and he grimly predicts she will likely survive the damage.
He decides to wait a moment longer, hoping the impact will force her to snap out of the trance before he has to take her out of the dungeon.
The blonde woman demands they leave her behind because she is dangerous, but the red-haired man reminds her of the gratitude she expressed earlier.
The red-haired man suddenly hears something, questioning if the others caught the sound as well. Turning back to the purple-haired woman, he demands that she snap out of her state immediately.
He admits that while she might be slightly crazy, he truly believes she isn't a dangerous person at heart.
The purple-haired woman's gaze begins softening.
The red-haired man watches her closely, calling her name to see if she is back. Looking around in a daze, Choi asks what is going on.
The purple-haired woman looks down at her state in shock, while the red-haired man warns her to stay still and fall back.
Confusion crosses the purple-haired hunter's face.
Choi is surprised that Yeon-han is alive and fully healed. Still wary, the blonde woman asks if she is truly back to herself now. The red-haired man asks Choi if she remembers anything that happened, but she is completely lost as to his meaning. She wonders why the whole group is present, recalling that she was alone just a moment ago.
Choi notices a small ring on the floor, observing that it has somehow come off.
A blue system window appears, announcing that the first growth phase has been completed.
She stares ahead with wide eyes.
A moment of silent, stunned introspection. A dark entity whispers from the red mist, commanding her to eat and claim power because she is still too weak. The entity continues its manipulation, insisting that she must become stronger.
Choi stands alone in red mist. Dark shadows loom over the woman.
Looking at the remains of the boss, Choi asks if she really consumed the creature.
She looks down in disbelief, her expression pale as she asks what happened.
Horrified, the purple-haired woman wonders what on earth has happened to her.
The man watches her in silence.
Choi falls back into the darkness.
A blue-haired boy stands in silence.
Looking around with curiosity, the boy questions what is happening. In a lush forest, the blue-haired boy pauses as the group walks away, thinking he heard a strange sound.
The blue-haired boy stares back with an unreadable, detached expression.
Nara is questioned by his pink-haired companion but dismisses his preoccupation as nothing.
White sneakers step firmly across the forest path.
Back at the dungeon, the red-haired man pleads for the unconscious woman to snap out of her state.
Choi remains unresponsive, her face appearing peaceful despite the surrounding chaos.
A blue system window confirms that the Fallen Heaven dungeon has been successfully cleared in record time.
A massive, glowing portal erupts between city buildings as surrounding hunters celebrate their survival.
2 hunters discuss the incredible feat, noting that the B-rank dungeon was conquered in a mere 7 hours.
A woman in the foreground yells a sharp warning to prevent others from entering the unstable dungeon too early.
A hunter argues that entering early is fine, but the worker insists on following official safety rules.
An official calls out to the area, asking if everyone has made it back to the surface safely.
Dongju emerges carrying Choi on his back, flanked by his guild members as he announces their safe return.
The crowd erupts in cheers for their guild, accompanied by a frustrated and several loud claps sounding.
Officer Song teases a flustered Yonhan about her continued embarrassment despite their many successes.
Younghan snaps at the red-haired man about his prior intentions while he promises to handle everything.
A look of sudden realization and stress crosses Dongju's face as he processes the situation.
The blonde woman continues her tirade about a leech and fears that Choi's true abilities are now public.
Dongju instructs the group to act naturally and exit the area as quickly as possible. A worker greets Dongju with a series of quick steps sounding, expressing total shock over the dungeon's sudden rank fluctuations.
When asked for details about the raid, the red-haired man hesitates and looks away nervously.
Officer Song steps in to cover for them, stating Choi is unwell and requesting a private space for her.
Dongju pulls the officer aside to ask about the report, fearing Choi will be targeted by other guilds.
Song A-kyung urges them to leave immediately, accompanied by a steady thumping sounding as she promises to manage the situation.
She explains that credit for the clear will go to Dongju and Yanhan to give Choi time to recover.
The purple-haired officer privately notes how much the woman has changed recently.
She asks if they were originally acquainted, but Dongju clarifies that they were complete strangers.
Officer Song asked him to watch over Choi closely and contact her if anything strange happens. Amidst the busy cleanup scene, Choi is visible sitting alone inside a large medical tent. The purple-haired woman sits in silence on a cot, her head bowed as she processes recent events.
She holds up the small golden ring, examining the mysterious object she found in the dungeon.
A heavy silence fills the tent as Choi stares ahead with an intense, focused gaze. Outside, a supervisor suggests deploying a mining team to extract valuable resources from the cleared dungeon. Dongju and an official discuss the logistics of tallying assets and sending out auction guides. The red-haired man turns and is surprised to see that Choi has finally awakened and left the cot.
Choi asks what is happening, and the worker explains the plan to put the dungeon up for auction.
Choi yells in outrage that she cleared the dungeon, only for Dongju to silence her with a sudden, sharp grab sounding.
Dongju laughs nervously and asks the worker to contact them once the review is fully complete.
The red-haired man drags a fuming Choi away, who eventually gives up a grudging agreement. Dongju shouts at her, questioning why she thinks she owns the dungeon after entering without any permission. Choi rants in incomprehensible symbols while Dongju explains the legal complexities and liability for potential damages.
The purple-haired woman is confused when Dongju mentions the Hanshin Guild is joining the auction.
Dongju explains his history with Hanshin, noting they lack the funds or reputation for this bid.
The red-haired man asks Choi if she knows Officer Song A-kyung, but she denies meeting her.
Choi is stunned to learn the officer knows her and even omitted her from the official report to protect her.
Dongju notes that she narrowly avoided jail, but she jokingly claims she would just break out. He tells her to rest while he leaves to finish his previous tasks from the auction planning.
Dongju walks away, leaving Choi alone in the tent once more.
He thinks to himself that while she seems fine, she remains a dangerous and unpredictable wildcard.
He ponders that leaving her behind wouldn't have mattered legally because the exit stayed open for a while.
He concludes it's better for the Peihug Guild to monitor her directly for the time being.
The red-haired man, Kim Dong-ju, turns around as someone calls out his name.
A pair of white sneakers steps firmly across the floor.
Sitting on a medical cot, the purple-haired woman, Hyun Choi, mentions that he must have witnessed her recent state.
She recalls the horrified expressions of the blonde woman and the healer during the dungeon raid.
Hyun Choi notes that others are now viewing her as nothing more than a monster.
A glimpse of the blonde woman's blood-soaked shirt serves as a grim reminder of the violence.
She reflects on how the essence of the creature has completely merged with her own body.
Looking down, the purple-haired woman reveals that the power within her has reached EX rank. A close-up of her red eye highlights the internal struggle as the foreign entity takes hold of her.
She admits to being terrified of disappearing entirely during the transformation.
Dong-ju listens intently, his expression unreadable. A sudden thud sounding echoes as the red-haired man takes a seat across from the distraught woman.
He addresses Hyun Choi directly.
Looking her in the eyes, Dong-ju firmly vows that he will never let her disappear.
Hyun Choi stares back in stunned silence.
He bluntly asks if a physical blow would snap her back to normal, mentioning he's been looking for an excuse to strike her.
Despite the threat, she smirks and calls him soft-hearted for his obvious concern. A sharp click sounding follows his footsteps as he dismisses her comment, warning her not to cry when he eventually hits her.
She retorts that he is a weakling acting tough and labels him as dead meat.
The blonde woman and her companion arrive at the medical tent, loudly scolding Dong-ju for idling.
Choi cryptically asks Dong-ju if he knows what is currently growing inside her stomach, much to the blonde woman's shock.
Overwhelmed by the suggestion, the blonde woman demands an immediate explanation for the disturbing claim.
Dong-ju lets out a series of snickers, sounding while predicting that any offspring of hers would be just as rotten as she is.
A dark, enraged aura looms over the red-haired man as he realizes the blonde woman has arrived.
Enraged, the blonde woman assumes they are talking about a pregnancy and berates Dong-ju for his supposed recklessness.
A pained sounding escapes Dong-ju as the blonde woman grabs his face in a fit of rage. She screams at Choi, asking if she is carrying Dong-ju's child while he struggles in her grip.
He frantically tries to clear up the massive misunderstanding.
Choi watches the chaotic scene with wide-eyed confusion.
Dong-ju yells at her for making such a misleading comment in the first place.
The healer offers a flustered and misplaced congratulations to the red-haired man.
He screams back that there is nothing to celebrate. The blonde woman continues to bellow his name in a fury. Dong-ju's desperate denials continue.
Later, in a quiet kitchen, the blonde woman sits with her arms crossed while a weary Dong-ju rests his head.
Hyun Choi stands at the stove wearing a pink apron, humming as she prepares a meal.
A loud thump sounding echoes as the blonde woman slams the table, blaming Dong-ju for the situation while Choi remains cheerful.
She demands to know why the purple-haired woman is acting at home in their house, though Dong-ju reminds her that Choi is homeless.
A soft tap sounding accompanies the plate being set down as Choi invites the blonde woman to eat. Another boom sounding rings out as the blonde woman refuses the food and complains about Choi's proximity.
While Dong-ju and Choi begin eating, the blonde woman rants about the danger of eating monster-prepared food and offers to cook herself.
Dong-ju's eyes widen as he takes his first bite.
He is visibly shaken by the unexpectedly delicious flavor of the meal.
He questions if Choi actually cooked it, while the blonde woman eyes his reaction with suspicion.
Choi beams with pride while the blonde woman remains deeply skeptical.
A quick munch sounding follows as the blonde woman finally takes a cautious bite herself.
Her eyes bulge in complete shock at the quality of the dish.
The scene shifts to the sound of running water as a plate is scrubbed clean.
A series of clatter-sounding clinks arise as Dong-ju washes the dishes, marveling at how quickly the blonde woman's attitude changed.
Holding a plate of sliced melon, Dong-ju looks back at the table and wonders what the two women are doing now.
Kim Dong-ju stands holding a plate of fruit while the blonde woman and Hyun Choi remain on the couch, prompting him to ask about their strange behavior while Choi privately questions her own normalcy.
The blonde woman pulls Choi into an embrace and asks for a private conversation about the dungeon, specifically questioning what exactly is growing inside her if it isn't Dong-ju's child.
Dong-ju asks for clarification on the claim that something EX rank exists within Choi, leaving the blonde woman shouting in utter disbelief.
Placing the plate down with a sharp clack sounding, Dong-ju questions if the monster from earlier was actually EX rank and if such a tier even exists, though he admits it is only speculation. The blonde woman glares intensely as she remarks on Choi being more dangerous than anticipated, claiming they are the same kind, while Choi nervously notes her terrifying expression.
A small, frustrated illustration of Dong-ju appears as he questions why she is acting this way after hugging him over the delicious food.
Dongju asks Choi if she remembers eating the boss monster and notes that she had been saying strange things during the raid.
Choi explains that she remembers the event and reveals that she was actually able to understand what the boss monster was saying to her.
The red-haired man's tiny icon shouts in frantic curiosity to know what the creature had communicated.
Choi's small icon explains that the creature initially spoke in incomprehensible rage, but its meaning became clear once she reached S rank.
The purple-haired woman recalls the creature's words about being of the same kind and mentioning a betrayal.
A single, massive monster eye sheds a tear as a solitary question about the reason for these events hangs in the air.
A distorted, unintelligible message flickers across the dark background. A flashback shows the perspective of someone approaching a massive, dark entity within the dungeon.
Choi's glowing red eyes stare ahead in a moment of silent, intense realization during the dungeon encounter.
Choi cheers with her arms raised, happily admitting that the monster's final words remained a total mystery to her.
The trio sits in a stunned, open-mouthed silence as they process the confusing and contradictory information.
The blonde woman warns that this revelation would cause a global uproar, while Dongju expresses shock at Choi's rapidly rising S-rank stats. Choi suggests returning to the dungeon to hear more, but Dongju immediately rejects the idea, explaining that the cleared dungeon will take 6 months to reset.
The purple-haired woman wonders if she can communicate with other monsters and asks if there are any new or reset dungeons available for them to enter.
Dongju sits cross-legged on the floor, looking weary and pensive as he listens to the discussion.
A sudden whoosh sounding echoes as a sharp energy slash cuts through the air in a lush green environment. A D-rank guardian known as the Sacred Serpent appears, emitting a deafening ma sounding as it lunges with its winged body.
The winged serpent monster continues its piercing ma sounding as it thrashes around the battlefield. A blonde hunter with a shield commands the group to maintain their formation and asks hunter Shim Nara to provide a buff.
The blue-haired boy, Shim Nara, confirms the order as a glowing blue magic circle forms around his hands.
The winged serpent monster screams again as it is buffeted by the force of the ongoing magical combat.
The hunter is thrown backward, bracing behind his wooden shield as the force of the monster's attack hits him.
A blur of motion carries the hunter forward as he pushes against the enemy with his shield held high. An archer takes aim while the hunter continues to hold the front line against the thrashing tail of the serpent.
A massive pointed spear of energy shatters the space around the hunter's shield with a loud crack sounding. The monster is violently struck, blood spraying as a powerful attack tears through its midsection. The shield-bearing hunter calls out to hunter Kim Ho-yun to prepare for the final move.
A system alert announces that the combat fervor skill has been deactivated as Ho-yun, the man with the ponytail, finishes his strike.
The monster falls in several clean, bloody segments as the coordinated attack completely dismantles it.
Ho-yun stands over the defeated creature, his blade still drawn as he looks back toward his teammates.
Shim Nara lets out a relieved sigh, placing a hand on his chest as the tension of the battle fades.
The team stands together in the clearing, congratulating each other on their hard work amidst the scattered remains of the serpent.
The fallen guardian begins to dissolve into glowing blue pixels, signifying the completion of the training simulation.
Ho-yun notes that the training session is over, while the archer cheers at the prospect of finally getting some rest.
Shim Nara remains behind with a troubled, silent expression as the others move on. The hunter, Gam Sang-woo, approaches the boy and asks why he looks so sad, wondering if it's due to the official test scheduled for tomorrow.
The blue-haired boy admits his desire to join the Peihak Guild but expresses deep anxiety that this test might be his final opportunity.
Nara quickly apologizes to Gam Sang-woo for being so pessimistic and bringing a negative mood before the important trial.
Sang-woo places a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder and tells him not to worry, promising that he will see good results.
The boy stands alone and confused as Sang-woo walks away into the distance.
Shim Nara lets out a surprised sound as he notices someone watching him from above.
A close-up of the boy's wide blue eyes captures his shock as he stares toward a nearby window. High above in a large window, Hyun Choi waves her arms enthusiastically to get the boy's attention, causing him to shout in surprise. Joy beams with a massive, joyful grin as she watches the training session from her safe vantage point.
The blue-haired boy, Nara, looks at Choi's new clothes and asks if she bought them, noticing how much she has changed.
Hyun Choi excitedly shows off her gray blazer and black top with wide arms while the red-haired man Dongju looks on with a confused expression. The blonde woman calls out to Dongju while Choi stands with her arms crossed, looking pleased with herself. A close-up of the blonde woman captures her look of mild surprise. She looks down through the large glass window at the small figure of Nara standing far below. Nara is completely starstruck as he realizes he is seeing the legendary Peihak Guild members in person. The blonde woman gives Nara a friendly wave, prompting a happy gasp as he feels incredibly honored by the personal greeting.
Nara pumps his fists with a determined grin, vowing that he will definitely pass the test and join the guild.
His expression quickly shifts to one of deep contemplation and doubt.
Looking back up at the high window, Nara wonders why Choi is standing there among the elite hunters.
From behind Nara, the thought arises that she might have actually been scouted by the prestigious organization. Nara recalls her departure and wonders if her excuses about leaving were just a cover for her secret recruitment. Nara mutters to himself about Choi choosing to live with the guild and realizes that is why she stopped wearing his old clothes. Up in the observation room, Choi and the blonde woman watch as Nara begins to walk away. Nara's eyes are cast in shadow as he falls into a quiet, somber mood.
A sharp tack sounding rings out from the floor as Nara steps forward to leave.
Choi stares forward with a calm, neutral expression.
Nara walks toward the distant doors with his back turned, appearing defeated and lonely.
Dongju watches Nara walk away and remarks that the boy suddenly looks quite unwell.
The blonde woman expresses concern about Nara's health before the big test, but Choi suggests that they should just let him pass regardless.
Dongju claims to understand exactly why Nara is acting that way as a document rustles in his hand. Small chibi icons of the blonde woman and Choi look puzzled by his claim, but he decides to drop the subject for now.
Choi asks if the test will be held in a reset dungeon, and Dongju confirms that those are the only ones available for testing.
A small Choi icon excitedly declares that she wants to go inside the dungeon too.
Dongju's tiny icon points out that she isn't even a member of the guild. Choi's tiny icon explains that she has no interest in joining a guild in the first place.
Choi still wants to accompany Nara, but the blonde woman's icon explains that guild members always enter as secret judges for safety.
The blonde woman tells Choi it is time to check on the mystery growing inside her stomach as they move through the facility. Choi looks back over her shoulder with a curious, wide-eyed stare.
The blonde woman gives a confident and slightly mischievous smile.
An official in a suit addresses a group of gathered hunters, providing instructions before they begin their second practical test.
He explains that they will be entering the C-rank collapsed sanctuary, which is the same location they used during their training.
The proctor warns that the dungeon must be cleared within 5 days or the guild will deploy a rescue team.
Nara is shocked and sweating as he hears that anyone needing rescue will be immediately eliminated from the test. The proctor reminds them to prioritize survival above all else, as being alive means more opportunities will come.
A system alert confirms their entry into the C-rank dungeon as Nara and his team arrive at a base camp in the forest.
Nara thinks about the record-setting clear times and the intense pressure he is under to succeed.
He analyzes the number of monsters they must defeat and compares it to their performance in the virtual simulations.
The group moves through the dense green woods as a sudden rustling sound fills the air. A monster's screech echoes through the forest as the shield-bearing hunter notes that the enemies appeared just as he finished talking. The black-haired swordsman and the red-haired archer immediately prepare for the incoming engagement.
Nara stands alongside the blonde healer, his face filled with grim determination as he readies his skills.
The command to begin combat is given as winged monsters lunge from the sky with piercing cries.
A pale, winged monster opens its fanged mouth wide, emitting a terrifying screech.
One of the winged beasts thrashes against the ground while charging toward the hunter with the shield.
Bracing behind his wooden shield, the hunter calls out for Nara to provide immediate support.
Nara responds with a loud shout, thrusting his hands forward to unleash a powerful magical burst.
A massive shockwave ripples through the battlefield as Nara's energy collides with the attacking beast. Gritting his teeth, Nara realizes that the real difficulty of this dungeon is significantly higher than he anticipated.
The winged monster prepares for another swoop while the hunter braces himself behind his shield for the next impact.
A monster's jagged, fanged maw hangs open as a violent eruption of blood sprays across the air.
The red-haired archer Nara calls out to Hunter Danmaru, requesting another round of support as she readies her bow.
Several arrows glowing with brilliant blue energy streak through the forest as they are released in a rapid-fire barrage.
One of the magical projectiles finds its mark, piercing through the head of a pale, winged monster and drawing blood.
The winged beast thrashes in agony, whipping its massive tail around to intercept the remaining incoming arrows. Nara, the blue-haired boy, shouts in shock that the creature successfully blocked the attack with his tail, urging his team to aim faster.
He continues to shout instructions, explaining that they must focus on hitting the monster's body instead of the tail to slow it down.
The red-haired archer turns on him with a furious expression, ordering him to stop giving commands since he is only a lowly buffer.
She berates the boy for his lack of combat efficacy and demands to know if he will take responsibility if they fail to join the prestigious guild.
Gritting his teeth, Nara yells back in his own defense, insisting that he is giving his absolute best effort to support the team.
The black-haired hunter with a ponytail intervenes, telling them both to stop fighting while reminding the archer to perform as well as she did yesterday.
He orders Nara to assist the tanker while coordinating the group to separate the monster's head from its tail to ensure a kill.
The archer stands surrounded by a golden aura of energy as she prepares to unleash a flurry of arrows upon the enemies. Blood erupts from the monsters as the team's coordinated strikes begin to take a heavy toll on the winged beasts.
Shim Nara watches the chaos from the sidelines, his face tight with a mix of concentration and growing unease.
A close-up of the boy's face reveals his mounting frustration and a hint of suppressed anger. The scene shifts to a memory of a heavy, locked stone door, accompanied by bitter thoughts regarding the heartless abandonment of Hyun Choi.
In the flashback, Shim Nara shouts at his former companions, questioning if their higher ranks give them the right to treat others like property.
A man with light brown hair and a cruel, mocking smile calls out to Nara, his eyes glinting with malice.
He taunts the boy, asking what he will do if the team decides to abandon him and leave him behind in the dangerous dungeon.
Crossing his arms confidently, the man questions if a lowly C-rank buffer could ever hope to escape a B-rank dungeon on his own.
He sneers that buffers are easily replaceable and that the team won't mind if Shim Nara falls behind and is lost.
Shim Nara's face is cast in deep shadow as he struggles with the crushing weight of his perceived weakness.
A close-up of the boy's blue eye captures a cold, sudden shift in his demeanor as he stares into the void.
Returning to the present, the black-haired hunter shouts at Shim Nara to hurry up and provide the necessary buffs for the fight.
The boy remains silent and grim, his lips drawn into a thin line as the pressure of the combat intensifies.
A system alert confirms that the combat fervor skill has been deactivated as Shim Nara stands motionless within his magic circle.
Without the magical support, the black-haired hunter is forced to lunge out of the way of a devastating tail sweep.
Several of the pale, winged monsters shriek in unison as they swarm toward the unbuffed hunters in the clearing.
Nara's eyes widen in terror as he realizes the dire situation the group has fallen into without his aid.
A sharp whoosh sounding echoes through the forest as the monster's tail cuts through the air with lethal speed.
The hunter with the ponytail manages to duck just in time, the massive tail passing inches above his head. He continues to scramble for safety as the monster looms over him, its shadow covering the battlefield.
The beast prepares for a final strike against the vulnerable hunter while Shim Nara watches with a frozen expression. A memory of Hyun Choi appears where she calmly explains that the only way to increase one's stats is through relentless killing.
A massive spray of blood douses the landscape as she describes the necessity of doing it countless times to grow stronger.
Shim Nara stands before his glowing magic circle as blood splatters across the ground in the foreground. He laments the fact that he awakened as a buffer, feeling cursed by his supportive role. Looking down at his feet, he decides that he must simply live according to the rank he was originally assigned. The blonde tanker, Gam Sang-woo, shouts in desperation for the archer to assist them before they are overwhelmed. Shim Nara looks up from his introspection, his face illuminated by the harsh light of the ongoing battle. His expression twists into one of pure panic as the shadow of a monster falls directly over him.
The winged beast opens its fanged mouth wide, letting out a terrifying screech as it lunges at the defenseless boy.
A powerful energy slash tears through the air, decapitating the monster in a sudden, violent explosion of blood.
Gam Sang-woo calls out to Shim Nara as he and the other hunters rush toward the spot where the boy was nearly killed.
Shim Nara collapses onto his hands and knees, coughing violently as the dust from the impact begins to settle. The blonde hunter stares at the boy with a look of intense concern and lingering fear.
A close-up of Nara's eye reveals his utter confusion as he questions why such a powerful entity appeared in this location.
The scene shifts to a tall, modern apartment building standing under a clear, bright blue sky. The red-haired man, Dong-ju, lies in bed with a weary and contemplative expression, staring blankly toward the ceiling.
A sleek smartphone buzzes with a bucking sound.
Dong-ju, the red-haired man, wakes up grumbling as a voice requests his attention.
A red alert system notification informs Hunter Kim Dong-ju of a massive problem.
The notification reveals that a C-rank dungeon has just been upgraded to S-rank.
The winged monster is brutally shredded. Racing behind his shield, the blonde hunter Gam Sang-woo watches the slaughter. Gam Sang-woo reacts with pure terror at the monster's power. A wet, tearing sounding fills the air. A massive pale mantis monster looms over its kill with glowing eyes. The hunters stand frozen at the forest edge while Nara remains on the ground.
Gam Sang-woo identifies the creature as an A-rank predatory pursuer from an S-rank dungeon.
Panicking, Gam Sang-woo screams for Hunter Shim Nara to get up and escape. Shim Nara stares in absolute terror.
Gam Sang-woo continues to shout for a retreat, desperately suggesting they abandon her and go.
Nara's hands tremble in the grass.
Nara tells himself he must move because he cannot be a burden to others.
The monster's eye fixates on Nara.
Nara breaks out in a cold sweat.
He remains paralyzed by the monster's gaze. Nara thinks about how massive the creature is and admits he is terrified.
A mental scream of terror repeats within the boy's panicked thoughts.
Nara collapses further, weeping and begging that he doesn't want to die yet.
A pincer descends with a clicking sound as Nara lets out a terrified cry.
Nara looks up in confusion when the killing blow does not arrive. The massive creature looms over Nara.
The monster tilts its head curiously. The archer and ponytail swordsman wonder why the monster has stopped its attack. Gam Sang-woo is bewildered, noting the creature is originally a vicious predator with a huge appetite.
Watching Nara on the ground, the team wonders if the boy possesses something special.
The monster leans in close to the boy's face with a terrified eek sounding. A mysterious system notification displaying 3 red boxes appears before the monster. Staring up at the monster, Nara whispers in confusion at the strange situation.
A powerful slash sounding tears ear.
A sudden shockwave stuns the boy. Gam Sang-woo screams for Hunter Shim Nara as he rushes toward the clear.
The ponytail swordsman attacks with a scramble sounding.
Gam Sang-woo screams for them to stop and avoid provoking the dangerous creature.
The creature screeches with a piercing sounding. The warrior falls with a heavy impact sounding.
Nara watches his teammates fall helplessly.
Blood spatters across the battlefield. The archer screams in agony as she demands to know how the beast dared to attack Hunter Hoyen.
She screams a final command for the monster to die as she draws her bow.
Her arrows break with a shattering sounding.
The monster strikes with a whoosh sounding.
The archer collapses with a thud sounding. Gam Sang-woo screams for Hunter Dan-maru as he watches the archer collapse.
Magic circle glows with a humming sound.
Healer arrives with a divine glowing sounding. Holy light blinds the screeching monster. The massive monster is suddenly shredded with a sequence of high-pitched screeching and tearing sounds. The clearing is left in a state of gruesome devastation, with fallen hunters lying in pools of blood while the survivors' breath hitching. Approaching the dazed blue-haired boy, the girl in the green cloak apologizes for the delay, explaining the magic was unfamiliar to her. She holds her glowing book close, clarifying that her abilities are limited to a once-per-day light magic defense rather than direct combat. The forest clearing stands momentarily silent. A golden light emanates from the healer's magical tome. Kneeling beside the injured red-haired archer, the healer asks if she is all right, while Nara watches with a tense expression. The red-haired archer snaps at her with a pained grimace, demanding to know if she is being mocked despite her obvious condition.
Shim Nara looks away in shame, his voice trembling as he offers a quiet apology for his perceived failure.
A close-up of Nara's wide blue eyes captures his shock as the archer calls out his full name. Glaring with pure contempt, the red-haired archer orders Shim Nara to step up and eliminate the remaining threat himself. The boy recoils in disbelief, shouting back to ask if she has completely lost her mind. She continues her verbal assault, questioning why he is still alive when he should have been the first one to fall in battle.
Nara stares blankly as she reveals that the monster was specifically targeting him the entire time.
Her voice dripping with bitterness, she laments that a valuable dealer died just to save a worthless buffer like him.
Leaning forward with a predatory intensity, the archer tells Shim Nara that he must take full responsibility for the tragedy. The scene shifts to a quiet bedroom where the long-haired woman, Hyun Choi, sits on her bed in polka-dot pajamas.
She stares off into the distance, debating with herself whether or not to consume a mysterious item.
At the research center, a purple-haired scientist with heavy bags under his eyes reports that his exhaustive tests yielded no results. The exhausted scientist argues with the team, insisting that he has already performed multiple verification tests and feels like they are trying to kill him with work. Holding a small ring, he informs Hyun Choi that the item she brought is of the lowest grade and possesses no actual function. While the red-haired man and blonde woman fume over his attitude, the scientist begins to cackle with a crazed expression about dissecting a new item. Walking away from the lab, the trio complains about the crazy researcher and his inability to see them as anything more than chewed gum. The blonde woman turns to Hyun Choi in frustration, demanding to know why their discovery isn't showing up in any professional tests. Hyun Choi listens as the others discuss the possibility of getting a faster rank reassessment through the Paehyuk Guild. The red-haired man, Dongju, hands a small object to Hyun Choi, who asks what it is in a curious tone. A single bubble clarifies the item. Hyun Choi holds the small white pill in the palm of her hand. She thinks to herself that Dongju is the only person who would offer to worming medicine in such a situation, finding his attempt at help pitiful.
Her eyes widen slightly in realization. In the present, Hyun Choi watches Dongju prepare to leave the apartment, questioning where he is going in such a hurry.
Dongju answers a phone call with a startled expression as he hears her name on the other end. Hyun Choi is left standing in the kitchen with a look of pure shock. The scene transitions to a cold industrial warehouse illuminated by moonlight.
A man stands in the shadows with a lit cigarette.
The black-haired man with a sword strapped to his back notes that hunter Kim Dong-ju is late for their meeting.
Introducing himself as Kim Soo-ui, an A-rank dealer, he remarks with a smirk that Dong-ju seems to have grown a bit weaker since they last met.
A blonde woman wielding dual pistols introduces herself as Kang Nam-soo, happily showing off her favorite weapons.
Stepping forward with a large spiked shield and a bright smile, Hyun Choi introduces herself as a C-rank tanker who will be taking Dong-ju's place.
The gathered hunters near the glowing dungeon portal murmur in confusion, questioning why a lowly C rank is participating in such a high-stakes mission.
Kim Soo-ui mocks her primitive-looking shield, but quickly offers an awkward apology when she reveals it was a gift from her late ex-boyfriend.
Hyun Choi puts on a tragic act, claiming she is already dead inside until someone's hand muffles her with a quick thud sounding.
Dong-ju tells her to stop talking, while Kim Soo-ui expresses his concerns about entering a dungeon with someone who seems mentally unstable.
Dong-ju stands firm, guaranteeing her combat skills even if her personality leaves much to be desired.
Kang Nam-soo questions why they are bringing a C-rank outsider along when the team already consists of 2 S-ranks.
Dong-ju casually reveals that both he and his sister are currently ranked as C ranks, leaving the gunner completely speechless.
He explains that he won't be entering the dungeon himself and mentions that Hyun Choi is motivated by a desire to rescue a friend trapped inside.
Rubbing his temples, Kim Soo-ui sighs at the underwhelming lineup for an S-rank dungeon and wonders if they will receive any more support.
He notes that most high-ranking hunters are currently unavailable, though they have requested backup from other guilds. Dong-ju gives the final briefing, ordering the team to eliminate the boss first to secure an exit and prioritize the rescue mission above all else.
The potential of the dungeon upgrading to an S rank is acknowledged as a worst-case scenario.
Looking serious, Hunter Kim Dong-ju orders the abandonment of the rescue mission, assuming those inside are already dead amidst images of lurking monsters. The blonde gunner Kang Nam-soo and ponytail swordsman Kim Soo-ui walk away while acknowledging their new orders.
When her name is called, the purple-haired Hyun Choi turns around with a questioning look.
Grabbing her shoulders, Dong-ju desperately pleads with Hyun Choi to behave like a proper tanker and not do anything strange, to which she casually agrees.
Dong-ju warns her not to eat weird things or lose her mind again, urgently asking if she took the medicine he provided.
Dismissively waving her hands, Hyun Choi claims she already took the medicine.
Her expression suddenly shifts to one of wide-eyed shock as a realization hits her.
The 2 hunters stand in silence within the vast warehouse as the rest of the team prepares in the background. Staring with intense focus, Hyun Choi wonders why the others are present in this location.
Hyun Choi questions the presence of an A-rank secret judge inside, and Dong-ju confirms the detail while asking why she is curious.
Wearing a sinister and wide-eyed grin, Hyun Choi promises that she will be back.
Left behind, the red-haired man reacts with absolute bewilderment at her sudden shift in attitude.
Kim Soo-ui looks back in surprise and calls for the others to catch Hyun Choi as she sprints away from the group. Hyun Choi charges forward with her shield, her movement punctuated by a sequence of fast, repetitive thudding sounds.
Kang Nam-soo lunges through the air in a desperate attempt to stop the runaway tanker.
The two collide with a heavy impact sounding that sends a shockwave through the warehouse.
Dust kicks up around their feet as the struggle between the 2 hunters intensifies.
Kang Nam-soo yells at Hyun Choi, reminding her that group activities are the priority and mockingly calling her a C-rank tanker.
The blonde gunner's face is suddenly overtaken by a look of sheer disbelief and panic.
With a confused cry, Kang Nam-soo is thrown backward as Hyun Choi overpowers her with ease.
Sprinting ahead with a joyful smile, Hyun Choi rejects the lecture on group work and wishes her teammate good luck.
A powerful thud sounding echoes as the gunner hits the ground with a pained cry.
Nursing her head, Kang Nam-soo questions if Hyun Choi is truly just a C-rank hunter given her incredible strength.
Dong-ju awkwardly explains to the confused swordsman that Hyun Choi is actually an S-rank tanker despite her current official ranking.
Growing impatient, Dong-ju shouts for the team to hurry into the dungeon while the pained gunner continues to complain on the floor. In the forest, the red-haired archer demands Nara take responsibility, but he snaps back for her to watch her words since her injury isn't to her head. Bracing behind his shield, Hunter Gam Sang-woo intervenes and tells the 2 teammates to stop fighting.
Gam Sang-woo acknowledges the tragedy of Hunter Kim Ho-yen's death, but asks the archer if she plans on getting everyone else killed as well.
The red-haired archer falls into a pained silence, unable to look her teammates in the eye.
Gam Sang-woo tries to calm the group, noting that while an A-rank mob appeared unexpectedly, the situation is too dire for internal conflict. He tries to reassure them that a rescue team will arrive soon once the situation is detected from the outside.
Shim Nara looks up at the blonde hunter, repeating the mention of a rescue team in a dazed tone.
A vision of a man in a suit appears, warning that if the time limit is exceeded, the Paehyak Guild will deploy and eliminate everyone inside.
Nara is gripped by a sudden terror, realizing that they cannot allow that outcome to happen.
Fixating on the threat, Nara wonders if they could somehow eliminate the creature if it is truly the only one.
Gam Sang-woo warns Nara that his thoughts are leading toward a meaningless death, but the boy remains hesitant.
Narration clarifies that it is impossible for a group of C-rank hunters to defeat a predatory A-rank creature.
A massive, pale mantis monster emerges from the shadows of a nearby cave opening.
Gam Sang-woo reacts with shock as the beast suddenly appears before the group.
He shouts an insult at the creature, wondering how it managed to track their location so quickly.
The monster's sharp limb strikes Gam Sang-woo's shield with a bright and violent impact sounding.
He groans in pain as he struggles to hold his ground against the monster's overwhelming physical power. Fragments of the shield fly into the air as the blonde hunter screams for the others to look out. The mantis monster prepares a follow-up attack, its massive limb swinging through the air. A sharp slash sounding tears the atmosphere as the killing blow descends toward the vulnerable hunters. Nara lets out a pained scream as the monster's blade slices deep into his chest, spraying blood across the clearing. The massive predatory pursuer looms over Nara, who is now helpless on the ground. Droplets of blood fall onto the grass as the monster prepares to finish its kill. Nara cries out in agony, begging the creature to let go as he struggles against the intense pain.
A muffled cry of agony echoes through the oppressive darkness.
A desperate voice questions why such misfortune continues to haunt them from within the void. With a sudden quick wish sounding, a clenched fist strikes out in a desperate bid for freedom.
Nara's face contorts with rage as a heavy bam sounding signals his refusal to let go.
The blonde-haired girl watches in horror, questioning if the purple-haired woman has completely lost her mind.
Nara lashes out with a barrage of punches, screaming that his chance to join the Paehyak Guild has been ruined.
Relentlessly striking the monster, Nara orders the creature to die for its crimes.
A sickening crack sounding fills the air as Nara is tossed aside like a rag doll while screaming in pain.
The world fades into a dark blur as a pained cry rings out one last time.
Droplets of tears fall as a gruesome crunch sounding is followed by another sharp snap.
Limp and blood-soaked, the hunter's feet dangle helplessly above the blood-stained grass.
Nara feels the crushing sensation of his body being torn apart, wondering if this is the moment of his death.
A final, desperate plea for life emerges as the hunter refuses to succumb to his fate.
A single focused eye with a pink iris reveals a calm and calculating observer.
Hyun Choi reflects on her own past traumas, recalling the sensation of her neck being severed.
A grim vision shows the black-haired woman swarmed by monsters, revealing her past desire to simply end her suffering.
Remembering Choi's words, Nara wonders how she could have possibly endured such overwhelming horror.
The massive predatory insect opens its maw wide, preparing to consume the helpless Nara.
A sudden, violent impact sounding occurs as a shield intercedes to block the monster's killing blow.
Blood sprays across the clearing as the blonde man delivers a powerful counterattack against the beast.
Nara hits the grass with a heavy thud sounding, groaning in pained disbelief.
The blonde man offers a quick apology for his tardiness, leaving Nara completely stunned.
The newcomer acknowledges that his interference violates regulations, but refuses to let such talent go to waste.
Standing tall with his shield, he is identified as Gam Sang-woo, an A-rank tanker from the Paehyak Guild. The wounded mantis monster lets out a high-pitched scream of agony as blood flows from its head. Gam Sang-woo asks Nara what he is looking at, prompting the boy to point toward a new arrival.
To their shock, the purple-haired Hyun Choi appears with a bright smile, announcing she has finally found her target.
Nara identifies the mysterious woman as his friend, while Gam Sang-woo questions how an outsider could have entered the dungeon.
Hyun Choi fixates on the blonde man's A-rank shield, delighting in the fact that it is exactly what she was looking for.
She moved with incredible speed, becoming nothing more than a blur through the dense forest. Deep in the woods, two pale humanoid monsters react with sudden alarm as they sense an approaching threat.
With a metallic clang sounding, Hyun Choi readies her shield for a devastating strike. A massive energy wave slices through the trees and slams into the unsuspecting monsters.
The winged creature is shredded by the force of the impact, spraying dark ichor everywhere.
A nearby tree is sheared in half as the shockwave continues its path of destruction.
One of the humanoid beasts is sliced clean through, falling in a bloody heap.
Finishing her swing, Hyun Choi sighs in disappointment, dismissing her kills as mere duds.
She curses the hidden monsters, demanding they reveal themselves instead of making her search for them.
Standing amidst a pile of monster remains, she shouts her annoyance at the tedious hunt.
She notes that her stats haven't improved at all, suspecting the creatures were only lowly D-rank mobs.
Her gaze sharpens as she considers her next move, narrowing her eyes in deep thought. Looking out over the forest, she hopes that the monsters will all gather in one place to save her time.
With a joyful expression, she sets off again, eager to see what the dungeon has in store.
The massive mantis monster stands frozen, as if sensing a predator far more dangerous than itself.
Gam Sang-woo reacts with utter shock as he realizes the mysterious woman is targeting his valuable shield. Hyun Choi leaps high into the air, celebrating her good luck at finding everything she needs in a single location.
The towering mantis monster looms over Gam Sang-woo, though its attention seems focused elsewhere.
The creature remains eerily silent, its large eyes staring intently at the approaching threat.
Gam Sang-woo watches in confusion as the vicious beast suddenly stops its attack and stands perfectly still.
He recalls that the monster behaved in the exact same strange manner earlier when confronting Hunter Shim Nara.
Shim Nara stares up from the grass, wondering why the monster is behaving so strangely.
Hyun Choi looks back with a sly and knowing smile.
Gam Sang-woo is startled by the sudden presence of the purple-haired woman.
Hyun Choi walks past the group as a quick, light tap sounding follows her steps.
A malicious and unsettling grin spreads across Hyun Choi's face.
A sudden, aggressive swipe sounding occurs as the blonde hunter reacts with a cry of shock. Hyun Choi wrestles the shield away, asking why he won't let go, while the panicked owner screams that he hasn't finished paying for it, and Nara begs her to stop.
Gam Sang-woo is terrified by her overwhelming power, demanding she release his property while a sharp whish sounding underscores the struggle.
She kicks the blonde man away with a heavy thud sounding that sends him tumbling across the grass.
Hyun Choi's original shield shatters into several jagged pieces.
She cries out in distress over her broken equipment, lamenting that someone named Hyun-chan bought it for her.
She addresses the monster with a firm and determined step.
Charging the creature with an insult, she strikes as a loud boom sounding echoes through the forest. The massive insect is driven into the ground with a violent impact sounding.
The group of hunters watches in absolute disbelief as the beast is effortlessly overpowered.
Stunned silence follows the realization that she knocked the monster down in a single hit.
Standing over the creature, she questions if it is truly dead since her stats haven't increased.
Gam Sang-woo stammers as he asks Shim Nara if they are actually friends.
He questions her rank while Nara hesitates, privately wondering if it is safe to reveal she is an A-rank hunter.
Nara claims she is only C rank, leaving the rest of the team bewildered by the nonsense.
She declares the new shield belongs to her now because hers broke, ignoring the blonde man's pained cries.
Giggling to herself, she runs away with the stolen shield while the blonde man chases after her and the monster remains silent.
The monster recovers with a roar as the blonde hunter desperately demands his shield back.
She notes how sturdy the new shield feels while the original owner continues his frantic demands.
The monster roars again as she sprints back into the fray, leaving the distraught blonde man behind.
A sharp, high-pitched flash sounding accompanies her aggressive shield strike against the creature.
She moves with blurring speed, unleashing a series of rapid and heavy blows.
The shield strikes the beast's head with a violent and focused impact.
Leaping high, she prepares to deliver another devastating attack from above. Hyun Choi's eyes glow with a fierce and calculating intensity as she swings.
She descends like a meteor, creating a trail of shield-shaped afterimages while the monster roars.
A powerful impact sounding vibrates through the clearing as the blow connects.
She holds her position firmly with the stolen A-Ren shield. The monster lets out a shrill and pained shriek.
Standing over the dying beast, she mentions that she has a specific question to ask it.
A quick tap sounding follows her movement as she explains that as a mantis, the creature should have the answer she seeks. Standing on top of the monster's head, she asks if it recognizes the object in her hand. She holds up a simple silver ring for the monster to observe. The creature responds with a silent and ominous red-dotted stare. She looks down in frustration as the monster fails to provide any verbal response. A sudden and violent explosion of blood follows her crushing strike against the beast's head. Gam Sang-woo shouts in terror, unable to comprehend the brutality of her actions. She looks back with glowing red eyes, coldly insulting the creature's terrible pronunciation. A massive puddle of dark blood gathers beneath the broken remains of the monster. A final, sharp slash sounding signals the end of the gruesome execution.
The creature is pulverized under a flurry of strikes and wet thudding sounds as blood sprays the clearing.
A shrill cry sounding fades away as the group watches the scene in absolute horror. Nara's gaze sharpens as he reflects on the disturbing transformation of his companion. He acknowledges that she has changed since that fateful day, wondering if she is even the same person. Covered in blood and staring with a wild expression, Hyun Choi stands amidst the carnage of the fallen monster.
A violent splash of blood occurs.
The creature lets out a growl. A winged beast retreats into shadow.
A segmented tail drags through bore.
A sudden impact strikes the monster.
The mantis overwhelms a pale creature.
A predatory eye watches with hunger.
The beast emits a guttural roar. The mantis begins its grisly kneel.
Swarms of monsters feast in darkness.
The creatures react to a disturbance.
A predator senses an approaching threat.
The forest remains deceptively silent nearby.
Hyun Choi stands atop.
The purple-haired woman tells the noisy monster to shut its mouth.
Her heel lands with a quick thud sounding.
She dismisses the creature's death as entirely unhelpful for her goals.
A malicious smile spreads across her face as she finds the carnage adorable.
She delivers a final, bone-crushing strike with the shield.
The monster's head is completely obliterated by the impact.
Other monsters watch from the entrance of the cave.
A shadowy, clawed hand confirms that the target has been found. A mysterious figure commands the swarm from the darkness. A system notification announces a slight increase in stats.
Hyun Choi questions why even high-rank kills provide such minimal rewards.
She laments getting her clothes dirty for such an unfair payout.
Gam Sang-woo is bewildered by her ability to effortlessly solo an A-rank monster. He realizes that her extraordinary shield skills should have made her famous. The blonde man wonders where this mysterious hunter came from. A newcomer wearing a beanie expresses shock at her combat style. The blonde girl notes that the monsters have been completely annihilated.
Hyun Choi stares at the piles of remains and finds it boring.
The group discusses moving quickly toward the boss monster's location. They decide to secure an exit route before wasting any more energy.
The girl in the beanie asks the black-haired man what is on.
He notes the suspicious lack of monsters for an S-rank upgraded dungeon. He remains cynical about their luck despite the girl's optimism. The scarred man explains his deep distrust of selfish, uncooperative S-rank hunters. The girl suggests that Choi might be different since she saved a friend. He begrudgingly agrees that they have no choice but to trust her.
Hyun Choi stretches her arms after the brief skirmish.
She considers heading out to search for her next target. Gam Sang-woo is stunned to learn she didn't come to rescue them. He frantically questions why she entered the dungeon and took his property.
She explains that she only entered as a substitute for someone else.
The blonde man is shocked to hear her mention a famous hunter.
The realization of her connections leaves the tanker completely speechless.
He dreads her presence while recalling the terrible teamwork of elite hunters.
He desperately shouts for her not to leave them behind. He begs her to stay while she remains indifferent to their survival.
Hyun Choi commands the blonde man to let go as he desperately clings to her leg, begging her to rescue them first. The purple-haired woman asks Hunter Gam Sang-woo what he is doing while he remains gripped to her leg in total shock. A scarred, black-haired man arrives with the rescue team as the small girl with him mocks the scene and Gam Sang-woo screams in terror.
Hyun Choi asks if she is free to leave now that the rescue team has arrived, but Gam Sang-woo frantically asks where she is going.
The scarred hunter addresses Hyun Choi, asking if she entered the dungeon specifically to rescue her friend.
He suggests they should leave together while his gaze drifts toward the ornate shield she is holding.
He realizes she only entered the dungeon to steal the new A-rank shield Gam Sang-woo had been bragging about recently.
Hyun Choi laughs with pure joy while admiring her newly acquired treasure.
A sudden snap sounding occurs as the scarred hunter breaks his cigarette in a fit of silent rage. The scarred man lunges at the woman while the others try to hold him back, warning him that she is dangerously strong.
She teases the man for his anger while Nara watches with a troubled expression and Gam Sang-woo demands to know where she is going.
Nara stares downward in silent contemplation. The rescue leader explains their plan to clear the C-rank boss and create an exit for the group to leave immediately. He asks if anyone has further questions while Nara reflects on the agreement to leave after the boss is defeated. The red-haired woman asks if being rescued means their test results are eliminated as the leader invites her to speak. He explains that he is unsure and expects the guild to provide an answer after an internal discussion.
Nara looks devastated as she realizes she has lost her chance to join the elite Peihyuk Guild. She thinks about her refusal to leave the dungeon yet.
Addressing Gam Sang-woo, Nara suggests they could continue the test since he already defeated an A-rank monster. He explains that a clear requires eliminating all mobs and the boss, which is impossible in an upgraded S-rank dungeon. Nara desperately asks if they can simply avoid the stronger monsters to complete their objectives.
Gam Sang-woo sternly warns her against throwing her life away, insisting she must stay alive for future opportunities.
He reminds her that the party currently lacks a proper tanker or dealer to handle the high-rank threats.
Nara's eyes fill with intense sorrow.
She remains silent as Choi watches her.
The purple-haired woman calls out her name. Choi suggests that leaving is the best option since there will be other chances in the future.
Nara snaps at her, questioning how she can suggest leaving when she knows how many job interviews Nara has failed.
She accuses Choi of only entering the dangerous dungeon for her own amusement rather than to help.
Choi tells Nara not to take it so seriously, insisting her past failures were just a matter of bad timing.
Nara screams that she doesn't have any other opportunities left.
She yells that this was her final chance and demands to know why she is being told to quit.
She continues her emotional outburst, questioning what Choi could possibly know about her struggle. Choi calmly notes that Nara is only getting excited because her injuries are making things difficult.
She tells Nara that she should cherish her life because she only has one.
Gam Sang-woo tries to mediate the argument, urging everyone to calm down and focus on finding an exit.
Tears stream down Nara's face as she claims it is easy for a strong person like Choi to tell her to leave.
She weeps while explaining that every opportunity is vital because she is weak. Gam Sang-woo watches her with a look of deep guilt, reflecting on how they abandoned her in the past.
Nara laments ever going to the scene of that past incident, believing it ruined her life and led her to this point.
Choi's face remains hidden in Chow. She softly speaks Nara's name again.
Nara reacts with sudden, why add along?
Gam Sang-woo smiles weakly while suggesting they can settle their differences once they are safely out of the dungeon.
Hyun Choi suddenly lunges forward with a predatory intensity that freezes the group.
She towers over the trembling girl with glowing red eyes. Choi states with chilling indifference that Nara would be better off just dying in this place.
A formal message appears from a guild regarding a recruitment application. Nara holds her phone while looking at a standard rejection notice.
The blue-haired girl stares blankly at her reflection. Nara watches the group through narrow, deep blue eyes.
The hunters stand together in the brightly lit city streets after dark.
Nara reacts with confusion as the light brown-haired woman notes her typical behavior. A harsh question arises concerning the girl's sudden dramatic performance. The blonde man confronts the purple-haired woman as she looks down in silence.
He wonders why she endures mistreatment and advises her to find a better partner.
Nara remains quiet, her face showing a mix of exhaustion and sorrow. Back in the woods, Nara gasps with a sudden, painful cough sounding as she is pinned down.
She weakly utters Choi's name in a desperate attempt to reach her.
Tears stream down Nara's face as she begs the woman to stop the attack.
Hyun Choi looks down with a glowing red eye, demanding any last words before death.
Choi pins Nara to the ground, her hand tightened like a vice around the girl's throat.
Nara struggles against the chokehold with a wet cough sounding as she calls Choi's name.
Her wide blue eyes reflect a raw and desperate desire to survive.
Nara recalls a past moment of fear when she pleaded to be saved.
She acknowledges that she previously clung to Choi out of a pure instinct to live.
Held down against the earth, Nara admits that she now regrets surviving that day.
Choi's gaze intensifies as her eye glows with a menacing red light.
Choi strikes out as she claims that Nara knows the truth of the situation.
The purple-haired woman stares down with a look of cold, predatory interest. Nara remains trapped under the woman's weight, her face contorted in pain.
The pressure on Nara's throat makes it nearly impossible for her to breathe.
A gloved hand draws a massive black handgun, aiming it toward the conflict.
A sharp blade appears at Choi's neck as a voice commands her to calm down.
The rescue team intervenes, stopping Choi from dealing a fatal blow to Nara.
The scarred hunter declares he only cares about the mission and will ignore any violence outside.
The blonde girl in the beanie laughs at his coldness while prioritizing their objectives.
A sudden boom sounding echoes through the forest as a dark energy erupts in the distance. Nara lies bleeding in the grass while the team discusses creating an exit route.
Choi stands silently, her back to the group as the tension hangs heavy.
Nara stares into the distance with a hollow and broken expression. She calls out to Choi, who begins walking away from the rescue team. Choi tells the group to leave without her, indifferent to their survival.
The girl in the beanie screams in shock at the hunter's refusal to cooperate.
Choi delivers a final chilling warning to those who do not wish to die. The scarred leader tells Kang Nam-soo to stop worrying, expecting Choi to return later. He notices Nara's hesitation and asks why she still hasn't moved toward safety. Blood stains Nara's white shirt as she sits slumped and defeated on the ground. She finally surrenders to the situation, whispering her intent to leave.
Choi commands everyone to arm themselves and finish the task quickly. Gam Sang-woo celebrates his reunion with the ornate shield, clutching it tightly.
He vows to take better care of the precious item from now on. Choi suddenly snatches the shield back with a quick whisk sounding as he yells in protest.
Choi reclaims her prize while the beanie girl notes she has taken it again. Choi walks away with the shield, leaving Nara unable to continue the fight.
Nara looks back at Choi, admitting that her previous assessment was wrong. Choi calls Nara's name, leaving the girl visibly startled and confused. Choi turns her back, stating that her work in this place is finally done. She gives a final cold order for Nara never to appear before her again.
Nara watches in silence as her companion disappears into the misty forest.
Nara stares ahead with a look of defeated misery.
Choi stands alone, clutching her stolen prize while looking away from the group.
A warm, glowing light mends the bloody gash on Nara's leg.
As she is treated, Nara silently wonders how a C-rank healer can possess such an incredible amount of power.
The blonde healer in the green hood calls out to Nara, who responds with a tired acknowledgement.
Looking toward the site of the conflict, the healer remarks that the fight between friends seemed excessively brutal.
Nara looks down in shame, admitting her own pathetic behavior and apologizing for the awkward atmosphere she caused by refusing to leave.
The healer explains that everyone feels the pressure of the elite guild, but notes there is something else about Nara's behavior she finds confusing.
She bluntly asks Nara why she refuses to believe in her friend's words or trust in her own worth.
The healer promises it will be okay, sharing that she and everyone else present have likely faced similar struggles.
Nara's eyes widen as she processes the healer's unexpected kindness.
The light brown-haired man asks if the treatment is done and suggests they rejoin the group, receiving a quick confirmation from the healer as a soft, rhythmic tap sounding occurs.
He asks if the healing process was completed thoroughly.
The healer offers a small, polite word of thanks.
A voice notes they have reached the boss area and expects the remaining battle to end quickly.
The red-haired warrior and black-haired hunter charge into battle with a quick whisk sounding.
As a monster's horrific scream echoes, the girl in the beanie realizes they are facing two targets.
She playfully wonders which one to take down first as her weapon readies with a metallic click sounding.
A sudden gunshot sounding rings out as the monsters let out piercing cries of pain.
The creature shrieks as it is torn apart by the relentless assault.
Flesh and bone are shredded and a violent spray of blood.
King Namsu asks if the other hunter is performing well while a monster is crushed with a heavy crack sounding.
She mocks the beast's demand for praise as it croaks a final, raspy command to kill.
She lands gracefully on the blood-soaked ground with a quick top sounding.
The girl in the beanie perches atop the severed head of the fallen monster. The rescue leader asks Kim Soo-yi if he's finished his task before turning to label Kang Nam-soo a weakling, punctuated by a quick top sounding.
Kang Nam-soo argues that the monsters cannot be kept as pets, a logic the leader finds oddly convincing as he faces a fresh wave of enemies. A sharp, wet slice sounding occurs as she agrees with his assessment.
The leader effortlessly carves through the mob, suggesting they can both agree that neither of them is actually a weakling.
Kang Nam-soo watches in awe as a fountain of blood erupts from the latest kill.
The hunter's blade passes through flesh with a quick slice sounding.
A monster howls in agony as it is fuck.
Another creature is silenced as it is cleaved in two. Choi tears through the monsters with a blood-drenched shield, prompting the beanie girl to remark that she definitely doesn't fight like a typical tanker.
A massive, wet splash sounding of gore fills the air.
Choi moves through the carnage like a ghost of vengeance.
Blood coats her face, masking her true expression.
Choi glares with a single terrifying red eye.